I have reincarnated through 99 lifetimes.
In every single life, I climbed my way to the very pinnacle of sword cultivation. The world revered me as the sword sovereign. Yet in each life, I stopped just short of ascending to immortality. Many of my old friends lamented that I was always just one step away.
But I didn't care at all, because I did it completely on purpose. My goal was to complete 100 reincarnation missions.
Once finished, I would gain true, eternal life. Now, in my final reincarnation, the system wants me to join the Ziyuan Sect and die protecting the sect during its great calamity 3 years from now. I thought I could just keep a low profile, train quietly, and wait for the end to come. But the moment I casually left a sword mark on the sword testing tablet, our usually cold, aloof female sect master completely lost her composure. With tearful, bloodshot eyes, she demanded, "Why is your sword intent exactly the same as my late senior brother's?" My name is Ling Fan. Right now, I am standing before the gates of the Sanyuo sect, clutching a wooden plaque I was just handed. Carved on it are 2 words: Candidate Disciple. I was supposed to blend into this crowd like an inconspicuous grain of sand, waiting for an outer sect deacon to casually assign me to some remote corner. An herb garden would be best. The kitchens would be a close second. Or if all else failed, guarding the gates. As long as I was there when the great calamity struck 3 years later, I could just step up to the grand defending array,
roar. Lin Fan, disciple of the Xianyun sect, is here to protect our gates.
and then die a heroic, natural death to complete my mission. So simple. So foolproof. Right now, the entire mountain is so dead silent, you can only hear the wind. Over 1,000 new disciples are staring at me. 9 elders are staring at me. Even the white cranes circling above the cliffs have frozen in midair. And before me stands our legendary, merciless sect master, Yunwan. Her eyes are rimmed with red, her sleeves trembling slightly, as if looking at a ghost from a long-lost dream. My heart sinks. Oh crap. The game has barely started, and my cover is already blown. Just then, the cold voice of the system rings in my head. Morning to the host. Your past identity's exposure risk has risen to 1%.
If the exposure risk reaches 100%,
This reincarnation mission has failed.
the host will be sealed inside the monument. Afterward, disciples will touch the monument daily, meditating on the sword for 3,000 years.
I instantly gasped in horror on the spot. Sealed inside a monument and getting touched by people for 3,000 years?
This punishment is way worse than death.
I immediately bowed, respectfully apologizing to the sect master. This disciple is Lin Fan, a resident from Kingshui Town, at the foot of the mountain. 18 years old this year. My family has been selling tofu for 3 generations.
Forget about being a senior brother. I haven't even entered the sect yet.
Yulnan didn't say a word.
She just stared at the sword scratch I did just left behind.
It was pitiably shallow, crooked, and messy, looking like a young child's doodle with a tree branch.
But only a true master of the sword would know that hidden within that scratch was a momentary, highly restrained, yet absolute sharp edge.
A single moment was enough. Enough to make every sword on the mountain hum in submission. Enough to awaken the sword souls that had slept inside the monument for 100 years. And enough for Yunwan to recognize it as the signature opening stance of her senior brother, Xiling Zhou. And Xiling Zhou happened to be my name in my 72nd lifetime. I am completely innocent here.
I just wanted to make a random scratch.
Who knew this stupid monument would be so incredibly sensitive?
The outer sect deacon, Xiaowen, was the first to snap back to reality.
He glanced at Yunwan,
Then back at me. With an expression as complicated as if he had swallowed a raw toad, he stammered. "Sect master, this boy hasn't had his spiritual roots tested yet. Should we proceed with the evaluation?"
Yunwan slowly withdrew her gaze. Her voice remained steady, yet her last words carried a slight tremble. "Continue." Hearing this, I let out half a sigh of relief. As long as we test my spiritual roots, I am safe. In this lifetime, my bone structure is absolutely terrible. A polluted, 5-element mixed root. And my spiritual meridians are incredibly narrow. By cultivation standards, drawing chi is possible, but it is an uphill battle.
Reaching foundation establishments would require a literal miracle.
In a major sect, I'd at best be assigned to sweep the floors. This is practically custom-made for my failing mission. Xiaowen then led me to the second Jade Monument. That is the spirit testing monument, used specifically to measure one's spiritual root talent.
One by one, the candidates ahead of me stepped up.
One with dual firewood spiritual roots caused a wave of gasps, while another with a single water spiritual root was instantly accepted into the inner sect. Then came a youth from Qinsan named Pai Zhao, who smilingly pressed his hand against the monument. The Jade Monument first lit up with a clear light, followed by a shimmering glow, and finally, a ring of runic patterns even emerged on the base of the monument.
Xiaowen's eyes lit up with excitement. A wind spiritual root and a primary meridian. What a fine prospect.
Yet Pai Zhao didn't show the slightest bit of pride. Instead, he winked at me. "Brother Lin,
If you turn out to be a genius too, we can be neighbors among the geniuses. But if you're not, then I'll move to the outer sect to keep you company."
At those words, many in the crowd laughed. Some laughed at his carefree nature, while others mocked my bad luck. I laughed along with them, thinking, "Don't worry, you'll probably have to pack your bags."
When it was my turn, I placed my hand on the spirit testing monument.
Silently chanting in my mind, "Keep it low-key, just an ordinary waste root." The next moment, the Jade Monument glowed. A speck of red, a speck of blue, a speck of green, a speck of yellow. and a speck of white.
All 5 colors were present.
But they were as faint as a dying candle flame.
Shot one fell silent.
The other elders fell silent as well. Someone in the crowd couldn't help but whisper, a 5 elements waste root? And bottom tier at that?
With this kind of talent, even getting into the outer sect is a stretch. I was absolutely thrilled. Yes, this is exactly the effect I wanted.
Please, keep it up. Ideally, just send me straight to the kitchens.
I've already decided what veggies I'm going to chop tonight.
But then, Yuan suddenly spoke up.
He shall enter Kangfeng Pavilion.
At those words, an entire plaza went dead silent again.
Kangfeng Pavilion, the most unique yard in the Sangyun sect.
It didn't belong to the outer sect, nor was it considered part of the inner sect.
In name, it was the legacy ground for the sect's former sword cultivators. But in reality, it had been abandoned for years.
Inside the courtyard stands nothing but a single dilapidated building, a 3-acre bamboo grove,
And 7 sword lanterns that have never been lit.
They say anyone who manages to enter Kangfeng Court
Is either exceptionally gifted or deeply destined for the sect's way of the sword. I quickly look up and say, Sect Master, my talent is far too shallow. I'm afraid I can't shoulder such an honor.
Rolwine looks at me. Her gaze is cold and deep as a frozen abyss.
Whether you can shoulder it or not is not for you to decide. I want to protest further, but the system suddenly chimes in again. Ming Quest successfully updated. Join the Xianyun sect. Current identity, disciple of Kangfeng Court. Host is advised to keep a low profile and die in a mutual clash 3 years from now.
My mouth twitches. Keep a low profile?
You call this keeping a low profile? Entering Kangfeng Court under the watchful eyes of over 1,000 people. How is this any different from walking around with a giant suspicious sign over my head? But things have already come to this. All I can do is cup my hands and say, this disciple obeys.
The initiation ceremony continues.
But I know, from the moment that single sword scar appeared, my peaceful days were already half shattered.
And the other half probably won't survive the night. Because before Yunwan left, she transmitted her voice directly to me. Tonight at midnight, at Tingshu Cliff,
I'll be waiting for you. The voice was incredibly soft.
It had felt like a slender sword brushing right past my chest. I pretend not to hear it and turn to follow Pei Zhao to collect our bedding. Pigeon walks right beside me the whole way,
his eyes shining brighter than the wild sparrows in the mountains. Brother Lin, be honest. Are you some kind of hidden boss with an incredible background? I nod solemnly. Yes. Pei Zhao pricks up instantly. What's your background? My family's tofu stall ranks 3rd on the east street of King Street town.
屁叫回子是火木们。
Then bursts out laughing. 3rd isn't bad either. At least, there's still room for growth. Once we finish gathering our things, a female disciple with a high ponytail leads us to Kangfeng Court. His name is Sumian. He joined the sect a year before me, and is currently in charge of leading the new disciples, helping them get familiar with the mountain paths. He doesn't talk much, and he walks incredibly fast. On his back, he carries a long sword in a bamboo sheath. His cuffs are washed out and faded, but he still looks sharp and neat. As we passed by the inner sect's training grounds, a few disciples were practicing their swordplay. One of them, dressed in white, wielded his sword so fast that the flashes of light rained down continuously, drawing loud cheers from the onlookers.
Pei Zhao leaned in and whispered, That's Su Granlan, the top disciple of the inner sect.
They say he reached the peak of Foundation establishment at just 19, and he'll be ready to break through to the Golden Core stage by next year. He was also at the sword testing steel earlier today. After you unleashed that strike of yours, his face didn't look too good. I immediately corrected him solemnly. That wasn't a real strike. My hand just slipped.
Pei Zhao nodded.
Sure, I get it. That's what all geniuses say.
I sighed. I'm really not a genius.
Sumian suddenly turned back. It's fine if you're not a genius.
铁眼后手，这是开把的。
My eyes lit up. Then what does it care about?
Sumina thought for a moment.
To see who can survive being dirt poor the longest.
I paused mid-step. Perfect. Sounds like this place was made for me. Kangfeng Court is on the back of the main peak. It's secluded, but the scenery is stunning. With lush green bamboo forests and streams winding around the stone steps. 2-story cottage sits snugly on the mountainside. A wooden plaque over the door reads, Kangfeng. The calligraphy is beautiful, but too bad the plaque is cracked. In front of the courtyard gate, there are 7 stone lamps, covered in thick green moss. They look like 7 silent old men. The moment I stepped through the gate, the first stone lamp suddenly flickered to life. So, the light was very faint, as if someone had lit a tiny spark inside. Sumian came to an abrupt halt. Pei Zhao's eyes widened in shock. I froze in my tracks, too. Not out of shock, but because I recognized these 7 lamps. In my 72nd lifetime, under the name of Sailing Zhou, I had buried 7 sword seeds in the back mountain of the Shaeyun sect. It was all to leave an escape route for Yunwan, but later, I failed my tribulation. Those 7 sword seeds should have dissipated along with my old body. I never expected someone to turn them into lamps, and even place them right at the entrance of Kangfeng Courtyard. The moment the first lamp lit up, the system prompt immediately chimed in. Host's past life relic detected. Exposure rate increased to 3%. Passive skill activated. Listening wind, transforming sword. I almost turned around and walked right down the mountain. I can't stay in this sect anymore. Before I could even take a step, the sudden pain shot through my palm. It felt as if a microscopic needle of ice had traveled all the way from ancient times straight to my heart. The phrase, listening wind, transforming sword, wasn't just some meaningless system notification. It felt as though a wisp of old sword energy had been violently ripped from my previous 99 lifetimes and shoved into my current body of chaotic 5-element roots. My face turned slightly pale, but my fingertips remained terrifyingly steady. This sensation was all wrong. If it was just a reward, it shouldn't hurt. And if it was just a passive activation, it shouldn't feel like it was forcing something out. I looked down at my wrist. It was completely bare, yet there seemed to be an invisible thread, channeling the sword energy scattered across my 99 lifetimes, drawing it, wisp by wisp, into this body. The system's voice remained cold and mechanical. Host, please maintain a low profile. I sneered inwardly. Maintain a low profile? On one hand, you tell me to keep a low profile, but on the other, you're dragging my past life sword energy out for everyone to see. How is this any different from telling me to hide while hanging a glowing lantern right above my head? But the thought only flashed for a second, and I quickly suppressed it. I can't afford to turn against it just yet. My body in this lifetime is far too weak. My spiritual root is of the lowest tier, and my meridians are too narrow. If I use too much of this past life sword energy, it won't be me tearing through my enemies, but rather, my own body would rip itself apart first. I patted Wangu. On the outside, I remained perfectly calm. It seems that from now on, not only do I have to pretend to be weak, but I also literally have to hold back my strength. Everywhere is littered with things I used to throw around. Lei Zhao, however, patted my shoulder in excitement. Brother Lin, look! So soon as you arrived, the lights came on. If this isn't destiny, then what is? I replied expressionless. It's probably just been out of repair for too long, and this is just its last gasp. Simeon glanced at me. The 7 lamps of Kangfeng Court haven't been lit in 100 years. You'd better watch your mouth. I shut up instantly. The 3 of us started tidying up the place. Kangfeng Court had been abandoned for too long. The roof beams were covered in dust. The backyard vegetable garden was completely overgrown with weeds. There was only half a bag of rice left in the kitchen. Lei Zhao looked at the inventory and fell silent for a long time. Then, he turned to senior sister Sumian and asked, "Doesn't the sect hand out monthly allowances?" Shumina replied calmly, "They do, but Kangfeng Court owes the sect 27 years of maintenance fees. Our allowances are automatically deducted to pay it off." Daniel clutched his chest. I haven't even started cultivating yet. And I'm already paying off debts. But my eyes lit up. Being poor is great. If we're poor, nobody will bother us. If nobody comes, we can keep a low profile. And the low profile means safety. So, I rolled up my sleeves and skillfully lit the fire, washed the rice and veggies, and chopped the bamboo shoots. An hour later, a pot of plain congee, a plate of braised bamboo shoots, and a dish of cold-dressed wild ferns were served on the broken wooden table. Helping to set everything on the broken wooden table, Lei Zhao took a bite. His eyes lit up like the spirit querying stale. Brother Lin, with your culinary skills, even if we fail at cultivation, we can still achieve greatness by opening a restaurant down the mountain.
Shumina also silently scooped herself another bowl of congee.
I nodded in satisfaction.
This is exactly how daily life should be. Peaceful, simple, and completely unnoticed. Too bad we couldn't even finish our dinner before someone knocked on the courtyard gate. 3 soft, quiet knocks, but it was enough to make the entire bamboo forest fall dead silent. Shumina stood up instantly. Sect Master Yunwan was standing right outside the door. The moonlight fell over his shoulders like a thin layer of frost. He glanced at the food on the table, and his eyes locked onto the plate of braised bamboo shoots. He stared at it for a long, long time. My heart skipped a beat. This was bad. In my 72nd life, Yunan's absolute favorite dish was this very one. When he was a boy, he would cry from the exhausting sword practice, and I would always make him these braised bamboo shoots to comfort him. I'd tease him, saying that 1 bite would boost his sword energy by an inch. Later, when he realized he'd been fooled, he chased me halfway across the mountain to hit me.
Now this dish has accidentally become another loose thread to my past.
Yuan Baktin
Asked softly, "Who made this?" Pijao immediately pointed at me. Brother Lin did. He not only knows how to cook, but can also fix doors. That broken door was about to fall off, but he fixed it with just a couple of kicks. I wanted to shut Pijao up, but it was already too late. Yulan looked at him, but the damage was already done. Yuman turned his gaze to me. The redness in his eyes deepened as he whispered, "Come with me." I desperately wanted to refuse, but when the sect master speaks, a mere disciple has no right to decline. I had no choice but to set down my bowl and follow him to Tingshu Cliff. Tingshu Cliff was at the very peak of the main mountain. The air up here was freezing, and an old sweet osmandus tree stood at the edge of the cliff. It wasn't the season for blooming.
Yet the ground was covered in a carpet of tiny, golden blossoms. As soon as I saw the tree,
My footsteps faltered, if only for a split second, because I was the one who planted this tree. Back then, when Yunwan had first joined the sect, he kept his face stern all day long, claiming he would become the greatest swordsman in the world. He promised he'd never waste time playing, and that he'd never care for delicious food, only to sneak down the mountain in the dead of night to buy osmanthus cakes. And I caught him, red-handed. He was so terrified. Tears welled up in his eyes. But I didn't punish him. Instead, I planted an osmanthus tree by the cliff's edge and told him, when the tree blooms, your senior brother will make you osmanthus cakes for the rest of your life. But then, I never got to keep that promise. I died right before the Ascension Festival, leaving him all alone to guard this mountain. Yumwon stopped under the Osmandistry. Without turning around, he asked, "Senior brother, what did you say we should do when the Osmandistry blooms on the 7th day?" My heart clenched. I knew the answer, but I couldn't reply. So, looking utterly bewildered, I said, "This disciple does not know." Yumwon turned around to face me. "You really don't know?"
I looked at him earnestly as he stared back, insisting, "I truly don't know."
I nodded sincerely. "I really don't know, Sect Leader." In the next instant, an Osmanthus's petal drifted down from a branch. Instinctively, I reached out and caught it, and without thinking, I blurted out, "If you don't say anything, the fragrance will fade." As soon as the words left my mouth, I froze.
Runwon froze too.
The system's cold voice rang out. Identity exposure risk has increased to 8%.
Passive skill reminiscence of old dreams activated.
I almost stuffed the Osmandus petal into my mouth to destroy the evidence.
Yumwon took a step toward me.
His voice, trembling. Only he has ever said that to me. I immediately tried to salvage the situation. "Sect Leader, that's just a common phrase used by the pastry makers down the mountain." Yumwon stared intently at me.
So the tofu vendors in Jinfrey Town know about Osmandus cakes too?
I replied earnestly. "Well, you can put sweet Osmanthus syrup in tofu pudding too."
Yumwon fell silent. The answer was utterly absurd.
But surprisingly, there was no arguing with it.
Suddenly he raised his hand.
A slender, snow-white sword materialized in his palm. The sword was Nace Johan, the very sword Silin Cho had gifted him all those years ago. He held the sword out in front of me. "Draw your sword." I took half a step back. "Sect Leader, you must be joking."
This disciple only joined the sect today.
"You don't know swordplay?" Yumwon's gaze grew colder. "You don't know swordplay, yet you left the surging tide opening stance on the sword trial steel? You don't know swordplay, yet you lit a lamp in the dark pavilion of Canfeng. You don't know swordplay, yet you can recreate my senior brother. Who on earth are you?" I kept my head lowered, my palms sweating slightly. Not because I was afraid of him. No, it was because I was terrified of the system. I could have admitted that I was Silin Joe, but the moment I confessed, my mission would likely fail completely. I've waited for 99 lifetimes. I can't afford to fail at the very last step. So, I looked up, staring straight in the Sect Leader Yumwon's eyes. "There are plenty of lookalikes in this world," I said, "and just as many swords that look identical. If I really were your senior brother, why would I only have a trash spiritual root? Why haven't I even forged a shadow weapon? And why would I be standing here, completely at your mercy, letting you interrogate me?" My words were a mix of truth and lies, but they did the trick.
Yumwon's eyes flickered.
I kept going.
Perhaps I just happened to inherit a lingering trace of some master's sword intent.
And maybe that master was indeed your senior brother. The explanation was plausible. It wasn't perfect, but it bought me time. Yumwon stared at me for what felt like an eternity, so long that even the wind on the cliff died down. Finally, she lowered her sword and said, "Fine, I won't force you."
Yumwon didn't press any further.
It wasn't because she believed my story. I knew she didn't buy a single word. Her eyes were far too sharp enough to see right through every single flaw in my lies. Yet, in the end, she didn't push it. She didn't use her authority as Sect Leader to pressure me, nor did she order the Hall of Justice to search my very soul. Only later did I find out that after that night, she had actually sent people to Qinshui Town. The Lin family's tofu stall was indeed real, and a boy named Lin Fan had truly grown up there. Old Mr. and Mrs. Lin told her men that the boy had been incredibly bright since he was little. He kept the books faster than any adult and always knew the exact moment the tofu was ready. But occasionally, he would just stare blankly at a kitchen knife,
As if lost in some distant memory.
The more genuine these details sounded, the more hesitant Yumwon became to push me. If I really was Cyclo Joe, she was terrified that pressing too hard
Would drive away a soul who had finally made his way back. And if I wasn't,
at the same time. He was terrified that, just because of an old dream, he might personally destroy an innocent youth's path to cultivation. He is the Sect Master. He can't just sit around, waiting forever for his senior brother's little girl. But he is also Yumwon, the same man who waited under that Osmanthus tree for 100 years, still remembering that his senior brother owed him a single plate of Osmanthus cake. So, he chose to wait. He's waiting for me to slip up and reveal more flaws, and waiting for the day I'm finally ready to speak the truth myself. Just as I let out a sigh of relief,
he added, "Starting tomorrow,
you will come to Listening Snowcliff at 5 in the morning every day. I will personally teach you the sword." I nearly choked on my own breath. "Sect Master, this disciple is incredibly dull-witted." "I wouldn't dare trouble you. Truly, I wouldn't dare," Yumwon said coldly. "I am teaching you. This is not a negotiation." I wanted to say more, but he had already turned and walked away. After a few steps, he suddenly paused. Without turning back, his voice drifted back, so quiet and fragile, it sounded like shattering. "If you really did inherit his legacy, then remember for me that he still owes me a plate of Osmandus cake." I stood frozen in place for a long time, unable to move, until the system chimed again. Side quest. Repay the old promise completed. Hidden rewards unlocked. I let out a bitter laugh. Forget the rewards. This debt has indeed been owed for far, far too long. The next day, at 5 in the morning, I stood on Listening Snowcliff, clutching a basic wooden sword issued by the sect.
The first lesson Yumwon taught me wasn't some fancy sword technique.
It was the horse stance. He made me stand right at the edge of the cliff, facing the mountain peaks, and told me not to move a single muscle for 2 hours. Well, I knew this drill all too well. Back then, this was exactly how I used to punish him. And now, it's my turn. Took about a perfect circle of karma. Lei Zhao happened to walk by the bottom of the cliff. Seeing my robes whipping wildly in the wind, it couldn't help but shout, "Brother Lin!" Being personally trained by the Sect master. How does it feel? I gritted my teeth and forced a smile. Absolutely wonderful.
兄万，时间你吧。
Said expressionlessly. Lower your stance by another 3 inches. Relax your shoulders just an inch. The sword intent burst forth. I thought to myself, wait, I'm the one who taught him those words. Seriously, I really was the one who taught him that. I had no choice but to comply. But the moment I adjusted my stance, a sudden gust of wind swept up the cliffside. The wooden sword in my hand trembled slightly and actually traced half an arc on its own. So, Yumen's eyes narrowed. I immediately dropped the wooden sword and cried, "Sect Master, the sword slipped!" Ruan stared at the wooden sword lying on the ground. For a slip of the sword to execute the second form of the Wet Chow style. That is quite a feat. Without changing my expression, I said, "Your disciple just got lucky." Yumen suddenly smiled, but that smile made my scalp tingle. Your senior brother used to say that too. I immediately shut my mouth. For the next 7 days, I headed up the cliff every day at 5 in the morning.
Went to Sangfeng Court at 7 to fix the roof.
Hidden node. Help Tumian till the vegetable patch and feed the animals. Pay attention my Pei Zhao studying formation arrays. At 3 in the afternoon, ran errands at the apothecary.
And sometimes came back to the courtyard to cook.
My life was as busy as that of a real new disciple.
But actually brought me a rare, long-lost sense of ease. In the cultivation world, everyone chases immortality, but having lived for 99 lifetimes. What I miss most is often just a bowl of hot porridge and a warm lamp, or a group of people sitting around a battered table, fighting over the last piece of bamboo shoot. But the peace didn't last long.
On the 8th day, Shi Guanlan, an inner sect disciple, came to Zhangfeng Court.
He brought 3 fellow disciples with him, holding a challenge scroll in his hand. Su Mian was squatting in the courtyard repairing a tool, and Pei Zhao was up on the roof. I was in the kitchen kneading dough. Shu Guanlan stood at the courtyard gate. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for all the nearby disciples to hear.
Sangfeng Court has reopened. According to the sect's old rules,
You must undergo the inner sect's sword challenge. If you can't withstand 3 moves, Sangfeng Court's monthly allowance for this year will be cut in half.
Pei Zhao poked his head out from the roof.
Cut it again? If you cut it anymore, we'll have to live on nothing but air.
主管案，快点引路啊！
His eyes locked onto me. Lin Fan, do you dare to accept? I shook my head without a second thought. No, I don't. Everyone froze in shock. The answer came way too fast. It instantly killed attention and left everyone speechless. Shu Guanlan frowned. Weren't you quite brave back at the sword testing stele? I replied in all earnestness. My hand slipped that day. My hand isn't slipping today, so no fight. Low chuckles erupted from the crowd. Duan's face turned ugly, unable to keep his composure.
Xuyin stood up. I'll take the challenge.
I glanced at him. Sumian was only at the 5th level of Qi refining, while Shi Guanlan was at the peak of foundation establishment. The gap was just too huge. He's the one I'm here to challenge. Just then, Sha Wenshi appeared outside the courtyard out of nowhere. He glanced at the challenge scroll. It is indeed a long-standing tradition of our sect, he said calmly. But a sword challenge should be a friendly spar. You must not harm anyone's cultivation foundation.
孙光兰靠个海的山，这是恰跑安这山的。
I sighed inwardly. There was no escaping this. If I kept hiding, the faith power of Kangfeng Goatyard would be cut in half, and we wouldn't even have rice in our porridge tonight. So I wiped the flour off my hands. I picked up the fire poker leaning against the door. Shu Guanlan frowned even deeper. You're going to use that? I nodded. The sect's wooden swords are too expensive. If they break, I have to pay for them. But this fire poker is free.
Bijiang clacked from the rooftop. Makes perfect sense.
The 3 disciples behind Shu Guanlan couldn't help but laugh out loud. But Shu Guanlan didn't laugh. He drew his sword, and the sword light fell like rain. His first move, spring water over the peaks, was beautiful. The sword shadows pressed forward in waves. It was perfect for suppressing a weaker opponent. I stood there, motionless, until the tip of his sword was only 3 inches from my chest. Only then did I gently raise the poker and tap it toward the lower left. Shu Guanlan's sword momentum instantly shattered. Before he could even launch his second move, he was thrown completely off balance by his own spiritual power. The crowd gasps in disbelief. I quickly made an excuse. Whoops, the ground's just uneven. He had slipped. Shi Guanlan's face darkened, and he immediately unleashed his second move. Cloud Bridge Crossing. The blade flashed horizontally, 3 times faster than before. I took a step back and tapped my fire poker right on the weakest spot of his blade. The ringing of his sword abruptly died. Su Guanlan's wrist went completely numb, and he almost dropped his sword. I chimed in with another excuse. Sorry, my poker's just a bit hard. Shu Guanlan's gaze finally turned dead serious. For his third move, he didn't use any flashy swordplay. Instead, he poured all his spiritual energy into a raw, heavy thrust. It was silent and plain, but incredibly lethal. Sumian's face paled. Even Pei Zhao leaped down from the roof, but I just smiled. Now, this is more like it. I took a step forward. My fire poker slid right along his blade, redirecting his own momentum, before gently tapping his shoulder.
去勾栏服务影子里，
The tip of his sword stopped right in front of my sleeve, unable to advance even half an inch. A flash of gold flickered deep in my eyes. I pulled back my poker, stepped back, and said, "Thanks for the match." Su Guanglan stared at the speck of black ash on the tip of his sword. His face went from pale to flushed, and then from flushed to pale again. After a long silence, he sheathed his sword and bowed. I lost. The moment he said those words, the crowd erupted in an uproar. I thought he would fly into a rage out of embarrassment, but I didn't expect him to admit defeat so readily. It actually made me respect him a little. Su Guanglan looked up at me. "I lost within 3 moves, but I will be back." I nodded. "Sure, anytime. Next time, bring some wine."
说过了，我生的。
Pedro immediately chimed in. "Or bring medicine." "Yeah, or medicine. And we're short on silver too," Sumian added.
Zugulan fell silent for a moment.
Surprisingly, he pulled 3 bags of spiritual rice out of his storage bag and placed them at the courtyard gate as the promised payment. With that, he turned and left. His back looked a little less arrogant than when he first arrived, and showed a bit more of the open-mindedness a true swordsman should have. I looked at those 3 bags of spiritual rice and felt pretty good. Fighting doesn't matter. Eating does. But a split second later, this system's notification chimed again. Host has countered a Foundation establishment sword strike with a mortal body. Your sword's sovereign identity exposure rate has increased to 12%. Passively activating Traceless Sword Step. As the system's voice faded, the words Traceless Sword Step flashed through my mind. The next second, my knees buckled slightly. The sensation was incredibly subtle, like someone was threading a red-hot iron wire from my ankles, straight up into my meridians. I immediately grabbed the doorframe, pretending to just be staring at those 3 bags of spiritual rice. Pishai was still cheering, and Sumian was walking over to carry the rice.
Su Guanglan had already turned and walked away.
No one noticed that my back was already drenched in a cold sweat. This body in this lifetime isn't the Sword Sovereign's body from my previous 99 lives. Trying to channel the Sword Sovereign's power with a mortal body is like using a cracked clay pot to hold boiling spiritual soup. It might hold up for a moment, but it won't last long. I stared at my toes for a moment. Traceless Sword Step is incredibly useful, but if the system keeps forcing these activations, I might not even survive until the Sect's great catastrophe 3 years from now. I'll probably fall apart before then. Pishao rushed over, hugging the bags of spiritual rice. "Brother Lin, are we having an extra helping tonight?" I took a slow, deep breath, swallowing down the metallic taste of blood in my throat. "Yes, we absolutely must. My body is practically falling apart. If I don't eat 2 more bowls, how am I going to survive?" That night, Kangsung Glordyard enjoyed the most delicious meal since we joined the sect. The spiritual rice porridge was thick and creamy. Sumiman stir-fried some greens, and Pai Shao somehow managed to dig up a small jar of sauce. I made sweet osmanthus cakes. As they came out of the steamer, a sudden breeze swept through the courtyard, and the first sword lamp lit up completely. Its soft glow illuminated the small yard. It felt so warm. Nothing like a cold, heartless cultivation sect. More like New Year's Eve in a regular mortal home. His eyes suddenly welled up with tears. I asked him what was wrong. He whispered, "My mom. She used to make this too. She passed away when I was little, and I haven't tasted this flavor in a very long time." For once, Peichel didn't make any jokes. He just pushed his own piece over and said, "Here, eat mine. I don't really have a sweet tooth anyway." But the next second, he turned around, staring at the plate and gulping. I found it so funny. Seeing him stare at the plate and gulping again, I couldn't help but smile. I put another piece on his plate. No need to pretend. Kang Feng Ye doesn't have that many rules. Pijia let out a goofy laugh. "Well, then I won't stand on ceremony." The 3 of us ate the cakes. The candlelight flickered gently. Suddenly, I felt like this lifetime was different from the previous 99. Before, all I cared about was completing my tasks. But this time, I started to fear that the tasks would come too quickly. I was afraid this rundown courtyard would be swept away by the Great Tribulation just after we finished fixing it up. Late at night, Yunwan arrived. He stood outside the courtyard gate, not stepping inside. His gaze fell upon the remaining half plate of osmanthusa cakes on the table. I sighed, picked up the plate, and walked over. "Sect leader, if you don't mind." But Yuan just stared at the cakes and didn't take them. After a long silence, he said softly, "The osmanthuis cakes he made always had a tiny pinch of salt sprinkled on at the end." My hand trembled because I really did sprinkle some salt on them. They're too sweet. They get sickening. A pinch of salt brings out the full aroma. That was always my habit. Before I could think of a way to talk my way out of this, Pijia shouted from inside the room, "Brother Lin, how come your cake is sweet with a hint of salt? So weird." I immediately chimed in. "See? Even he thinks it's weird." Yongwan didn't smile. He picked up a piece and took a small bite, but tears caught him off guard, streaming down his face. A single drop fell right onto the osmanthus cake. He quickly turned his face away, as if he didn't want anyone to see. A sudden pang hit my chest. Before I died in my 70-second life, the person I worried about most was Yuan. He was still so young back then, yet I pushed him right into the line of fire, making him lead the sect. I thought time would make him forget. But who would have thought someone would guard a single osmanthus tree for 100 years? I whispered, "Sect master, if your senior brother were still alive, he would definitely want you to eat well,
and sleep well. And stop carrying everything on your own. Yumon whipped his head around to look at me. How do you know I always carry everything on my own? My heart sank. Crap,
I said too much. Keeping a straight face, I lied. Sect Master, you just look like you carry the weight of the world on your shoulder.
Do one narrow his eyes. You know how to read faces?
I quickly shook my head.
No, I don't.
I just blurted it out. The system didn't make a sound. I let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. I can't just mess around with superstitious face reading. It's too easy to trigger some weird flag.
Yuan picked up the half-empty plate of osmothus cakes and walked away.
Before leaving, he tossed a jade token to me. Go to the Library of Scriptures tomorrow and pick out a basic sword technique. I caught the jade token, thinking to myself, a basic one is perfect. The more basic it is, the less likely I am to blow my cover. But the next day, the moment I stepped into the Library of Scriptures, trouble found its way to me. The Library of Scriptures has 9 floors in total. New disciples are only allowed on the first floor. The first floor holds only basic manuals, like the Minor Cloud Sword Manual, the 13 Styles of the Gentle Breeze, or the Pine Branch Sword Manual. Just simple martial arts, which was perfect for me. Just as I was about to grab any random beginner's manual, an argument suddenly broke out near the stairs. A disciple in gray robes was shoved, stumbling backward. The books in his arms scattered all over the floor. The one who shoved him was named Xu Mingyan. He was the personal disciple of the elder in charge of the library, and was usually in charge of organizing the sword manuals. Frowning, he barked. He Shawan. How many times do I have to tell you? Incomplete sword manuals are not to be borrowed. Are you deaf or what? The gray-robed disciple, he shaman, lowered his head and picked up the books. He said in a quiet, meek voice, I just wanted to copy a section. I wasn't going to take it out. Xu Mingyan sneered. Your spiritual root is pure garbage. You've been here for 3 years and you're still at the Qi condensation. What's the point of hanging around the second floor so much? You'd be better off going to Linting to work. At least you won't be wasting paper. The words weren't overly malicious, but they were incredibly hurtful. He Shawan's fingers clenched tightly. The onlookers stayed silent. I wasn't planning on getting involved, but as my eyes swept over that torn, scattered manuscript, my steps suddenly ground to a halt. The damaged manuscript was titled, 9 Questions of the Broken Branch. Others couldn't make heads or tails of it, but I recognized it instantly. It was the sword principles I had casually written for a woodcutter boy during my 31st life. It didn't teach methods of slaughter or killing, but how the weak could overcome the strong. How to find a glimmer of hope in the direst of straits. I never expected that now. Only half a volume would remain, left to gather dust in some forgotten corner. See me staring at the book. Ximingyan raised an eyebrow. What? You want to learn this garbage manual too? I bent down to pick up the torn manuscript. The manual isn't what's useless here, I said calmly. It's the idiots who can't understand it. The room went dead silent. Ximingyan's face darkened instantly. What did you say? I sighed inwardly. Why couldn't I just keep my mouth shut? Maybe it was because I got too used to putting people in their place back in my 99th life as the Supreme Sword Venerable. Xu Mingyan drew out a bamboo slip. Private duels are forbidden in the Pavilion of Hidden Texts. We can test each other's comprehension. If you can solve the first question of this ruined manuscript, I will apologize to Hishaman. But if you can't, you will hand over your jade token and be banned from entering the pavilion for 3 months. I looked down at the manuscript. The first question read, when facing the wind, how can one remain undefeated? The blank margins were filled with annotations from past scholars. Some wrote, overcome strength with softness. Some wrote, go with the flow and yield. Some wrote, sacrifice the branch to save the root. All were correct, but far too superficial. I picked up a brush and wrote 4 words in the margin. Borrow wind, bloom flowers.
虚名扬，腹肉经少。
I continued writing. To break is not to fail. Though broken, the wielder is not truly defeated. If the broken blade borrows the wind's strength, it will take root where it lands. For those with broken wings, survival comes from 100 breaks. The sword is no different. 1 strike is broken, so use that momentum to carve out a second path. The deadlock is shattered. Freed from obsession, the cold steel suddenly gave a soft, gentle tremble. Between the worn pages, a warm, gentle glow of swordlight began to rise, like spring warmth breaking through the ice. Hishaman stood frozen, and Xu Mingyan was completely dumbfounded too. From the depths of the sword pavilion, an ancient, gravelly voice echoed, Who solved the riddle of the broken sword? In the next, a white-haired elder materialized inside the pavilion. He was the elder of the sword pavilion, Fu Qingdeng. He picked up the tattered manual, gazing at it for a long time. Suddenly, he bowed deeply to me. Young friend, this riddle, I have been trapped by it for 40 years. Today, it is finally solved. I quickly sidestepped to avoid his bow. Elder, you honor me too much, I said. Meanwhile, Xu Mingyan's face turned completely. Fu Qingdeng glared at him. Apologize. Xu Mingyan gritted his teeth, but dared not disobey. He turned, hung his head to Hishaman, and muttered, I went too far just now. I am sorry. Hishaban's eyes welled with tears. Yet he still bowed back politely. It is fine. I handed the tattered manual to him. Study it if you want. Just because the path is narrow doesn't mean there is no way forward. Hishaman nodded vigorously. At that moment, I saw a spark of hope ignite in his eyes. And right then, the system Host has restored the principle of the broken sword.
Exposure value has increased to 17%.
Passively activated. Broken sword heart. I was utterly speechless. I literally only wrote 4 words.
This system is getting completely unreasonable.
But Fu Qingdong refused to let me leave.
He insisted on stuffing 3 basic sword manuals into my hands, and even gave me an access pass to the 2nd floor of the sword pavilion.
I couldn't refuse him.
So I had no choice but to accept. The moment I stepped out of the sword pavilion,
Pei Zhao popped out from behind a tree
and called out, "Berzlin, I heard you slapped Xi Mingyan's face using just 4 words inside the pavilion."
The news traveled that fast?
I asked in shock.
Pei Zhao shrugged.
What did I say?
The greatest technique of ours Yanyu sect is called gossip transmission.
I rubbed my temples. Keeping a low profile was going to be an uphill battle. For the next month, I tried my absolute best to play dumb and act weak. During morning class, I deliberately messed up my basic footwork. And on top of that, I made sure to channel my energy half a beat too slow. When it came to the Sect's minor exam, I barely managed to ring the test bell once. But the harder I tried to play weak, the more things backfired. Because my messed up footwork, after being studied on Xiaowen's orders, was found to perfectly bypass 3 common combat flaws. And that half-beat delay in channeling energy was seen by the Master Herbalist and the Elders as a brilliant trick to minimize strain on the meridians. They claimed it was the perfect method for disciples with weak constitutions. And as for my single bell chime, my answer sheets were taken by Fu Qingdong to be dissected as a textbook warning of what not to do. But as he kept analyzing it, he realized that hidden beneath my failure was a completely revolutionary new approach. So he ended up showering me with praise all over again. I finally realized when someone is too powerful for too long, even trying to play the amateur looks like a god-level flex. To save the situation, I decided to do something truly ordinary. Grow vegetables. The backyard of Zhanfeng Courtyard had 3 mu of barren land. So I grabbed my sidekick Sumian, and he shone to dig irrigation channels and till the soil. We burned weeds to make ash and fertilized the soil. Exhausted, Sumian collapsed onto the ridge of the field. "Brother Lin, we are cultivation disciples."
Not farmers.
I tossed the hoe to him and replied,
To cultivate immortality, you first have to survive.
"If you can't even put food on the table, what's the point of talking about the great Tao?"
Simian found this deeply profound.
Well, Hisho and me eagerly took notes. 3 days later, the Master Herbalist and an Elder passed by Zhanfeng Courtyard. When they saw the spiritual sprouts popping up in perfect, neat rows, they squatted down right there and refused to leave. "How on earth did you dig these irrigation channels?" I casually replied. "They follow the mountain slope in 3 tiers, storing water at the top, slowing it in the middle, and draining it at the bottom. This way, heavy rain won't flood the crops, and dry spells won't wither them." Elder, his eyes lit up. "And what about that grass ash?" "Oh, I mixed it with crushed seashell powder," I said. "It balances the soil's properties and keeps it warm." The Elder slapped his thigh and cried, "Brilliant!" Inside, I groaned. "Oh no, not again." Sure enough, the very next day, the deacons from the Sect's medicinal garden all swarmed in the Zhanfeng Court, clamoring to inspect the courtyard and take a study tour of my vegetable plot. My farming method was officially named the Kangfing Triple Harvest Method. 4 days later, Yunwan personally approved it, ordering it to be promoted across the entire sect. As I stood in the middle of the vegetable garden, and the villaged paps watching a group of elders crowd around my spiritual sprouts, showering them with praise, all I wanted was to bury myself deep in the dirt. To make matters worse, the system had to chime in, saying, "Host has successfully improved the Sect's basic output. The Sect's fortune has slightly increased, and your task completion rate has improved." My eyes lit up. Wait a minute, the task completion rate actually went up? Now that is actually a good thing. But the system quickly explained, the host's ultimate destiny is to die defending the Sect gates. The more stable and secure the Sect is, the more meaningful your sacrifice will be when you die. I went dead silent. So, in other words, the more I try to keep a low profile, the more I'm just helping myself die a glorious, honorable death. That logic is incredibly comforting. In my 3rd month after joining the Sect,
In Sang Choyan Sopto opened up the Qinglo secret rail.
all new disciples were required to go in and gather Cloudheart Jade. Cloudheart Jade wasn't particularly valuable. It was a vital minor material used for crafting the Sect's protective array base. The task was supposed to be simple, with very little danger involved. By all accounts, I should have been able to just slip in, slack off, grab a few stones, and walk out completely fine. But the night before we set off, the 2nd lantern in the Changfeng court suddenly flickered to life. A tiny crack materialized right in the wick, as if something in the distance was slowly prying at the very foundation of the Sect. I stared at the lantern. My heart sank for the very first time. This was no ordinary sign. Someone was tampering with the 7 stars moonlocking array. The great catastrophe facing the Zanyuan Sect 3 years from now might not be a natural disaster at all. Rather, someone is already laying their groundwork, starting right now. The next day, in front of the secret realm entrance, Deacon Xiao Wen announced the rules. You will form teams of 3. You must return before sunset. No stealing what your fellow disciples gather. And under no circumstances are you to trespass into the Black Vine Abyss. Violators will face severe punishment. I was assigned to the team with Pei Zhao and Su Mian, while He Shouman went with 2 other outer sect disciples. After we entered the mystic realm, Pei Zhao immediately pulled out a hand-drawn map. Brother Lin, I studied this last night. There is plenty of Cloudstar Jade to the east, fewer spirit beasts to the west, water to the south, and the Black Fine Valley to the north. So, which way should we go?
I pointed at our feet. Get down first. Purell blinked in confusion. Get down? What for?
No sooner had the words left his mouth than a flock of azure-feathered birds screeched and swooped past right over our heads. The gust of wind they whipped up sliced off a shower of leaves beside us.
Pei Zhao stared at the fallen leaves on the ground
and quietly squatted, even lower. Brother Lin, how did you know? I pointed to the dew on the grass tips. Look, the dew is leaning east. That means a flock of birds was just startled over there. It is basic common sense.
Startled birds? Common sense?
Even hunters at the foot of the mountain know that.
Su Mian shot me a look. Since when does a tofu vendor from King Sui Town know anything about hunting?
I replied in all seriousness. Hey, tofu gets pecked at by birds too, you know?
She fell silent. It was an utterly ridiculous excuse, yet she could not argue with it.
We avoided the spirit beasts along the way,
And quickly gathered enough Cloudstar Jade.
just as I was about to find a nice spot to sleep until sunset. A sudden cry for help echoed from the distance. It is he, Shulman. At the time we rushed to the scene, Lindruus were flashing wildly along the edge of the Black Vine Valley.
He's Shulman and 2 other disciples were trapped inside a vine array. The vines were not directly attacking them, but they kept relentlessly tightening, shrinking their space.
In less than 10 minutes, they would be squeezed right into the crevice at the bottom of the valley.
Gijal's face paled. This is a forbidden array. Who on earth lured them in there? Su Mian drew her sword, ready to strike. I stopped her.
Do not cut the vines.
Cut one, and the array tightens by another inch.
Pei Zhao panicked.
Then what do we do?
I stared at the array runes glowing on the ground.
The answer was already clear in my mind. This was not the Mystic Realm's original array.
Someone had hastily rigged this trap using Cloudstar Jade. Luring the new disciples in was entirely intentional.
Their target wasn't he, Shulman,
But the tech's foundation anchoring materials. I picked up a tree branch and drew 7 spots on the ground.
Pei Zhao, set up the formation exactly as I say. Su Man, go wait by the 3rd Black Vine. Once it lights up, pierce the root exactly 3 inches deep.
Remember, only pierce, do not cut. Neither of them hesitated.
They immediately followed my instructions. Meanwhile, I walked to the front of the formation, tossing the Cloudheart Jade I had gathered into it, piece by piece. With every piece I threw,
The vine formation slowed down just a bit more.
Pei Zhao stared at me.
it is growing brighter and brighter.
This wasn't breaking the formation.
This was tricking the formation into defeating itself.
I nodded. Formations are just like people. When pushed, they easily expose their weaknesses. As the final piece of Cloudheart Jade fell,
The vine formation suddenly recoiled.
and a gap opened up in the massive vine wall.
And Su Mian pulled Shulman and the other 2 to safety.
Just as everyone escaped, a dull boom echoed from the bottom of the valley. It sounded as if the Earth's pulse itself had been struck. My expression stiffened. Someone just took something from the bottom of the valley.
Pei Zhao realized it too.
Should we pursue? I stared down into the valley.
A trace of unfamiliar sword energy lingered there, sharp and clean.
It didn't feel like an evil path. Instead, it felt like a highly trained Sect sword cultivator. If we give chase, we might find a clue, but I also risk blowing another layer of my cover.
I hesitated for just a moment before saying, saving lives is our priority. Let's head back first.
Pei Zhao nodded.
But Su Mian suddenly whispered, Lin Fan?
Did you already know something was wrong with Black Vine Valley? I smiled slightly. Just a guess.
She stared at me. Every time you say it's just a guess,
It always turns out to be true. I was completely speechless. Once we returned to the entrance of the secret realm,
he Shamo reported everything exactly as it had happened.
Shawan's expression grew incredibly grim.
He immediately ordered the Qinglo secret realm to be sealed off. That night, the sect's Shenzhen Hall was brightly lit.
Every single disciple who had entered the secret realm was interrogated, and I was no exception. The one conducting the interrogation was the law enforcement elder, Yanxi.
He was a strictly upright and unyielding man, with eyes as sharp as 2 measuring rulers.
Yingfan, how did you know that the vine core couldn't be cut?
I replied.
I read it in a book. Which book?
I fell silent for a moment. Just a collection of wild rumors.
Elsa frowned. The Sect library doesn't have any book by that name.
I answered in all seriousness. The tea house next to my family's tofu stall does. Yansa was instantly choked up by my response.
The disciple taking notes beside him almost burst out laughing. Yansa asked again, then how did you direct Pei Zhao to set up the formation?
I replied, I don't know anything about formations. I just thought those few spots looked right. Pei Zhao immediately chimed in from the side. Elder, he's lying! The 7 spots he pointed out happened to form a perfect reverse flow dipper pattern.
It was even more precise than what my academy instructors taught me.
I turned my head to look at him. My gaze was dead calm. Dijal shrank back, pulling in his neck, but he still muttered under his breath.
I'm just telling the truth.
Yas stared at me.
Staring intensely, he said, there are quite a few suspicious things about you. I sighed. This disciple knows.
Yan Tu continued. But you saved your fellow disciples, and even recovered the Cloud Soul Jade. Merits and faults are judged.
The suspicious points will still be investigated, but rewards and punishments must also be clear. He placed a small green jade token onto the table. 300 Sect contribution points.
And the spiritual energy of your Canfang sword is restored by 10%. My eyes lit up. 10%. How much rice can that buy?
Yen's expression turned subtle. Is that all you care about? I nodded.
To us ordinary folk, food is everything. Yuan Sefai silent for a long time.
Suddenly, he let out a chuckle. Go on then.
But don't think this old man won't be keeping an eye on you. I stood up and bowed. This disciple will certainly work hard.
Yang Se waved his hand dismissively. Now get out of Shenzhen Hall. I quickly scrabbled out.
Did I cause trouble for you guys? I shook my head. You spoke the truth. You did nothing wrong.
Pijia looked down. But you clearly didn't want anyone to know.
I looked at the flickering lights at the far end of the mountain path. Think things, I whispered. It's not that I don't want to tell you. It is that I cannot. Pei Zhao, a rare silence fell between us. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Fine. From now on, if you don't want to talk about it, But if you are going to do something dangerous, you have to bring me with you. I let out a soft laugh. Your cultivation level is too low. Bringing you along will only hold me back. Pei Zhao immediately protested. Hey, my formation skills are actually very strong.
I nodded. Right. In that case, you should first
Go fix the leak-proofing formation on our roof. It's going to rain tomorrow night. He stared at me, dumbfounded. Then he bolted back toward Zhangfeng courtyard, yelling, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" As I watched his retreating figure, a sudden warmth crept into my heart. In this lifetime, it seems I have inherited a few more troubles, but also a few more people I just cannot bear to leave behind. In the wake of the Qinglo Secret Realm incident, the Kenshin section conducted a secret investigation. Yet, they failed to identify the thief who stole the array's foundation anchor. The item missing from the bottom of Black Vine Valley was a star sand pin. The 7 stars locking the moon array relies on a total of 108 star sand pins. Missing just one won't trigger an immediate catastrophe. But if it remains lost for too long, the great disaster destined for our Sect 3 years from now will strike early. I had thought about telling Yun Wan about this, but then I reconsidered. If she asks how I know the exact structure of the 7 stars locking the moon array, I'll have to spend ages explaining it to her. So, I decided to investigate the matter on my own. First step, the kitchens. After all, the darkest secrets of any sect eventually leak to 3 specific places. The kitchens, the herb garden, and the sword washing pool. The kitchen staff always know exactly who is sneaking around for food in the middle of the night. Herb garden disciples know exactly who has been treated for secret wounds. And the disciples at the sword washing pool know best whose blade is stained with an energy it shouldn't be carrying. With 3 hearty meals of oil-braised delicacies, 2 plates of sweet osmanduses cakes, and a big pot of spiritual rice porridge, I successfully won over the kitchen staff and secured my first real clue. 3 days before the incident in the mystic realm.
薛明燕的体验铺表里，特大的口米也令得带的酿。
Claiming it was for the night duty elder. But that night, there was no elder on duty at the pavilion. Then I went to the herb garden. Using the 3-channel wind hiding method, I helped the elder revive a double-leaf orchid, which earned me a second clue. Xu Mingyan recently had faint traces of vine poison on her wrist, looking as if she'd been grazed by a black vine. Finally, when we went to the sword washing pool, Su Minar dug up the 3rd clue for me. Xu Mingyan's sword had been washed twice, 3 days ago. The first wash was to clean off mud. The second wash was to clean off star gauze powder. With all 3 clues gathered, all suspicion pointed directly to Xu Mingyan, but I couldn't help but feel it was all too smooth. So smooth, it felt like someone was deliberately pushing her right in front of me. That night, I snuck outside the Jinzhang pavilion. And sure enough, I saw Xu Mingyan sneaking downstairs. She was clutching a long box in her arms, heading straight toward the back mountain. I quietly tailed her from behind. Just as we reached the sword washing pool, blinding array lights suddenly flared up all around us. A dozen law enforcement disciples emerged from the shadows. The elder Yan said coldly, "Xu Mingyan, you have stolen the remnant scrolls from Jinsang Pavilion and took the star gauze powder. Do you plead guilty?" Xu Mingyan's face turned deathly pale. "Elder, it wasn't me. Someone ordered me to bring this box here. Elder, it wasn't me. Someone told me to deliver this box here. I was only..." "Who told you to deliver it?" Yance cut her off sharply. Xu Mingyan opened her mouth to speak, but suddenly clutched her throat in sheer agony. My brow furrowed. It wasn't a curse. It was a throat-sealing pill. A forbidden drug used to silence people. It's not fatal, but it robs you of your voice for a short time. It seems the mastermind behind this was prepared for everything. As Yance stepped forward, I suddenly spoke up. "Elder, the remnant scrolls are not in that box." Yance looked at me. "How do you know?" I replied. "The Taiching remnant scrolls are mounted on heavy black gold spindles. If the box were actually holding them, she wouldn't have been carrying it so effortlessly."
Xingyan walked ahead toward me.
Her eyes pleading for help. Yance opened the long box. Sure enough, there was nothing inside but an ordinary stone. Beneath the stone lay a piece of paper, and on it 4 words were written. "Barry Lin Fan." In an instant, everyone's eyes snapped to me. I let out a soft sigh. Here it comes. The frame-up might be late, but it never fails to show up. Yansu picked up the paper, his expression turning dark. "Ling Fan, how do you explain this?" I stepped forward, glanced at the paper, and said flatly, "The handwriting is too ugly. It's definitely not mine." Everyone was taken aback. Yance frowned deeply. "Be serious," I replied.
I am being very serious, Elder. The person behind this tried so hard to copy my handwriting, but they didn't know that when I write horizontal strokes, I always press down first before lifting the brush. You see, when I was a kid selling tofu, I had to keep the books. I was so afraid the cheap ink would smudge that I pressed down hard on every single horizontal. But the strokes on this paper? They have the shape, but they're completely lifeless. Janssen turned to the recording disciple. Go fetch Lin Fan's notes. A few moments later, the two samples of handwriting were laid side by side. At first glance, they looked almost identical, but under close scrutiny, the differences were clear. I continued. Furthermore, the ink on this paper carries the distinct scent of pine soot. That kind of premium ink is only used on the 3rd floor of the library. New disciples aren't even allowed on the 3rd floor. The person who got this ink
must be at least a manager there.
虚名人费是真的逃看了。
and she shook her head in sheer panic. I looked at her. It wasn't you. You were just a pawn. The real culprit is standing right here among the crowd. The moment the words left my lips, at the very back of the crowd, an inconspicuous disciple in blue robes tried to slip away. But Su Mian was already waiting for him. A sword in a bamboo sheath flashed out, blocking his path. The man's face twisted in horror, and he spun around, desperate to escape. Pei Zhao threw down a formation disc, and 3 glowing ropes of light rose from the ground, binding him tightly.
Yance ruled coldly. Seize him.
The blue-robed disciple was dragged forward. His name was Meng Shu, a manager on the 2nd floor of the library. He was always quiet and kept to himself, so no one ever expected it to be him. Surprisingly, Meng Shu confessed without a fight. Even after being caught, he only kept repeating one thing. I never meant to hurt my fellow disciples. I was only taking back what rightfully belonged to someone else.
Yance narrowed his eyes. Whose things?
Ombumo remained silent, keeping his mouth tightly shut. This planted a crucial seed for what was to come. I stared at a speck of silver powder clinging to his cuff. The silver powder was incredibly fine, like the dust left behind by falling stardust. But beneath that silver powder was a faint, almost invisible imprint. It was the shape of a black half-lantern, barely a thin line on the fabric. It looked as though someone had tried to erase it with spiritual energy on purpose, but didn't quite manage to wipe it clean. My heart sank slightly. This emblem didn't seem to belong to the righteous Beilu Academy. Beilu Academy's designs mostly featured cloud and antler patterns, but this black half-lantern was cold. Cold as a silent, watching eye. I didn't expose him right away. Instead, I asked out of the blue. Did someone from Beilu Academy send you? Kumpamung's pupils instantly contracted. This sudden reaction was definitely because of Beilu Academy, but the black half-lantern on his cuff gave a faint, subtle flicker, as if laughing at him. Gritting his teeth, Uncle Meng whispered, I've only ever met one of them. He wore the robes of an instructor from Beilu Academy, but a bronze token of a black lantern hung from his blade. He said the 7 stars locking the Monterey never belonged to the Shenyun sect in the first place. He said he was only reclaiming an old relic, and that it wouldn't harm anyone. I asked, what was his name?
Uncle Meng shook his head. He didn't say.
He only said he was a lantern bearer. Lantern bearer. I repeated those words in my head. Perfect. It seems there is another shadow lurking behind Palu Academy, and they have had their claws in the Xinyu sect for a very long time. Yansu ordered Uncle Meng to be taken to the discipline platform. Although Ximingyan was used, the charges of stealing the box were undeniable. He was sentenced to 3 months of hard labor at the sword-washing pool.
Ximingyan walked up to me, lowered his head, and said, I used to look down on you.
Yet today you actually spoke up for me. I owe you one. I waved him off. No need for that. Just don't stop He Showman from reading books in the future. He nodded. I promise. After this storm blew over, King Feng Pivian became even more famous, giving me an even bigger headache. But it wasn't without its perks. Our monthly allowance has recovered by 30%. Finally, Kamfang Gotrard didn't have to keep a tight tally on our accounts every single day. He Shaman was also making rapid progress thanks to the 9 questions of the Broken Branch. In just 1 month, he broke through from the 2nd level of Qi refining to the 4th level. After returning from the Qingluo secret path, Sumian found inner peace. She suggested taking a trip out of town, and Pei Zhao even fixed our leaky roof formation. Although the formation would occasionally funnel the rainwater straight into his own room, overall, it was a success. As the days passed by, the Yejun sect seemed to return to peace on the surface. But under the surface, the hidden clues were getting more and more clear. Yes, the hidden undercurrents were becoming clearer and clearer. The 7-star moon-locking formation was missing a piece of star sand. Beilu Academy had intervened, and 2 of the Kangfeng spirit lamps had lit up. Yuan started coming to Kangfeng Gojard to eat more and more frequently. She still didn't press me about my identity, but every time she looked at me, her eyes seemed to say, go on, keep playing dumb. I'll just keep waiting. It put so much pressure on me. And I had to try even harder to play Lin Fan, just an ordinary cooking unprocessed. Instantly sword-skilled, slightly formation-savvy, moderately herb-mowing, and occasionally crime-solving, accidentally face-slapping ordinary disciple. You know, incredibly ordinary. Half a year later, the Sanyun sect held the 100 Peaks competition. Disciples from all courtyards, both outer and inner sects, could participate. The rewards were generous. The first place winner could enter the depths of the sword-wash pool to commune with the swords for 3 days. I didn't want to participate at first, but if no one from Kangfeng Courtyard fought, our monthly allowance would be docked as a rule. And right now, I am extremely sensitive to the words monthly allowance. So, I decided to send Suman, Pei Zhao, and He-Saman, the three of them, to compete. Our only job would be cheering and clapping from the sidelines. Simian frowned. You're not going? I replied. My talent is too low. I'd only embarrass myself up there.
Pichao rolled his eyes. Brother Lin.
Doesn't your conscience hurt when you say things like that? I checked my heart for a second. Nope, not at all. On the first day of the tournament, He-Shaman was up against a 6th-level Qi refining disciple. Everyone thought he would lose. After all, he had been in the sect for 3 years, completely unnoticed. But the moment he stepped onto the stage, he used the 9 questions of the broken branch to shatter the opponent's fierce attacks 3 times in a row. Finally, using the opponent's own momentum against them, he pointed his sword right at the opponent's cuff. The entire crowd gasped in shock. He-Shaman actually won! When he came down from the stage, his eyes were red as he said to me, Senior Brother Lane, I can actually win. I smiled and said, it's not that you can actually win. It's that you always could. It's just that before, nobody ever showed you how to win. In the second round, Sumian goes head-to-head with an inner sect disciple. Her opponent's cultivation is 2 tiers higher than hers, and their swordplay is even faster. But Sumian refuses to yield, holding her ground, defending all the way until the 17th move. She suddenly strikes with a sword technique, like spring thunder bursting through the earth, instantly blasting her opponent's sword right out of their hand.
She wins. Clean and beautiful.
The elders on the viewing deck nod in approval. This girl is incredibly resilient. She is highly worthy of entering the inner sect for elite training. But Sumiya looks toward the Sanfeng court,
Shaking her head as she says, I'm staying at Sangfeng.
It warms my heart. But it also worries me a bit.
The more people there are in Sanfeng court,
The more people will cry when I die in the future. And that's not exactly a good sign. In the third round, Pei Zhao steps onto the stage.
His opponent is Shi Guanlan.
The entire crowd feels there's absolutely no suspense. Even Pei Zhao himself thinks the outcome is a foregone conclusion.
So the very first thing he says upon stepping up is, Senior Brother Shi, I can—
Before the word concede can even leave his mouth, Suawan has already drawn his sword. If you dare to surrender,
Tomorrow I'll bring 10 bags of rice to Zamfeng court.
and have Lin Fan beat you up himself?
Pichau's eyes light up. 10 bags of rice?
Then, he realizes something is off. Wait. Why would Lin Fan be the one beating me up?
Chu Wanglan doesn't answer.
The flash of the blade is already upon him. Pichao has no choice but to bite the bullet and set up a formation. His cultivation is inferior to Shi Guanlan's.
His speed is inferior to Shi Guanlan's.
And his swordplay is even worse. But his formations are incredibly tricky. With every step back, another small formation talisman is laid at his feet. After 10 steps,
Kumbalan realizes his sword momentum has been delayed for a split second.
and that split second is all it takes. Using a wind talisman, Pei Zhao glides off the ground, instantly positioning himself right behind Shi Guanlan. The tip of his sword lightly taps Shi Guanlan's back. The entire crowd erupts. Even Pei Zhao himself is stunned.
I won?
I actually won? Xu Guan seized his sword, his eyes filled with complex emotions. Did I underestimate it?
But holding my head high, just because I dumped Pei Zhao, wouldn't that be underestimating myself?
I clapped from beneath the stage,
But deep down, I knew Shi Guanlan held back in the end.
it wasn't that he couldn't handle losing. He was repaying Kang Feng Yard for those 3 bags of rice with his diligence. This young man is worth befriending. As the minor competition entered its 3rd day,
The 3 from Kangfeng Yard won consecutive victories, and their momentum was unmatched.
many began to say that the one who was truly formidable in Kangfeng Yard wasn't Lin Fan, but rather, it was Lin Fan's ability to teach. Hearing this gave me a massive headache. This teacher identity is far more dangerous than just swinging a sword. Because in my past 99 lives, I was the founding ancestor of grand sects in quite a few of them. If people dig that up and expose me, my danger level will probably skyrocket.
So when the competition elder asked if I wanted to go up and show my skills,
I decisively refused. But right at that moment, something unexpected happened. A loud noise suddenly rumbled from the direction of the sword-washing pool. A cold, piercing light shot up into the sky, and the ground of the martial arts arena shook violently. A disciple cried out in panic. The core of the sword-washing pool is cracking! Everyone's faces turned pale. The sword-washing pool was where all the sword chi of the Sanyo sect gathered. If the array core shattered,
the sword chi filling the pool would flow backward.
At best, it would injure people.
at worst, it would devastate the mountain-protecting array. With Yunwan away from the sect, several elders rushed over at the same time,
But the cold light grew increasingly violent.
forcing back even the elders who tried to get close. I looked toward Kangfeng Yard and saw that the 3rd lamp had lit up. My heart sank. The mastermind behind the scenes has struck again.
And this time,
They chose to do it during the 100 Peaks competition, right in front of all the sect's disciples.
If this isn't handled well, the reputation of the Saiyun sect will plummet, and the people's hearts will be thrown into chaos. Then,
Elder Yan barked out orders for all disciples to back away and not get close. Near the sword-washing pool, there were still a few low-level disciples responsible for maintaining the array runes who hadn't evacuated yet, and one of them was Fuming Young. Since he was serving a labor service sentence, he was unable to fly on a sword to escape.
they're trapped right on the edge of that freezing sword light. Just a moment longer, and they will be shattered by the sword energy. I let out a sigh. What a pain. What an absolute hassle. But then, I charged right in.
Pei Zhao called out from behind.
Ling Fan,
Have you lost your mind?
I haven't lost my mind.
I just know one thing. If these disciples get hurt here today,
In the great trial 3 years from now, the Sanyun sect will have its spirit broken before it even begins.
a sect isn't just about gates and stones. A sect is its people. If we lose our people's hearts, no matter how strong the array is, it's useless. I stepped into the chilling glare. The traceless steps technique activated on its own. Raging sword energy whipped past me from all directions, but not a single strand touched me. The system went wild with warnings. Warning! Host is exposing a high-level movement technique. Exposure value has increased to 24%.
I didn't have time to deal with it.
I grabbed Ximinyan in one swift move.
And pushed her toward the outside. Then, I pulled out 3 more disciples in quick succession.
The Veralized disciple was trapped right next to the array core. The stone slab beneath his feet was already cracking. As I rushed over,
A stray beam of sword energy suddenly shot out from the depths of the Zygian pool, aiming straight for his forehead.
instinctively, I raised my hand with 2 fingers pinched together. I gently caught the sword energy.
The entire world fell dead silent for a second.
Everyone saw it. A new disciple with a trash 5 elements root had caught the raging sword energy of the Zygian pool with just 2 fingers.
Even I was dumbfounded.
Crap.
This is going to be impossible to explain. I pushed the disciple out of harm's way and turned to look at the array core.
Inside the crack, a star sand nail was coming loose.
It had definitely been tampered with. After repairing the Zygian pool's array core, I stared down at the star sand nail in the crack. The body of the nail had been filed down.
The original 7-star pattern on it was missing a corner.
And that missing corner hadn't been destroyed by the sword energy. It had been chipped away, piece by something.
I squatted down and gently swiped the pad of my finger along the edge of the crack. A smudge of black ash, easily brushed away, clung to my fingertip. Once inside my body, it immediately slipped into the gaps of my energy. Then, it actually shrank slightly.
A split second later, the shadow of a half-lit black lantern flashed across my fingers and vanished.
Him again. A chill ran down my spine. The Sword Horde Pavilion and the Sword Washing Pool. These secret realms.
Behind these seemingly unrelated incidents at the Sword Horde Pavilion and the Sword Washing Pool, the same exact trace is hidden.
Someone isn't just trying to tamper with the formations.
Nor are they simply trying to humiliate the Sanyun sect.
They're testing the 7 stars locking the moon formation. And they're testing me. The system's voice suddenly rang in my head.
Warning. Identity exposure has increased to 24%.
Suddenly, I felt like its voice sounded a bit like that half-lit black lantern.
Not the actual tone of it, but that subtle feeling of pushing me towards certain direction.
They're way too similar.
If I do nothing, the sword washing pool will explode. But if I do interfere, my cover will be blown.
Choosing between 2 evils.
The sword washing pool is definitely more expensive to replace. I slammed my foot right onto the eye of the formation, drew a half circle with my toe, and tapped 3 times with my fire poker. Thump, thump, thump. Instantly, the rampaging sword chi surged backward, like thousands of rivers rushing back into the ocean.
As the cold light faded,
The sword washing pool returned to peaceful calm. I stood there by the water, still holding that fire poker I'd swiped from God knows where. The entire arena fell dead silent.
Elder Yance rushed over,
Staring at the completely undamaged formation eye, then at me, utterly speechless for a long time. Finally, he asked a very simple question. "And you call this not knowing how?" I replied with a straight face. Disciple just felt those 3 taps were convenient.
Yance took a deep breath. I have lived for 300 years.
And it is the first time I've ever wanted to beat up a disciple who just saved us all. I lowered my head. "It's my fault, Elder."
Yes, import. And where exactly did you go wrong?
I replied. "Next time, I'll tap a bit softer."
Yan certainly laughed from sheer frustration.
The 100 Peaks tournament was suspended due to the accident at the sword washing pool. I was escorted to the Sect Master's hall. Yuan had also rushed back.
After listening to Yan's explanation, he didn't ask me right away. Instead, he went to inspect the formation core first. When he returned, he dismissed everyone, leaving only the 2 of us in the hall.
Yunoan stood on the high steps, looking down at me.
He recognized that the method used to restore the formation core was uniquely created by my senior brother. Back then, he thought the traditional restoration method was too slow. So, he used his sword as a brush to strike 3 points and stabilize the flow. He had only ever taught this method to me.
My scalp went numb. The system chimed. Identity exposure level has increased to 36%.
Passive skill activated.
3-point flow. I cursed the system 100 times in my head. Activate my ass! That was exactly how I blew my cover just now.
Yunwan walked down, step by step. Lin Fan, are you still going to tell me this is just a coincidence?
I remained silent. Outside the hall, the wind sounded so distant, it felt like a lifetime away. I could have kept making up lies, but looking into his eyes, those lies suddenly became too hard to say. They stuck in my throat. So, I changed my approach. "Sect Master, if one day your senior brother really returned, but for some reason, he couldn't reveal his true identity,
would you blame him?
Zhongwan's eyes slowly turned red. He didn't ask why.
He only asked, will he leave again?" My chest tightened. Yes, in 3 years, I must die. But I couldn't say those words out loud. So, I whispered. Perhaps. Yunwan stared at me, tears silently streaming down his face. Then, I will. My fingers trembled slightly. He went on, prompting me. But I would rather wait for his explanation. The silence in the hall was deafening. Suddenly I remembered the final scene of the 72nd act, where thunderclouds blanketed the sky. I did push Yunwan off the tribulation platform and told him, "Go back and be the sect master. Don't wait for me." Back then, he cried, clutching my sleeve and said, "Senior brother, you promised to make me Osmanthus cakes." I had smiled and replied, "Next time." But in the cultivation world, the two most cruel words are, "next time." What I owed him wasn't just a plate of cakes. It was an explanation. But even now, I still couldn't give it to him. All I could do was bow. "Sect master, this disciple will do his best to leave you with an answer."
Yuan closed his eyes.
When he opened them again, he had returned to being the cold, composed sect master once more. Regarding the incident at the sword cleansing pool, you did well. But a rule is a rule. I sentence you to confinement in Kangfeng Court, and you are forbidden from taking even a single step down the mountain. I was stunned for a moment. But this punishment is actually great. Being grounded basically means peace and quiet. I bowed immediately. This disciple accepts the punishment.
Yuan glanced at me
And added, "But you must still attend the morning lectures at 5 in the morning, as usual." I went silent. How does being grounded still come with morning classes?
大家 Kangfeng Court 陪教蘇米啊，人氣上門寬拿羅拉米。Are you okay?
I waved my hand. I'm fine. Grounded. Pei Zhao looked envious. No classes? That sounds amazing. Sumian calmly ruined the mood. He still has to attend the lectures.
Pei Zhao immediately looked sympathetic.
Oof, that is brutal. He Shaoan pulled out a newly copied scroll of the 9 questions of the plucked branch. Senior brother Lin, I finally figured out the second question. Could you take a look for me? Looking at the 3 of them, I subtly smiled. Sure. Since I'm grounded anyway, I've got plenty of time. For the next month, Kangfeng Court felt like our own little secluded sect. In the mornings, I endured Yuan's grueling stance training. During the day, I'd return to teach Hishaomin how to break down sword stances, practice with Suman to refine her Chunlai sword, help Pei Zhao fix his posture, and at night, we'd cook together, repair fences, and dry herbs. My first and second sword lamps grew brighter and brighter, while the third lamp finally stabilized after the sword cleansing pool was restored. I secretly drew up a map, mapping out the 7 stars locking the moon array, and marked every single spot that had been tampered with. 1 star sand nail was missing. The sword cleansing pool had cracked once, and the Blapfine bone had been disturbed once. Connecting these 3 points, they pointed directly to a spot deep underground beneath the Shanyu sect, the Guiqiao Well. That was the oldest Earth Meridian vent of the Sanyun sect, usually sealed tight, and could only be opened with the sect master's command. If anyone wanted to trigger the sect's great disaster ahead of time, the Qiao Well would be the key. On the day my confinement ended,
Yunwan suddenly announced that in 15 days, the Science Sect would hold the Yunzhou Grand Debate with the Beilu Academy.
the venue would be right here at the Sanyun sect. When the news broke, the entire sect erupted in excitement. But I knew the Beilu Academy was coming, and the person who stole the Star Sand Nail was coming too. But a month later, a cloud ship broke through the clouds and arrived. The disciples of White Egret Academy wore pristine white robes and carried themselves with elegant nobility. The leader was a young man named Qi Minghe. He was barely in his early 20s, yet he was already at the peak of Foundation establishment. His mastery of array formations was so advanced. He was ranked among the top 3 of Southern Gen's younger generation. He disembarked, and his very first move was to bow to Yunwan with a smile. I've long heard that Shenyun Sect's sword Dao is unrivaled and I have come specifically to seek your guidance. His words were polite, but his eyes swept across everyone from Kangfeng Yard before finally landing on me. I hear your esteemed sect has produced a 5-element
Sort of genius with mixed roots.
I wonder if I might meet them. Meanwhile, I was at the very back of the crowd, head down, munching on a steamed bun. Suddenly being called out. Like that, I had no choice but to raise my hand. Over here! When Timing saw the bun in my hand,
His smile deepened.
fellow Taoist Lin is indeed a free spirit. I just didn't eat enough for breakfast. After the Dao debate, White Egret Academy can host a spiritual feast for you. My eyes lit up instantly. Really? On the high platform, Yunwan cleared her throat softly. I immediately snapped back to being serious. Food is of no importance. The Tao always comes first. Beside me, Pei Zhao whispered. But your eyes literally just lit up. I stomped hard on his foot. Layer. This is the hundreds. The Nonzhou Dai debate was split into 3 rounds. Swords, arrays, and divination. The first round was a sword duel. White Egret Academy sent out a female disciple named Shenza who, with her swift, elegant swordplay, she quickly defeated 3 outer disciples of Yanyun Sect. Only when Xu Guanlan took the stage, using his Dawn Break technique, they finally win a round back. The second round was an array battle.
Zhu Minghe took the stage himself and laid down a minor heavenly circuit illusion array,
demanding that the Sanyun Sect disciples break it within the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn. Pei Zhao stepped up to volunteer. Before entering the array, he glanced back at me. I nodded at him. Don't try to break it. Just focus on finding your way out. Pei Zhao froze for a moment, then smiled. Understood.
The variations of the minor heavenly circuit illusion array were incredibly complex, and most array masters who entered would try to map out the entire.
But Jiming Here's genius lay in the fact that the more you calculated, the easier you fell into an endless loop.
Once Pei Zhao entered,
He didn't bother calculating the grand array at all.
He focused solely on the 3 feet beneath him,
Marking every step he took with a small pebble. And before the incense stick was even half burned,
he walked right out.
He even casually picked a little white flower near the formation's core and gave it to Sumian.
the entire crowd erupted.
Jiming He's expression instantly changed.
Pei Zhao cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for letting me win."
Jiming He smiled tightly. It seems I completely underestimated the Sign Yun Sect.
For the third round, Beilu Academy brought out a heart-questioning jade.
It doesn't pry into your secrets.
It only tests your choices. The jade will present 3 impossible dilemmas to be answered by disciples from both sides. This kind of test is the easiest way to show off, but also the easiest way to utterly ruin yourself. I was originally standing way in the back,
But Jiming He suddenly spoke up. "Fellow Taoist Lin, would you care to answer with me?"
I replied instantly.
That at all. Jiming He's smile instantly froze.
用完成这给截图你。
Sighing, I had no choice but to step forward. The heart-questioning jade lit up with the first question. If there is a legendary sword ahead, that can bring you world renown. But taking it requires abandoning your companion. Would you take it?
Jiming and hazard. I would not.
Fame can never outweigh the bond of a companion. The crowd nodded in approval. When it was my turn, I answered, "That depends on the sword." Everyone froze in shock.
Yongwan's eyebrow arched.
I continued, "If that sword can save more lives, I would first get my companion to safety, then return to claim the sword. If it cannot save anyone, I would leave it." A choice shouldn't just be about putting on a show. It must be about the outcome. The heart-questioning jade glowed softly, actually awarding me a superior rating. The second question appeared. If the sect requires your death alone to save everyone else, would you be willing to die? Would you willing to die? The moment this question appeared, my heart skipped a violent beat. Jiming He looked over at me, his gaze carrying a dark, hidden meaning. He answered first. "If it is a worthy death, I am willing." The jade glowed, rating his answer. Every eye in the room locked onto me. I fell silent for a moment before replying. "I am willing." But the jade didn't light up immediately. I added, "But if there is even a single shred of hope to keep everyone alive, I will exhaust every effort to find that hope first. And if I fail, it still won't be too late to die." The jade erupted in a brilliant, blinding light. Another superior rating. But Yunwan's face turned. It was as if she understood the hidden meaning behind my words. The third question.
What if an old friend returns, but refuses to recognize you?
What would you do? Inside, I cursed up a storm. Is this dried wall seriously targeting me?
Jiming was also completely stunned.
Clearly, this wasn't part of his plan.
Yunwan's gaze fell heavily upon me.
The entire square felt dead silent. I stared at the jade wall for a long time before replying softly. If he refuses to recognize me, there must be a reason why he can't. I would be angry.
And I would be hurt. But I won't force him.
I'll keep the light on and keep the food warm, waiting for the day he is ready to speak. Suddenly, the jade wall erupted with a soul of pure clarity. This was the highest grade of the heart test, but I didn't feel a single ounce of satisfaction, because Yuan had already turned away, refusing to let anyone see the expression on his face.
King stared at the jade wall.
His gaze darkening completely for the very first time.
The day conference came to an end. The Zhejiang sect triumphed, and the Beilu Academy presented them with the spiritual fan.
Pijai was grinning from ear to ear with delight, but under the cover of night, I slipped away to the Guchao well, because the third question from the heart-testing jade wall had appeared far too conveniently. It wasn't something the Beilu Academy could control. This could only mean that the 7-star moon locking array beneath the Guchao well had started actively sending out warnings. The well entrance was located in the forbidden area of the back mountain. I thought it would take some effort to sneak inside.
But to my surprise, Yumon was already waiting there.
His back was turned to me, as if he had known all along that I would come.
So, you really do know about the Gichao well?
I froze in my tracks. Sect Master? I was just taking a walk. Yuan turned around. Taking a walk in the forbidden area? I nodded. Your disciple has a terrible sense of direction.
Yunwan didn't expose my lie.
He didn't call me out on my excuse. Instead, he simply took out the Sect Master's token, broke the seal on the well, and went down with me. I was secretly shocked. You knew there was a problem down there? He replied. I knew ever since the incident at Zhejiang Pool. Then why didn't you investigate?
Yunwan's voice turned slightly cold.
Because someone wiped away all the traces far too cleanly. I need someone who is familiar with the 7-star moon locking array. I fell silent, and he stared right back at me. And in the entire Zhanyun sect, there's only you and me. The bottom of the well isn't dark or gloomy at all. Instead, a soft, faint blue glow lights up the dark. The stone walls are covered in ancient, glowing runes. The further down we go, the louder the roar of the spiritual pulse gets, rushing like a wild tide. Once we reach the very bottom, a massive, circular array plate appears right before our eyes. A star sand pin is missing from the very center of the array, and right next to it are 3 newly carved fine lines. I crouch down to inspect them closely. As I look, my face slowly darkens. This isn't just a simple case of sabotaging the array's foundation. Someone is actively altering the energy flow of the 7 stars moon locking array. Jill asks tensely, "What will happen if they do that?" I tell her, "The convergence of the Earth veins, which was supposed to happen 3 years from now, is going to happen early.
At the earliest. Within 6 months.
At the latest, a year." Jolyn's fingers clench tightly inside her sleeve. "Is there any way to stop it?" I stare at the array. If I use 5 star sand pins to correct the flow, and then light the 7 burial lamps. The 7 lamps are the backup array cores. As long as those 7 burial lamps are lit, they are backup array cores. As long as all 7 lamps are lit, the 7 stars moonlocking array can hold out for another 3 years.
Renlan stares at me.
These 7 lamps were left behind by my senior brother. I whisper a quiet, "Yeah." Yuan suddenly snaps her gaze to me. Realizing my mistake, I immediately try to salvage it. I mean, it should be written in the Sect archives. Her eyes well up with tears again. "Ling Fan, do you have any idea? Every single time you let something slip and try to cover it up, you look exactly like him." I fall silent. A system prompt flashes in my mind. Exposure level increased to 49%. I smile bitterly. Caution? It's already too late for that. Suddenly, a slight tremor reverberates from above the nesting well. Someone's coming. Yonglan quickly raises her hand, extinguishing the blue glow. She and I quickly slip behind the stone wall to hide. A moment later, 2 figures descend to the bottom of the well. One of them is Kimi He, and the other is actually the Viceroy Master of ASEAN Sect, Lu Guinan. Lu Guinan has been with the sect for many years. He has always been known for his gentle and mild-tempered nature. He was in charge of maintaining the outer barrier. No one had ever suspected him.
Jimmy Ken whispered. "One of the new formation nails has already been removed."
"Why haven't you made your move yet?"
Lu Guinan sighed. "The Sion Sect has treated me well.
"I don't want to hurt anyone."
Jimmy sneered.
"You don't want to hurt anyone? Then why did you make that promise to the academy back then?"
Lu Guinan fell silent. Jiminga continued.
"Once the returning nest well opens and the Imperial Vein Tide arrives early, Balu Academy can use the opportunity to propose maintaining the mountain protection array together. When that happens, the 7-star moon locking map will naturally be ours, and the Xianyun sect won't be destroyed. It's just a slight loss of face. Does that even count as hurting anyone?"
My eyes turned cold.
What a joke. Just a loss of face. When the array loses balance, the first-tier disciples will be the first to suffer. And the innocent people at the foot of the mountain will also face disaster. The face they talk about is a chasm that others have to fill with their lives.
Lu Guinan's voice sounded strained. "But what if we fail?"
Sectaster Yun won't let us off, Jiming said.
That's why we must pin this on Lin Fan. He's the perfect scapegoat, and everyone will believe it. I almost laughed out loud.
"So, I've become this useful to them?"
A cold gleam flashed in Yuan's eyes, just as she was about to make a move. I stopped her. "Wait a bit longer." Jim Pak took out a black array nail from his sleeve. "Just drive this one in, and 7 days later, the returning nest well will open on its own." Lu Guinan took the array nail, but his hand was trembling. Just as he was about to press it in, I stepped out. "Marshal Uncle Lu, if your hands are shaking, you shouldn't be doing this. Delicate work like this easily goes crooked." Both of them whipped their heads around. Jiminga's face paled instantly. "Ling Fan? What are you doing here? How did you get here?" "Well, my sense of direction is pretty bad. I was just taking a stroll and ended up here."
Yuan then stepped out from behind me.
Lu Guinan's face turned as pale as death.
Sectmaster Yunwan didn't strike immediately.
She simply asked, "Why?"
Lu Guinan fell to his knees.
His voice trembled. "Sectmaster,
My daughter, Lu Qinghil. She isn't just recovering at Agrid Academy.
she was born with reverse meridians. When she was 12 years old, her spiritual veins nearly collapsed. In the end, it was only the rooming array at Egert Academy that sustained her meridians. For all these years, she has had to enter the lumen array once every month. If she stops for even 3 months, her meridians will wither. And if she stops for a year, she will never be able to cultivate again in this lifetime. She won't even be able to live out a normal mortal's lifespan." Chimigur had the people behind him found me. They said as long as I altered a single node in the formation, they would continue using the rooming array to treat Qing. They also said the Gichao will wouldn't actually be destroyed. It would only cause the Siyung sect to temporarily lose its balance and lose a bit of face. This would force the sect to agree to co-cultivate the 7-star moon locking array. I believed them. At this point, Lu Guian's voice had already gone hoarse. I didn't dare tell the sect, and I didn't dare gamble on whether they would actually stop Qinghe's treatment. I know I was wrong, but back then, all I could think of was that as long as no one died,
As long as Qinghe could live.
I would just get through this crisis first.
Nanlan looked at him.
Her eyes freezing cold, but she didn't rebuke him immediately. "I know you only wanted to save your daughter, and that is not a crime," she said. "But exchanging the safety of the entire sect for her life alone is where you sinned. If you had spoken up sooner,
The Cyan sect could have brought her back.
we could have requested help directly from the master of Agret Mountain, or found another way to treat her. But you just had to choose the worst possible path.
Lukwana pressed his forehead against the ground, tears spilling into the dust. I was wrong. This confession was lighter than any excuse, yet heavier than any defense.
Seeing that things were going south, Jiminker
Suddenly crushed an escape talisman. A flash of white light enveloped him as he tried to flee. I casually picked up a pebble from the ground and flicked it with my finger. The pebble sliced right through the white light, shattering the core of the vibrating talisman with absolute precision.
Jiminke came crashing down from midair,
his face a mask of sheer disbelief. How is this possible? Aren't you just a useless— I nodded calmly. Yeah, I am.
That's why I threw a rock. I didn't use any spiritual energy. Jiminhe was so furious he nearly coughed up blood. Yulwan raised her hand, instantly sealing his cultivation base.
Take him back to Shenzhen Hall, she ordered coldly.
The incident at the Guqiao Well sent shockwaves through the entire sect.
The delegation from Beilu Academy was detained,
and Ltuknen confessed to his crimes.
But Yulwan did not make the matter regarding his daughter public. Instead, she chose to handle it quietly according to the sect's laws, stripping him of his deputy array master authority and confining him to the reflection platform for 10 years.
Jiminhe was sent back to Beilu Academy,
along with the evidence, demanding that the academy provide an explanation. Many believed that the two sects would go to war over this. 3 days later, the chancellor of Beilu Academy personally came to visit. He did not ride a grand cloud vessel, nor did he bring a single guard. He brought only 3 elders from the discipline hall and a sealed register of the inner academy.
At the gates of the Xianyun sect, he publicly bowed to Yunwan and said, Beilu Academy has failed in its supervision, allowing vile individuals to use the names of our lecturers to break your array.
For this, Beilu Academy is at fault.
But entire academy was not complicit in this.
With those words, he raised his hand and unrolled the register. On the register, 3 names were circled in red, marked as executed.
One of them was indeed the former lecturer who had previously contacted Uncle Mang.
The chancellor's voice was deep and steady. These 3 have already been stripped of their authority and thrown into the Beilu discipline cave, awaiting a joint interrogation by both of our sects. As for Jiminhe's involvement in the Guqiao Well incident, although he was not the mastermind, he foolishly believed slanderous lies and committed a grave mistake. Beilu Academy will not shield him.
Jiminhe stood behind the crowd,
his face completely pale. The chancellor turned his gaze toward him.
Ming, the chancellor called out, looking directly at him.
If you still consider yourself a disciple of Beilu, then stay here and completely rebuild the array you owe to the Xianyun sect.
Jiminhe froze in disbelief. He had expected to be dragged back to the academy to face punishment,
never imagining the chancellor would actually give him a chance to stay and make amends.
The chancellor then looked back at Yunwan. Beilu Academy will provide 3 carriages of rare materials as compensation to repair the array, grant access to our looming healing spring for 3 years, and safely transfer Lu
Gonaz snapped his head up. His eyes were burning red. Gon fast silent. For a moment, the Yuan Shunsis accepts the compensation and agrees to a joint investigation. But this matter won't just be swept under the rug. The headmaster nodded. That is only right.
Standing in the crowd, I looked at this white-haired headmaster, and my opinion of him rose a notch. To admit fault,
to investigate thoroughly, and to refuse to shield his own. It seems Beilu Academy isn't completely rotten to the core. The real stench comes from that half-flickering black lamp lurking in Bailu's shadow. Through this whole ordeal,
Xianyun Sect won a spectacular victory.
Eating Can Fengcourt walked away with a cartload of valuable formation materials.
Pei Xiao was so thrilled he spun around the courtyard 3 times.
Brother Lin, these materials, I can upgrade our leaky roof array into an automatic rainwater collection array. I scoffed. You'd better make sure it doesn't automatically flood your own room first.
Pei Xiao cleared his throat. That was an accident.
With the new suppression nail back in place, the 4th lamp of Can Fengcourt lit up. Its glow illuminated the entire bamboo forest. Yet, standing before the lamp, I felt no relief whatsoever, because the system prompt rang in my mind. Identity exposure rate at 58%. Host's past legacy is gradually awakening. Please advance the main storyline as soon as possible. But advancing the main storyline is basically a death sentence. Yet right now,
the 3-year calamity might be only 6 months to a year away.
And I still haven't figured out who tied my system tasks to the Xianyun sect's calamity, let alone why the 7 lamps I left behind in my 72nd life would be the key to this one. Everything feels like a giant web. And only now do I realize that I might not be the one casting it, but the fish caught inside. When the winter snow began to fall, the Yuron Secto held its annual charity day down the mountain. This was a rule established by Yunwan after she became the sect leader. Every winter, the disciples would take turns going down the mountain to build bridges and manage water for the nearby villages.
They didn't preach about divine miracles
or demand offerings. They only focused on doing real, honest work. I've always liked this rule. If cultivators only know how to sit high up in the clouds, sooner or later, they'll forget that they were once mortals themselves.
King Fengcourt naturally headed to King Street Town as well.
King Sect is where I was born in this lifetime.
The old, authentic tofu stall is still standing there. The owners, Old Lin and his wife, are my foster parents in this lifetime.
They weren't wealthy or powerful,
but they raised me incredibly well.
They never asked why I knew so many strange things even as a little kid.
They only ever said it was a blessing for a child to be smart. After I joined the sect, they told everyone they met, "Our fan has joined the immortal sect." He didn't go there to live in luxury. He went to learn skills so he can help more people.
I thought I had long since grown detached from worldly ties. But when I saw old Lin from afar, rubbing his cold hands together in the snow, waiting for me to come home for a bowl of hot tofu,
my heart melted. Dad, Mom, I called out as I walked over. Old Lin froze for a second. Then, a warm smile spread across his face, wrinkling the corners of his eyes. Fair, you're back. Mrs. Lin brought out a steaming bowl of hot tofu
and busied herself serving some to Pei Zhao and Su Mian.
Even disciples of the immortal sect need to eat hot food. Don't let yourselves freeze. Pei Zhao stuffed his face, deeply touched. Auntie, can I come by more often? Mrs. Lin smiled and said, of course, come whenever you want. Any friend of Fan is family to us.
Su Mian lowered her head, sipping the tofu soup,
her eyes turning slightly red. He rarely talks about his family,
and I never ask.
Everyone has wounds they would rather not talk about. A bowl of hot soup is more than enough comfort. By the pier, an old carpenter recognized me. He stared at me for a long time and suddenly asked, young immortal, do you know how to write? Do you know how to write? Do you know how to— I nodded. A little. He took out an old wooden plaque. It had half of an incomplete poem carved onto it. If the mountains are broken, who would ever know? This was written for my grandfather 100 years ago by a grandmaster from the Saiyuan sect.
He said if one day a fellow cultivator named Ko Sheng appeared in the mountains, I should take this plaque to the Sanyun sect.
I took the wooden plaque. My fingertips felt a slight chill. A handwriting belonged to my 72nd lifetime. Back when I first discovered the hidden dangers of the returning nest. Well, I once left a few simple wooden tokens down the mountain, leaving them in the safekeeping of trustworthy immortal families. I never expected that after 100 years, those wooden tokens would still be here. Think, the old carpenter continued. Last night I heard the roaring tides from deep within the mountain, and I knew right then I had to bring this to you. I looked toward the distant mountains, my expression darkening. Although the receding tide well was repaired, the ley line tides are still rising early, and someone has tampered with things deeper down.
You almost washed over too.
Upon seeing the wooden token, she asked. No questions.
She simply bowed deeply to the old carpenter and said, "Thank you, elder, for keeping your promise for 100 years.
The old carpenter waved his hands in a panic. Please, no, I don't deserve this. It's a promise, passed down from our ancestors. They said that great master saved our entire town. We are only remembering that debt of gratitude. Hearing this, a sudden wave of emotion hit me. My heart ached as I listened. I have walked through 99 lifetimes, leaving so many things behind. Sword manuals, formations, medical recipes, rest pavilions on mountain paths, and bridges by the ferries. I never expected anyone to remember, but there is always someone who remembers for me. On our way back to the sect, Yulan walked beside me in the falling snow. She softly said, "Senior brother once wrote this poem too."
I didn't deny it.
Nor did I admit it. I only replied, then he must have cared deeply for this mountain.
Juman remembered. The one he cared about was never the mountain.
It was the people on it. A tremor went through my heart. The fifth sword lantern lit up just as we returned to the hidden wind courtyard. All 5 lanterns resonated together, and the outline of the 7 stars moon-locking array finally appeared in the night sky, like a giant bowl inverted over the immortal cloud sect, shielding the mountain and suppressing the impending, surging tide. That very same night, the system issued a new prompt. Main quest update. The tech's great calamity has been moved up, estimated in 3 months. The host must die in battle during the calamity. If you die prematurely, the mission will be void. If the sect is destroyed, the mission will fail. If your identity is completely exposed, the mission will fail. Looking at the prompt, I let out a hollow laugh. 3 paths, and every single one is impossibly narrow. But at least the main path is clear. 3 paths, and all of them are tight as a noose. But at least the main objective is clear. Light all 7 lamps in 3 months. Repair the 7-star moon-locking array. Expose the real mastermind behind the scenes. And finally, die at just the right moment during the great catastrophe. Sounds incredibly hard. But if there is one thing I, Lin Fan, excel at, it is making the impossible look effortless. Over the next 3 months, the Zhechu and Sechu entered a state of being relaxed on the outside, but tense on the inside. On the surface, cultivation went on as usual, while in secret, they reinforced the array bases. Yuan did not announce that the catastrophe was coming early, only claiming that the Earth Fanes were experiencing minor fluctuations, and that all the peaks needed to conduct joint emergency drills. This was the right call. Panic is far more destructive than the catastrophe itself. Canfeng Court became the busiest place in the sect. Pei Zhao led a crew to do repairs. He Jiamon trained outer disciples in swordplay. Su Mian drove the emergency patrol team, and even Xu Guanlan volunteered to help. Shui Mingyan was even released early from her hard labor at the sword-washing pool to oversee the inventory of array materials. People who once couldn't stand the sight of each other were now sitting at the same table, fiercely debating array blueprints. Watching them, I felt a strange sense of accomplishment. This is what a sect should be. It is not about one person drawing their sword to shock the world, but a group of people patching up a broken roof to build a home that can weather the storm. On the day the 6th lamp was lit, my father, Elder Dung, came to find me. He handed me a worn-out sword talisman. I found this hidden in the inner walls of the sword depository.
It bears the seal of Xiling Zhou.
No one but you can open it.
I stared at the talisman, falling into a long silence.
My father did not press me for answers.
Hyun said, "My child,
I am getting old. I have seen many geniuses, and I have harbored many secrets. Who you really are doesn't matter. What matters is which side you stand on."
I took the sword talisman and said softly, "I stand with the Sanyun sect."
My father smiled.
"Then that is enough."
The sword talisman cracked open in my palm,
And inside was a single line of tiny script. A swift return to the nest.
"The hearts of the people shall be your wings. Beware of the seventh lamp."
My people shrank. There is something wrong with the seventh lamp.
I rushed back to Kangfeng Court immediately.
Of the 7 lamps,
The first 6 lamps are laid out in a row.
With the 7th lamp closest to the courtyard gate.
It is never lit up. I gently lift the lamp's body and crouch down to inspect it closely.
At last, I discover an extremely faint, reversed rune carved under its base.
I didn't carve this. Someone tampered with this 7th lamp 100 years ago. If we force light all 7 lamps, it won't stabilize the formation at all. Instead, it will become the key to opening the Guqiao well.
the real mastermind has been waiting this whole time for us to light them. A chill runs down my spine. What a brilliant, terrifying scheme.
He isn't trying to stop us from correcting the formation.
He's forcing us to do it.
And at the very last step of our correction,
We will open the gate with our own hands.
just as I am about to tell Yumon, the 7th lamp suddenly ignites on its own.
Its flame isn't a warm gold,
But a chilling white.
Like a wide open eye.
at that exact moment,
A rumbling tide echoes from deep beneath the entire Shenun sect.
the reversing tide is early. It's not 3 months from now, nor is it 3 days from now. It's happening tonight.
The mountain gate violently shakes, lighting up with a deafening boom.
Countless disciples are startled from their sleep.
Yumon's voice echoes throughout the entire sect.
Disciples of all peaks, take your formation positions. Elders, guard the mountain gate. Do not panic.
I look up toward the main peak.
A figure in white is already standing high in the night sky.
The soul hand sword unsheathed.
Its cold gleam illuminating the rugged mountains.
He is still the same Yunwan.
No matter how many old wounds he hides in his heart, as long as the sect needs him,
He will always stand at the very front. Tai Zhao rushes into the courtyard.
his face completely pale. Brother Lin, the formation chart is completely ruined. The 7th lamp is devouring the first 6.
Sumela is here too.
The mountain patrol team is in position, but the energy pressure from the Guqiao well is too strong.
Low-level disciples can't even get close.
He Shaon gripped her sword and asked us, "What do we do?"
I looked at the 7th lamp.
And suddenly smiled.
What else can we do? Dismantle the lamp. Pei Zhou stared in disbelief. This is the formation core.
He stared.
This is the core. If we dismantle it, it'll blow up on it. Exactly. That's why we have to dismantle it with style. With that, I led the 3 of them and rushed toward Guqiao well.
Along the way, the disciples from each peak took their positions according to the drills. Though panicked, they weren't in chaos.
These 3 months of preparation had finally paid off.
At Blackfine Valley, Xu Guanlan led his team to hold the first rift.
At the Washing Sword Pond, Xi Mingyan and Fu Qing joined forces to stabilize the sword chi. At the Herb Garden, Elder He led his disciples to protect the medicinal herbs and the wounded. Everyone was in their position.
There is no single savior.
Everyone is saving this mountain.
In front of Guqiao well,
Yunwan was trying to suppress the surging energy from the mouth of the well. Several elders were also there.
After being sent by Beilu Academy to apologize, she had stayed at the Xiuan sect to help with the reconstruction.
Right now, her face was deathly pale.
Sect Master, it wasn't the academy. We didn't carve these counter runes.
用万散钩来。哎，优秀。
I rushed to the edge of the well and saw the counter runes stretching all the way underground, finally connecting to the 7th lamp. Pijo immediately laid out his formation array. Brother Lin, give me 10 seconds. I'll find its counterpoint. I said, no need. It's at the wick. Pijo froze in surprise.
How do you know that?
I gave no reply.
Because the 7th lamp was never a lamp to begin with. It was, that I left behind back then. It's not a lamp. It was a gate of death I left behind back then. If the 7 stars locking the moon formation went completely out of control,
Then a sword cultivator would have to enter the gate of death.
using their own sword Ji as a catalyst to seal the Jikao well. But put it bluntly, this is the death point the system laid out for me. But someone altered it ahead of time, trying to turn the gate of death into an open gate.
Zhuan understood as well.
Her face turned pale instantly.
No, you can't. Before I could even say a word, she had already grabbed my wrist. Think Fan, you can't. I looked at her and said softly, Sect Master, you know what I have to do.
Yuan's eyes were red as she choked out.
I don't know. And I won't allow you to.
The system warnings blared frantically in my head.
I looked at Yunwan.
Then a Paijo, Sumiya, Gun Yinzama. I looked further out into the night, where the disciples of the Sanyun sect were desperately trying to stabilize.
I suddenly realized how cruel, yet terribly precise, the system's mission was. It knew I would go.
Because while I could play dumb, pretend to be weak, and act like I didn't care, I could never stand by and watch a mountain collapse right in front of me. Shaking off Yunwan's hand, I walked toward the 7th lamp.
Pijav rushed forward to block me, yelling, "Brother Lin, there has to be another way. There must be." I smiled and replied, "There is."
Which is why You all need to find it. With eyes red and welling with tears, Somian choked out.
But what about you?
Me? I said softly. I'll buy you some time.
He shaman's hand trembled on the hilt of his sword.
Senior brother. It was the first time I had ever heard him call me that.
My heart softened instantly.
I reached out and gently ruffled his hair. And this scroll of the 9 questions. Remember to write the final question yourself. Start relying on me to do it for you. The flames of the 7th lamp flared with blinding intensity. Its icy white light swallowing the first 6 lamps.
I placed my palm flat against the body of the lamp.
A long-lost, powerful sword aura began to awaken within me.
It didn't belong to Lin Fan, nor did it belong to Zaylin Zhou.
It was the ultimate, purest essence forged from the accumulation of all 99 sword forms. Across the entire realm, every ounce of sword aura hummed in quiet submission.
Yuman finally broke down, sobbing. Senior brother! I closed my eyes,
refusing to look back. The system's alarms blared in a deafening shriek. I let out a soft, tired laugh. I had spent a whole year denying who I was. I was exhausted. But the very moment I prepared to step into the blazing white fire, a letter suddenly flew out from the core of the 7th lamp. The paper was old and yellowed. That handwriting. It's so familiar, it sends a jolt straight to my heart. It's my own writing, but it isn't from my 72nd life. It's from my 99th life. My very last reincarnation. The letter has only one line. Lin Fan, if you're reading this in your 100th life, it means the system lied to you. Do not die. Behind the gate of death, someone is waiting for you to open your eyes. In that split second, my hand resting on the 7th lamp froze. It wasn't because I was afraid to die. I've died way too many times for that. I've died so often that I even categorized my final words into 3 distinct flavors. The heroic version, the carefree version, and the smug, infuriating version meant solely to piss people off. But this time is different. Writing from my 99th life shouldn't be inside the 7th lamp, and it definitely shouldn't be telling me that the system lied to me. Do not die. Behind the gate of death, someone is waiting for you to open your eyes. I stared at the letter. My first instinct wasn't shock. It was the urge to swear. Damn it. 99th life me? If you realized something was wrong with the system, why did you write it down clearly? Why leave me with nothing but a riddle? Did you think you were being deep?
Suddenly, the system's voice shrieked inside my head. Warning, host is deviating from the final mission.
I looked up at the cold, pale glow of the lamp and suddenly let out a laugh. The gate of death. When my 72nd life left this lamp, I certainly never gave it such an ominous name.
Yuman grabbed my wrist,
her fingertips trembling.
Ice cold.
Ling Fan, come back. She clearly had already guessed the truth.
Yet she just didn't dare to utter that name.
I looked at her,
glanced back at the pale faces of Pei Zhao and Su Mian,
and had He Shaman and the Xianyun Sect disciples in the distance desperately holding the formation. Suddenly I realized that across all 100 of my lives, I had made a terrible mistake. I always treated every life as just a mission, and every encounter is just passing through. So when it was time to go, I always thought that as long as I died beautifully, I had fulfilled my duty. But what about the ones left behind? They are the ones who have to guard an empty mountain? Watch over an osmanthus tree and keep vigil over a dark, lifeless lamp.
Waiting for someone who will never look back.
We whispered softly. This time, I'm not dying. The system's voice suddenly cuts off. Task conflict detected. Task conflict. The host will face the penalty for failure. I sneer. Why don't you bring out the punishment first so I can see it? Stop trying to scare me every single time. Trapping me as a monument for 3,000 years. Turning me into a stone or turning me into a broom. Just how many more tricks do you have up your sleeve? Pei Zhao stares at me blankly. Brother Lin, who are you arguing with? I'm talking to something that desperately needs a good beating. Pei Zhao immediately takes half a step back. Right, you go ahead then. I won't get in your way. Yuan suddenly lets go of my hand, but she doesn't back away. Instead, she stands right by my side. She holds her Solon sword across her chest. This time, I'll stand in front of you. This time, I'm facing it with you. My heart feels as if it was gently tapped by something. The words little Yunwan almost slip out of my mouth. The system immediately shrieks. Warning, identity exposure level has reached the critical limit. The host must deny their former identity. I look at Yunwan's reddening eyes and suddenly feel that this piece of junk really knows how to pick its moments. The more it forbids me from speaking, the more I want to say it. So, I sigh. Little Yunwan.
Yuan freezes completely.
I say softly, it's me. I'm back. But I didn't come back to die.
Yunwan's tears instantly spill over.
There are no sobs, only silent tears, falling one by one onto her sleeve. Like snow that had been frozen for 100 years, finally melting away. The system's voice is almost screeching. Identity exposure level at 100%.
Tasks failed. Reincarnation punishment initiated.
I stand on the spot and wait. 1 breath. 2 breaths. 3 breaths. No monument. No lightning strikes.
And I haven't turned into a broom.
There is only a sudden, violent flicker of the cold white flame inside the 7th lamp. Then, a new voice echoes in my head. The false decree on the outer layer of samsara is shattered. The awakened one has returned.
The host has obtained one free choice. Let's play along. Just as I thought, the so-called exposure value was never actually about exposure. It was never about an exposure meter. It's a lucidity meter.
The system isn't afraid of me being recognized.
It's terrified that I'll admit I still care about these people, because the moment I admit it, I won't go to my death so obediently anymore.
Pijao didn't quite get it, but he immediately caught the main point. So, Brother Lin, you don't have to die,
I replied.
Not for now.
Pijao let out a sigh of relief.
Thank goodness. I still owe you a spiritual feast, and you haven't even finished mooching it off me yet.
Su Mian's eyes were also red, but he forced himself to stay calm. What do we do now?
I looked toward the 7th lamp.
The letter said to open the eye. It didn't mean for me to open my eyes.
It meant opening the eye of the 7th lamp.
He showman was stunned. Does the main lamp have an eye too?
I replied, people have hearts, swords have souls, so a lamp naturally has its eye as well.
Pijao immediately squatted down to inspect the lamp base.
All I see is a bunch of moss.
Scrape the moss off. Zhao pulled out a small knife.
But after only 2 scrapes, he cried out, "It's not working!"
There are reverse patterns underneath. Every time I scrape, it swallows the blade.
What on earth is going on?
Does anyone have salt? Everyone laughed in disbelief. What do you need salt for at a time like this?
I replied.
To save a life. Pei Zhao silently pulled out a small paper packet from his robe.
I knew Canfeng Court would run out of salt sooner or later.
So I kept some with me.
I looked at him, suddenly feeling quite relieved. You actually brought some? I looked at him, suddenly feeling quite relieved. You're finally being reliable for once.
Pijao was so touched he almost cried.
Brother Lin, this is the first time you've ever praised me.
I said, don't cry. Salt is expensive. Pei Zhao immediately sucked his tears back in.
I sprinkled the salt over the moss on the lamp base.
Then, I pulled a small piece of osmanthus cake from my sleeve.
It was a leftover piece from a half-eaten bowl.
Su Mian stared at me.
You even carry cake? I replied. When you're out in the world,
you always have to keep a few cards up your sleeve.
I crumbled the osmanthus.
Mixing the lamp ash and the salt, I gently smeared them onto the reverse patterns. A sweet, fragrant, salty aroma filled the air.
As the lamp ash and the other 2 mundane materials settled, the reverse patterns slowly began to emerge,
like a hidden stream flowing beneath the stone's surface.
Pijao's eyes went wide.
No way.
Even this works?
I said, you know, array formations are sometimes just like cooking. If the flavor is too heavy, you tone it down.
If the flavor is too weak, you kick it up a notch. I casually waved my sleeve, tossing Jiming across the river, where he landed not far away.
His face was already pale as death. But hearing this, he almost choked on his own breath. In his 20 years of studying array formations, he had never heard anyone describe them as stir-frying.
Ironically, he actually understood it. He muttered in a low voice, the reverse patterns dread absolute purity, but are thrown into chaos by mundane impurities,
because they exploit artificial illusions, and mundane obsessions can throw them completely out of balance.
I glanced at him. Not completely brainless, then.
Jiming gives bitter laugh. Well, thanks for the compliment.
The reverse patterns on the lamp base fully revealed themselves. At the deepest point, a tiny hole the size of a grain of rice appeared. There was no fire inside, only a faint speck of eerie blue light. The lamp's eye. I reached out to press it.
Wellen immediately looked at me. Is it dangerous?
I thought about it for a moment. Probably, yes. Her expression stiffened.
I added, but it's even more dangerous if we don't press it.
Yuan took a deep breath.
Next time, say the second half first. I nodded. Next time for sure.
Biao whispered. Every time he says next time for sure,
it usually means there won't be a next time.
Yuan glared at him. Pijao shut his mouth instantly.
I pressed down on the lamp's eye. Instantly, the 7th lamp flame violently imploded. It didn't swallow me whole. But instead, a small stone door creaked open right before my eyes. Behind the stone door was no bottomless abyss, nor was there anything terrifying.
It was just a tiny stone chamber.
Inside the chamber was a simple bamboo couch, and on the couch sat a woman dressed in green. He seemed to have been asleep for a very long time. Fine dust had settled on his eyelashes. But when the lamp's core flickered to life,
he slowly opened his eyes.
Those eyes were shockingly clear,
like a single drop of pure spring water falling on fresh snow.
But the first thing he said when he saw me was, well, at least you weren't stupid enough to go and die right away.
My mouth twitched. That sarcastic twitch, that annoying tone. I knew exactly who this was. Back in my 99th lifetime, there was indeed someone like this by my side.
His name was Wen Shaoli, the absolute master of killing my vibe among all righteous cultivators under the sun. Years ago, I asked him to take a look at an ancient array I had built. After looking it over, he only gave me 4 words. Ugly as hell. From that moment on, I knew he was a true friend, because very few people had the guts to call my arrays ugly to my face,
and even fewer survived doing so.
Of course, I didn't beat him up, mostly because he ran incredibly fast.
When Zhao Wei rose from the bamboo lounger,
his posture weak, but he wasn't just a fading phantom. He was a living, breathing person. He had simply used a stasis array to seal his life force, waiting behind this lamp across 10 lifetimes just to reach this very day.
Yuan watched him, her eyes narrowing slightly.
Who is he?
When Chaho blasted true one.
Then turned to me. So, she's the little junior sister you wouldn't stop rambling about every single day in your 72nd life?
I cleared my throat immediately.
I didn't do it every day.
Wenzohala replied flatly. Fine, every other day then. Yunwan's eyes were still,
but she couldn't help but look at me.
I replied with a straight face. Righteous cultivators have terrible memories.
Wenjali sneered. My memory is actually excellent.
The 99th life version of you told me to wait here, saying that if your 100th incarnation still wanted to die, I should beat you awake with this lamp.
Pijal instantly perked up. Wait, can we smash someone with the lamp?
When Jeho asked. Can we?
Ben replied. We can, but it's expensive to replace.
Pijal instantly cooled down. Never mind then, let me ask you, why are you behind the 7th lamp?
When Jahol reached out and kicked up the cup of water Pejo handed him, taking a sip, only to complain with disgust.
It's cold.
Hijao was dumbfounded. At a time like this, you're still being picky about your water?
When Jawi shot him a sideways glance.
Only the living get to be picky. The dead don't.
I waved my hand dismissively.
Let's stick to the main point first. When Jahol finally looked toward the 7th lamp.
This lamp was indeed left behind by Zilin Zhou in the beginning.
In your 72nd lifetime, you buried 7 sword pillars here in the Xinyu Sect. The first 6 for the gates of life, while the 7th was the gate of death. If the 7 stars locking the moon formation ever spun completely out of control, a sword cultivator would have to enter the gate of death with their own sword intent to seal the Guqiao well. Yuan's grip tightened.
When Zhouhai continued. Later, in your 99th lifetime, which was before Shengaina faced his ascension tribulation,
he noticed something was wrong with the system. He realized that the so-called quest locations in every single lifetime
were actually connected to the relics from your past lives.
These relics were like a series of nails, pinning your sword of 100 lifetimes down across the 9 realms. The 7th lamp was the most critical anchor of them all.
I frowned. So Shen Weian found this place?
He made his way here.
When Jaholi nodded.
He used the lingering aura of reincarnation on the Zhaochen sword to locate it, finding the coordinates of the gate of death left by Zilin Zhou. Back then, in your very first lifetime, you hadn't even entered the Zhenyun Sect yet. You were just a kid from next door in Qingshui town, sneaking bites of tofu pudding.
When Roholai suddenly looked at me. You used to steal food as a kid?
My face remained expressionless. Is that really the point right now?
Wenjawabi continued.
Shen Gaiyan knew he would soon be taken away by the Hall of Heavenly Law, so he had me bring the Soul Awakening mantra to the Sidan Sect. I sneaked into Kangfeng Court and entered the space behind the 7th lamp, using a breath-stilling needle to seal off its aura. I personally hid the letter from your 99th lifetime inside the wick.
Imwan asked, why did no one discover it all these years?
When Zhouhao replied, because the 7th lamp was always the gate of death. The living shouldn't be inside, and the dead wouldn't want to enter. Moreover, I used the mortal aura sealing technique. Lam Shoot and Sweet Osmonduses paste have no spiritual energy. Yet, they are the best at masking residual obsession. From the grand array's sweeps, I looked down at my hand, at the remaining crumbs of Osnthus paste. So that's why I simulated it with salt and paste just now. It wasn't a fluke. When Zhao said flatly, I suppose you aren't completely brainless. I fell silent for a moment. That didn't exactly sound like a compliment.
Piao whispered. But coming from Senior Wen, that's already...
Pijao whispered. But coming from Senior Wen, that's already a very gentle way of praising someone.
When Jiali deactivated the simulation system. This isn't the original reincarnation echo.
The real reincarnation echo is only responsible for recording your choices. It doesn't force you to die.
Over your 99 lifetimes, someone added a layer of false power to its exterior,
making you believe in every single lifetime that you just had to die at some critical juncture to complete your mission.
My heart shuddered.
So, stopping right before the ascension tribulation in every lifetime wasn't actually my...
When Jahalo looked at me. Part of it was indeed your own choice.
But every single time, it would frame the most suitable death as the only correct path.
It didn't control you directly.
It just made you believe, time and time again, that leaving was the only way to complete the mission. When Jahali looked at me. You thought the activation of the system was giving you access to your past powers, that it was helping you, but it wasn't. It was force-ripen you. My heart sank. Ripening me for what? The sword essence of 100 lifetimes. When Jahali continued. Every time your exposure rate went up, it would extract a strand of your sword heart from your past lifetimes and stuff it back into your body in your 100th lifetime. Listening to the wind, shadowless sword, phantom sword steps, twig snapping, the 3-point sword heart, and the anchored flow, these were all originally your own techniques. But the more of them it activated, the more complete your 100 lifetime sword core became, and the closer you got to becoming the prime ingredient Tehaning Call wants.
Pija's face darkened. So, it wasn't afraid of Brother Lin exposing his identity?
It was afraid he wasn't exposed enough.
When Zhou Huli nodded.
But it couldn't let Lin Fan know the truth, so it disguised the Force Ripen as a punishment, and disguised his awakening as an exposure. As long as Lin Fan believed that exposing his identity would mean mission failure, he would be too terrified to reunite with his old friends, and he would get used to facing death all on his own. That is the most insidious part of this scheme.
It doesn't control you.
Instead, it manipulates you into choosing exactly what it wants. for a long moment. So that's how it is. No wonder, every time I tried to keep a low profile, the more I was forced to use my past life abilities. It wasn't making mistakes. It was driving me straight into the jaws of death. Those words, they felt like a thin needle piercing right into my heart. It didn't really hurt, but it cut incredibly deep.
Yunman gripped her sword's hilt so tightly her fingertips turned white.
Then, what is their real goal?
Wen Jiahao stared out at the chaotic surge of pilgrims just beyond the seventh lamp.
The noise of the world is slowly fading into silence. The 7-star moonlock array is returning to the Chaojing well. Once those three combine, they can forge a cure for 100 lifetimes. If Lin Fan dies inside the gate of death today,
The Yazio sect don't be saved.
He will just become the price paid to open that gate.
Wen Jiaholi's face went pale. So, that means
the system wants Lin Fan to die, not to save us.
Wen Jiaholi nodded. No, it's to make all of you be buried alive with him.
He Shama's eyes instantly went red.
Who did this? Wen Joy fell silent for a moment, but the second the words Tingham Palace left his lips,
Jianen's face instantly went pale.
the headmaster of Bailu Academy had mentioned that name once.
He said it was a highly secretive organization that researched ancient arrays. They didn't belong to any sect.
They always appeared whenever a major array of any sect was activated.
I looked over at Ningqing. Do you know them?
Judin Kid gritted his teeth. I've only heard of them.
But I've never actually seen them. I always thought they were just a legend.
Well, legends are usually more honest than actual people.
When Jahali raised his hand and passed me a tiny green lamp. This is the awakening lamp. In this array you cannot die, and you cannot face this array alone. To turn the 7 lamps from gates of death into gates of life, we must have someone willing to guard each of the 7 positions. Willing to guard them and stay alive. I frowned. 7 positions?
Granjali said.
You're far too used to carrying everything on your own shoulders. That's why in your 99th lifetime, you wrote down the solution with absolute clarity. He paused for a moment. His voice suddenly turned incredibly serious. Lin Fan, this time, you can't just be a solitary sword venerable. You have to be the Lin Fan of the Seiyuan sect. I fell silent for a brief moment. These words, they really sounded like something I would have said in my 99th lifetime, because he always knew exactly how to push my buttons. The stone chamber began to tremble.
Wen Jiaholi's body shuddered.
The Dingzi array behind him was slowly dimming, and his face was growing even paler. I asked him, "How much longer can you hold?"
He replied, 15 minutes.
I told him, "Once we get out, go wait in the kitchen at Kangfeng Court."
Wen Jiaho chuckled.
"What for, Keat?" I replied. He stared at me. "The whole world is collapsing out there, and you're still thinking about having a meal?" I replied. "If I can still think about food, it means I still want to live."
Wen Jiaholi smiled.
Now, that's the you I know. Clutching the cyan lantern, I stepped back outside the glow. Right before the stone gate shut, when Jahali called out, "Wait, there's one more thing." I looked back. He was staring at me, his eyes deep and unreadable. "Your 99th form didn't die under the My pupils instantly contracted, but the stone gate had already slammed shut.
Suddenly, the Guqiao well shuddered violently.
Completely shattering my train of thought. Now was not the time to press for answers. The ley line nest had already surged to within 30 feet of the wellhead. Cold white flames were creeping along the reverse runes, ready to swallow the 6 lanterns. If we delay any longer,
the entire mountain gate will be torn to shreds.
I whipped around to face the crowd. "Listen up, everyone. We aren't relying on me alone today. Pei Zhao, take the array disc and guard the first lantern. Use your rain to steel formation." Pei Zhao froze. "But that array isn't even fully finished yet." "Perfect," I replied. "The Griao well isn't exactly normal either."
But Griao well isn't exactly normal either.
"You two make a perfect match." Pei Zhao gritted his teeth. "Fine." I told him to channel the earth tide into the core.
书明年又搞的3个烂头。
"Do not strike the fire directly. Aim only for the shadow of the flames."
Shumina nodded. Understood.
He Showman, you're on the 3rd lantern. The 3rd question of the 9 foldings. Turn defeat into fortune.
He Shama to a deep breath.
I'll try. Not try. I corrected him.
You can do this.
His eyes welled with tears.
And he nodded vigorously.
修哥完了。您的致敬，徐瓜兰是哪是海盗？
He was currently leading his men to hold the fissure in the dark bronze bone. I sent a voice transmission directly to him. "The 4th lantern is yours. When you draw your blade, the sword energy will run. Don't fight it. Flow with it."
出瓜兰。
Where should I direct the flow? I'll guide it to the place that makes you the most uncomfortable. That's where the exit is.
Sugon Lemosoas,
Then murmured.
that sounds just like your style.
I snapped. Cut the crap.
Get to work, Shumalan.
Shimeon crossed over from the direction of the Jizin pool, holding the Shinsha vessel tightly in her arms.
I need the Shinsha vessel at the 5th lantern to stabilize the flow. Keep your hands steady.
徐明阳是费是培药。
She didn't back down. I won't deliver the wrong box again. Not this time. I nodded. Good.
今年后，今年后到个道。
靠没有听错。
今年后，今年后路道，狠色。后面黑。
I replied. Since you caused this mess, of course you're in. The 6th lantern is yours.
Use the Bailu Academy's microcosmic formation to suppress it.
But remember, it's not to trap anyone. It's to release the deer.
A complex look flashed through Jininga's eyes.
Good. Finally, I looked at Yumon. I'll take the 7th lantern, she said coldly.
I don't agree.
I sighed helplessly. You haven't even let me finish. I glared at her. You'll protect me, Yunwan. I am the master here after all. I smile. This time, I won't push you away.
Yuan's tears almost fell again, but she quickly held them back. Fine. She stood right behind me,
召汉家除路手不少的白大锁。
guarding the 3 feet of space in front of me. The fading voice of the system rang out once more.
Error.
Error. The host should not share the primary position.
The host must undergo death alone. I smirked. Shut up. You don't understand. When the Sect's 7 lanterns light up together,
Pi Chao was the first to move.
he slammed the formation plate onto the ground, muttering under his breath. Rainwater. Enter the bat.
Earth tides. Enter the reservoir.
And stay out of my room.
I almost lost my straight face. The next moment, the flame of the first lantern flickered.
It actually guided a wisp of the ley line tide to the side. The technique of gathering wind, stage 3, channeling upper snow, middle ring, and lower drain, was applied by him right next to the Gichao well.
The sound of the rushing tide instantly quieted down a bit.
Suman drew her sword. She didn't slash at the cold white flame, but instead she slashed at the shadow it cast on the ground.
The sword strikes down.
The shadow snaps in two. The second lamp shifts from a cold glow to a warm light.
He, Shamo, stands before the 3rd lamp.
Facing the surging backlash of righteous energy,
He instinctively takes half a step back. I watch as he learns to bend with the wind. He grits his teeth, stepping up to meet the force and using the wind to summon a blooming sword light. He is no longer resisting it with brute force. Instead, following the flow of the formation's energy, he spins around and strikes his sword into the empty space behind him.
there was absolutely nothing there. Yet as the tip of his sword lands, a dark pattern ripples into view. The dark pattern is shattered by the strike, and the 3rd lamp lights up.
He, Shaolin, stands frozen.
For beaming like a child. Brother Lin!
I did it! Don't get distracted. His cool moment never lasts. He almost slips, but quickly regains his footing.
Over on Shuguanglan's side, his sword energy is in complete disarray.
He was always best at steadying his sword.
But now, he forces himself to let go of control,
Arp gusts of sword energy graze past him.
shunning his sleeves, but leaving him completely unharmed. He follows the most oppressive trace of sword energy.
Indeed, he finds where the 4th lamp is locked down by a counter rune.
He thrusts his sword down. The 4th lamp glows with warm light.
The great Shui Minyan stands by the 5th lamp, clutching the star sand nail.
Next to the 5th lamp, his hands are shaking violently.
The other Yans wants to step forward to help him.
But I hold him back, letting him do it himself.
徐明言推起的第一半分。
Suddenly pressing the stars and nail against his chest. I used to be afraid of taking responsibility.
So I let myself be used. But this time, I will drive it in myself.
He takes a step forward
And firmly presses the star's end, Ikeni, into the lamp's base. As the 5th lamp blazes to life,
he collapses to the ground.
and a smile spreads across his face. Elder Yan still looks at him, finally showing a flicker of pride and relief in his eyes.
Xu Benghei is guarding the 6th lamp.
He took out the white deer formation brush. But instead of drawing his usual trapping formation, he slashed open the closed loop of the minor heavenly array with a single stroke.
If the disciples of the White Egret Academy were here,
We would definitely brand him a heretic.
But as his brush descended, the 6th lantern formation finally collapsed.
The escaping energy surged out along the opening.
No longer crashing against the mountain gate, a few disciples whispered, "Our masters taught us that a formation must be perfect and seamless.
But only today do I realize that only with a gap is there a way to survive."
The 6th lantern flared to life. The warm light of the 6 lanterns merged into a single line,
leaving only the 7th. A cold white flame, as if refusing to yield, suddenly surged violently.
The green lantern in my palm grew burning hot along with it. The system's fading voice turned deep and heavy.
Lin Fan, if you do not die, 9. If you do not die,
Your 99 lifetimes will all be in vain.
I smirked. Let them be in vain. At least in this life, I still get to eat tofu.
It coaxed me again.
If you do not die,
Reincarnation and immortality will be forever out of your reach.
if my path to immortality requires me to abandon others time and time again,
Then I don't want it.
The system fell silent for a moment.
then a piercing chill rose from my wrist. I finally saw an incredibly thin, black thread of chi wrapped around my wrist. It wasn't a rope. It had bound me tighter than any rope. 99 lifetimes.
It had been hiding right there, completely out of sight.
Whenever one wanted to stay, it would tell me it was time to go.
Whenever I wanted to look back, it would tell me that the mission came first. I raised my hand.
Bang that dude behind me.
Her voice barely a whisper. Senior brother. I didn't look back, only smiled and said, "Watch closely this time.
I won't use a sword to sever it.
I'll burn it with the light of this green lantern."
As the green lantern's light hit the black thread,
It began to dissolve, fading away like ink in clear water.
the system's fading voice suddenly turned shrill.
Samsara destination error.
Counterfeit command invalidated. Closing the gate of death. I press my hand against the eye of the 7th lamp and whisper softly, "You opened the wrong gate."
It's not that the gate of death is closing, and
It's the gate of life opening.
with a sudden rumble, The cold white flame of the seventh lamp is split apart, bit, by a warm glow rising from deep within the wick, until finally, all 7 lamps blaze to life at once.
There is no deafening blast into the heavens.
Nor is there any world-crushing pressure.
Only warmth.
Like the warm glow of the lamps in Kangfeng Court at night.
Like the hearth fire at the tofu stall in King Shui Town.
Like that plate of sweet Osmandasa cake on Tingsa Cliff, arriving 100 years too late.
The sound of the rising tide inside Guqiao Will slowly ebbs away.
The grand ward of the mountain gate stops trembling.
Across the peaks, the disciples fall silent at first.
Then, one by one, cheers begin to ring out.
From Haidong Ridge to the Arrow Washing Pool.
From the herb garden to the mountain gate.
The entire
Ziyuan sect has come back to life. As the warm light of the 7th lamp fully blazes to life, I hear something deep inside me make a soft cracking sound.
It isn't my doll heart,
but my meridians. This body in this lifetime is just too weak after all.
It has held too much of the old sword chi that it never should have. From the sword testing steel to the arrow washing pool, from the Guqiao well to the 7th lamp. Every single time, I told them I was fine.
But my body is far more honest than my words.
I finally can't hold it in as blood surges up my throat. The lights in front of me begin to blur and overlap.
I see Yuan turning around.
I see Pei Zhao shouting at the top of his lungs.
I see Fu Man rushing toward me.
I see Hishowen's tears streaming down.
Strangely this time, I don't feel lonely at all. In all my previous lives, before every death, the world always felt so vast.
So fast that only I was left in it.
But this time, as I collapse, I am surrounded by everyone. It feels so good.
They're so noisy that I'm almost reluctant to pass out.
I want to tell them not to cry,
and that I haven't even had dinner yet.
but though my lips move,
I can't make a sound.
before everything completely fades to black, the last thing I heard was Pei Zhao screaming his lungs out.
Brother Lin, don't you dare die. You still owe me half a pot of porridge.
I cursed silently in my mind. Who the hell owes who, you idiot?
And then, finally relieved, I blacked out. When I woke up, I didn't open my eyes right away. First, I heard the wind rustling through the bamboo leaves of Kamfeng Court. Someone in the kitchen was quietly lighting the stove. In the distance, there was the sound of disciples practicing their swords. 1 stroke, 2 strokes. It was a bit messy,
But they were trying so hard. Suddenly it hit me. I'm still here.
not inside that trial steel. Not on the road to reincarnation. The Vire's instinctioned, and not dying on some desolate snowy mountain in one of my past lives. I'm right here in Kangfeng Court.
Someone kept a lamp burning for me.
Someone was brewing medicine for me. And someone was keeping everyone quiet, terrified of waking me up.
Only at this very moment did I truly feel like I had survived.
My chest throbbed with pain.
My meridians hurt even worse.
But my heart was incredibly peaceful. I slowly opened my eyes. The first thing I saw was the sunlight, filtering through the roof of Kangfeng Court. The second thing I saw was Pei Zhao, fast asleep at my bedside, drooling like a baby. And the third thing was Su Mian, expressionlessly using his sword to wipe that drool onto Pei Zhao's own sleeve. I was utterly speechless. Well, at least I'm still alive. And Kangfeng Court still has that same old broke-ass vibe.
Pei Zhao stirred and woke up, half dazed.
As soon as he saw my eyes open,
He bolted upright.
instantly awake. Brother Lin is awake.
That single yell of his brought everyone rushing in from outside.
素面，提一下我，
功够了，徐美人。
虚名，其眼字。
Tunjer. And even Elder are gorged in, thrusting a bowl of medicine at me. Drink it. I took 1 sniff, and the smell was so bitter, my soul almost left my body.
I looked at Elder He with absolute seriousness.
They think I'm already cured. Elder, he sneered. You've been out cold for 3 days.
Every meridian in your body looks like it's been trampled by a donkey, and you dare say you're cured? Do you think we raise donkeys here in the Shenyuan sect?
Elder, he shoved the bowl into my hands. After a moment, I closed my eyes and drank it all down. The bitter taste shot straight to my head. Pei Zhao stood beside me, trying to comfort me. Brother Lin, if you're feeling bad, I've got some osmanthus candy here. He reached into his robe and fumbled around for ages, only to pull out a crumpled candy wrapper. I stared at him. He stared back, then at the wrapper. Wait, where's the candy? Feeling guilty, Pei Zhao muttered. Well, I waited so long for you to wake up that I ended up eating it. For you.
Su Mian kicked him right out the door.
I looked toward the doorway and suddenly burst out laughing. It felt so good to actually see this happen again. Everyone quieted down. Yuan was the last one to enter the room. He wasn't wearing his formal sect master robes, just a simple, plain white robe. There was a faint trace of exhaustion in his eyes. But the moment he saw me awake, it was as if a massive weight had finally been lifted off his shoulders. Everyone tactfully slipped out of the room.
Pei Zhao wanted to stay and nose around.
But Elder Yance grabbed him by the collar and dragged him away, leaving only me and Yuan in the room. He stood by the bed, staring at me for a long time.
It cleared my throat. Sect master. But his eyes immediately.
I quickly corrected myself. Little Yunwan. His eyes welled up with tears instantly. I sighed. Don't cry. My meridians are hurting right now. I can't bear to see you like this.
Yulwan sat down.
His voice was barely a whisper. It's been 100 years. I knew you'd finally admit it. I fell silent for a moment.
I'm sorry.
Yunwan shook his head. I don't want an apology.
Then, what do you want?
He looked at me. From now on, you're not allowed to go off and face death alone again. I instinctively blurted out, I'll try.
Yuan's eyes instantly turned cold.
I immediately changed my tune.
I promise.
Only then did he look away. I told him everything I could. Except for that one thing. The Samsara's Shadow Guard token. The surname left behind by my 99th life, as well as the name Wen Jiali. But there was one thing I didn't explain in detail. The fact that my 99th life wasn't actually dead.
It's not that I didn't want to tell you, Yuan. It's just that I haven't quite figured it out myself.
Jiwan remained silent for a long time after hearing this. In the end, she only asked, So, are you still going to leave?
I will eventually head out to investigate and find out the truth.
But not right now. She looked at me. What are you going to do now then? I replied seriously. Recover from my injuries, fix the roof, and make sweet osmandifus cake.
Yongwan finally smiled.
It was very
saint, but it felt like a whole tree of sweet osmandifus suddenly blooming on Tingsu Cliff.
That night,
3 tables of food were set up at Kangfeng Yard.
It was called a celebration,
But dishes were actually just scraps sent over from the kitchen.
but once I worked my magic on them,
Even these scraps gained some dignity.
Peisha held his bowl, crying as he ate. Brother Lin,
During the 3 days you were unconscious, senior sister Sue was the one cooking.
Suman looked at him coldly. Was it not good?
Pei Xiao immediately changed his tune. It was very unique. Every single bite made me want to draw my... Everyone burst into laughter.
Jimin sat in the corner, looking a bit tense.
After all, regarding the incident at Berchao Will,
Even though she wasn't the mastermind behind it,
she had still played a part in it.
the disciples of the Xian sect still held a grudge against her. I put some food in her bowl. I placed a chopstick full of greens in her bowl.
Juminke froze.
I will get to work right after I finish eating.
Jiminke,
The guardian female cultivator of the 6th tier, had slightly red eyes. She whispered.
thank you.
I shook my head. Don't thank me too early. There's no pay for repairing Kangfeng Yard, Piha immediately added. But we provide meals.
Jiminhe smiled. That's enough.
Halfway through the meal, the orderly Len couple arrived. They were carrying your loaded tofu on their backs, saying they heard that the Sayun Saktu was safe and wanted to bring a little treat for the disciples. When I saw them,
My heart suddenly ached.
my parents hurried over and my mother felt my forehead. I heard you've been asleep for 3 days.
You worried me sick.
Old Lin stood by, trying to act calm. For those cultivators, sleeping for 3 days is probably completely normal, right?
Pizhou blurted out. No, it's absolutely not normal.
He almost let the cat out of the bag before Sumian quickly slapped a hand over his mouth. Old Lin's face turned pale instantly. I immediately smiled and said, Dad,
I was just tired.
Yunhua walked over and bowed deeply to my parents. Thank you both so much for raising Lin Fan. Flustered, my parents rushed forward to help her up.
Sect leader, please, you mustn't do this.
But Yuan insisted on finishing her bow.
Watching this scene, my heart suddenly softened. No matter who I was in my past 99 lifetimes, this very moment, no matter who I was in my past 99 lives, in this life, I am the son of the Lin family from King Sui Town and a disciple of the Kanfeng Yard in the Shenyun sect. Both of these things are real. That night, I made tofu soup for everyone and added some sweet osmandifus salt. Pei Zhao took his first bite and immediately frowned. Why is this both sweet and salty? But Yuan just kept her head down, finishing her entire bowl without saying a word. The next day, the Saiyung sect began reconstructing the 7 stars moonlocking array. Yunwan ordered that the details regarding the Guchao well must not be leaked. To the outside world, she announced that the minor ley line tide had been suppressed, and Lin Fan of Kangfeng Yard was rewarded with 3,000 sect merit points for his outstanding service in protecting the array.
When Peizhou heard that their debts were completely waived,
He did 3 backflips right there in the courtyard. But then, Deacon Xiaowen brought over a new ledger. Kaifeng Yard's renovation fees, 3,010 merit points. Pei Zhao froze right on the spot.
why is there still an extra 10 merit points?
Xiaowen replied calmly. That's the fee for printing the new ledger. I patted Pei Zhao on the shoulder. Don't cry. At least we went from 27 years of debt to only owing the price of a single ledger. Pei Zhao looked up at the sky. Cultivation is just too hard. Life began to settle back into a normal routine, except things were a bit different than before. In the past, I wanted to keep a low profile, but I just couldn't. Now that everyone knew I was no ordinary disciple, they actually started helping me cover it up. If someone on the road tried to call out, Senior Sai, Pei Zhao would immediately rush over, cover their mouth, and yell,
What, Senior Sai?
This is Brother Lin, the one who knows how to cook. When Sumian was training the mountain patrol squad, and someone asked if I was the sect leader's senior brother, Sumian replied coldly, If you want to know, go ask the sect leader yourself. That person instantly shut up, not daring to ask another word. Hisawan was the most honest of them all, but also the most likely to let things slip. Once, he called me senior brother right in front of everyone. But then he thought that didn't sound respectful enough and almost blurted out, Grandmaster! I immediately raised my spatula and warned him, If you dare call me Grandmaster,
You'll get no dinner tonight.
He Shamao quickly changed it to Senior Brother Lin, and the rest of Zhangfeng court came to a silent agreement.
My true identity might be mind-blowing,
but it definitely shouldn't get in the way of a good meal.
During the blackout repair phase,
The headmaster of Beilu Academy paid another visit. This time, he didn't put on any airs at all.
He publicly apologized to the Xinyu Sect
and offered to take Dean He back with him.
But Dean Quest stepped forward, bowed to the headmaster, and said, "Master, I wish to stay and finish repairing the formation."
The headmaster stared at him for a long, quiet moment. Finally, he nodded. To correct one's mistake is harder than a moment of being flawless. Hearing this, I couldn't help but look at the headmaster in a new light.
For him to say something like that
Meant Beilu Academy wasn't completely rotten to the core after all.
Still, I wasn't polite at all and accepted every single formation material they delivered.
After all, the Xianyu sect was poor, and Zhangfeng court was even poorer.
A few days later, a few Beilu Academy disciples came along with the headmaster to help out.
One of them would have named Zhang Lingyu.
Being rather outspoken, she saw Pei Zhao using rainwater to power the formation and alter the landscape.
It couldn't help but frown.
This formation is far too crude.
Pei Zhao immediately got defensive. What's wrong with crude?
As long as it works, that's what matters.
Zhao Lingyu retorted. Formations require absolute precision.
How can you treat it like digging a ditch?
I was squatting nearby, washing vegetables.
When I heard this,
I looked up and asked, "Have you ever dug a ditch?"
No.
Then how do you know digging a ditch doesn't require precision? I asked.
Everyone around us burst out laughing.
Zhao Yuanyu's face flushed. If you're so confident, why don't we have a contest? I, representing...
I'm not interested, I replied.
She turned her glare to Pei Zhao. Fine, then I'll compete with him.
Kia rolled up his sleeves. What's the challenge?
Zhang Lingyu pulled out a small formation disc. Within the time it takes for a single incense,
Whoever can drain this muddy hollow more effectively.
Thanks. Pei Zhao turned to look at me. Brother Ling?
I replied. Why are you looking at me?
You're the actual formation master.
Pei Zhao took a deep breath. Oh, right.
I am a formation cultivator, an incense stick later.
Zhao Ningyu set up an exquisite drainage array, its spiritual lights swirling beautifully.
It looked absolutely stunning.
Pei Zhao mate, however.
And the formation he built, it was completely crooked. He had even stuck 3 bamboo tubes next to it.
Zhao Ningyu couldn't help but scoff. You actually call this an array?
No sooner had the words left his mouth.
Rain suddenly started falling in the mountains. As the rain hit the ground, Zhang Lingyu's array drained the first 3 streams quickly. But by the 4th stream, water began to pile up because fallen leaves had blocked the spiritual nodes.
Meanwhile, Pei Zhao's bamboo tube array was splashing loudly as it poured all the water right into a wooden bucket,
and even washed the nearby vegetable patch clean in the process.
Pei Zhao put his hands on his hips and laughed. See that?
My array doesn't just drain water, it waters the veggies too.
Zhao Yongyu froze.
But this goes against the formation manuals.
Those manuals never had to grow vegetables.
Pei Zhao retorted.
Zhao Ningyu remained silent for a long time.
Finally, he bowed to Pei Zhao and said, "You're washing the dishes tonight."
Pei Zhao's smile vanished. Why? I said, don't let it go to your head.
Zhao Lingyu smiled as well.
From that day on,
The barrier between the White Dew disciples and the Immortal Cloud disciples thinned significantly.
They dug channels together, carried stones together, and fought for food together.
And through all that fighting for food, they grew close.
Jibin King, too, finally stopped sitting alone in the corner.
he even helped the kitchen set up a steamer array. Make the buns steam much faster.
Pei Zhao thought highly of this. Although he used to be a bit foolish.
Yes, although he was a bit of a fool before.
He certainly has a talent for steaming buns. Jimin Hesse fell silent for a moment. Should I be happy about that? I said. In Kangfeng Court, being able to steam buns is a great skill.
They thought about it.
And nodded seriously. That makes sense.
Half a month later,
Fu King found a red leaf deep within the wick of the 7th lamp.
The red leaf was only the size of a fingernail, and carved onto it was half a black lamp.
It showed no signs of spiritual energy.
Yet it made my reincarnation seal grow slightly warm.
Fu Chendong looked grave.
This doesn't belong to the Immortal Clouds.
His face also paled when he saw the copper sheet.
I've seen a similar pattern in an old scroll at Beilu Academy.
It only appeared once.
Written next to it were 4 characters. The Lantern of Tiangheng, Yongwan.
asked what it meant.
Jiminghe shook his head. The scroll was damaged. It only said they would appear in the cities along the Dazan River, and under the guise of making repairs, they would take away the most critical item. I pinched the copper sheet between my fingers. So this time, what they want to take away is me.
Bisha got anxious upon hearing this. No way! You still owe me 100 meals!
I stared at him. Since when did it become 100 meals?
Piha replied righteously. You were in a coma for 3 days.
I was terrified. That's for my mental distress. I was exasperated, but amused. Fine.
Put it on my tab. Pei Zhao immediately pulled out a little
notebook. I snatched it right out of his hand. You actually kept a log? Everyone burst into laughter.
Amidst the laughter,
The copper sheet suddenly grew warm. In my mind, the long silent remnant of the system's voice echoed once more.
Do not trust your 99th lifetime.
My eyes narrowed. The voice spoke only that single sentence before vanishing once again.
As if someone from a vast distance had used the very last of their strength to cram those words into my ears.
I didn't tell the others right away, because this warning was too bizarre. If the fake decree came from Tianheng Hall, they would naturally want me to doubt my 99th lifetime.
But this voice wasn't cold like the ones before.
Instead, it felt like a warning from the deepest layer of the genuine reincarnation imprint. The 99th lifetime.
My 99th lifetime left a letter telling me not to die. And now, another voice is telling me not to trust my 99th lifetime.
Who is real and who is fake?
For the first time, I felt that my memories of the 99 lifetimes might not be complete.
That night, I went to Listening Snowcliff alone.
The Osmondistos tree had already sprouted new buds. Yuan stood beneath the tree, looking as if she had been waiting for a long time.
She didn't ask why I came. Instead, she simply handed me a plate of Osmanthus cakes.
I looked at the cakes.
You made these?
She nodded. I took a bite.
After a moment of silence, Yuan asked, "How is it?"
I replied seriously.
It has potential.
Yuan narrowed her eyes. Tell the truth, I confessed. You put in too much salt.
Yuan stared at me, and after a long silence, she suddenly smiled. Then, I froze. She said softly, 100 years ago, you promised you'd make me Osmondus's cakes for the rest of your life.
Now that you're alive, you can take your time paying me back. I looked at him and suddenly felt my throat tighten. All right, I'll teach you. That night,
We didn't talk about the system.
We didn't talk about Jianhim Palace.
nor did we talk about the 99th life. We only talked about how many years the Osmondus flowers needed to be dried, how many times the glutinous rice flour had to be sifted, and exactly how much of that salt dried from the fields we should add.
Yuan learned so diligently.
So diligently that I even doubted if she had ever been this focused while practicing her swordplay. By the time the second batch came out of the steamer, the flavor was finally right. She took a bite, and her eyes welled up with tears again. I asked, "What's wrong now?" she whispered. This time, I didn't get it by waiting. I got it by learning it.
My heart ached slightly.
In the future, if you want to eat this, you don't have to wait for me. She looked at me and said, "But you have to be here." I fell silent for a moment. "I'll try my best," I said. She frowned, and I immediately corrected myself. "I'll be here." Only then was she satisfied.
A few days later, Winjaholi finally woke up from the memories of the seventh lantern.
When Sumia helped him to Kangfong Courtyard, his very first words were, "Where's the food?"
I stared at him. You waited all this time.
And the moment you wake up, all you ask for is food.
When Charlie said flatly, "Otherwise, should I ask how you managed to half-kill yourself again?" I sighed. That mouth of yours. Even after all these years, it's still as sharp as ever. He sat down and began eating the porridge. Only after finishing his first bowl did he begin to speak of the 99th life. "In the 99th life, your name was Shungayan." When he mentioned that name, Yunwan glanced at me. I nodded. I remembered that in that life, I had indeed met Wenjaholi before my ascension tribulation. But in my memory, Wenjaho should have left long before I underwent the tribulation. But Wenjali corrected me. I didn't leave. You were the one who made me leave, but I didn't listen. I asked. And then? He set down his bowl.
And then, I saw that the ascension tribulation hadn't actually ended.
There was a black lantern in the sky. A phantom figure reached out with chains from the tribulation clouds and dragged you away. The moon instantly fell silent.
The speed bun in Peijiao's hand slipped and dropped into his bowl.
Suman frowned. Dragged away?
Wenjali nodded. No, he wasn't killed. He was taken away. All you left behind was an outer coat burned to ashes by the tribulation fire. And, after that, I spent 30 years tracking him down, which finally led me to Chungking Palace and the No Regret Tower.
The No Regret Tower is hidden deep within the Nanling Mountains.
It only opens once every 60 years.
Yes, once every 60 years.
And locked inside are countless cultivators whose souls have been ripped away.
My heart sank, inch by inch.
So, the 99th incarnation of me might still be alive?
Windsor Hall stared at me.
While Peijiao asked cautiously,
But, if he's still alive, Brother Lin, then what exactly are you? I looked at him. High teen too.
That's an excellent question.
Chacha's eyes lit up.
Really? But too bad, I don't have an answer.
Peijiao let out a disappointed sigh.
Wenchao.
Your 99th incarnation left behind 3 things. The first is a letter, kept at the 7th lamp. The second item is already in your hand. I looked down, but all I had in my hand was a pair of chopsticks. When Shaho glanced at the fire poker in the corner of the room,
I froze, and so did everyone else. Peijiao was the first to rush over and grab that fire poker, the very same one I used to beat Xu Granlan.
poked around the arrow washing pool.
And even scraped stove ashes with.
This thing is actually a treasure. Even I found it hard to believe.
I took the fire poker and gave it a gentle twist.
The charred outer bark cracked open, revealing an edgeless short sword inside.
The blade was neither bright nor sharp.
It even looked like a worn, smooth piece of old wood.
But the moment I gripped it,
A fleeting vision flashed through my mind. A dark tower,
A long street, a flickering, half-lit black lamp.
And another me under that dim black lamp. A man who looked exactly like me sat inside the tower, looking up and smiling at me. He only said one thing. My 100th self.
You've finally been smarter than me for once. My eyelid twitched.
Yep, that's definitely me.
Even when praising someone, I still have to mock myself.
The image fades. 2 characters appear on the Fufeng short sword, Zhao Qian, when Jaholi says. The 3rd item is in the no-return tower.
Yuman says immediately, I'm going with you.
I shake my head. Not right now. Her gaze turns cold. I explain. The Seymoon Sect just survived the Earth Meridian Nest, 7 stars locking the moon formation. Things haven't fully stabilized yet. Since Tianqing Hall has its eyes on this place, we can't all leave.
慵懒方式狭蓝.
She knows I'm right. I look at everyone. For the next 3 months,
we will first recuperate and practice our swordsmanship,
recover our strength, and find out what Chen Hankel is up to.
Pisao raises his hand. Do I still need to cook?
I say, of course. He sighs in relief. Then I'm good. Wen Zhouhali looks at the crowd and suddenly smiles. This lifetime of yours is certainly much livelier than before.
I smile too. Yeah, very lively indeed. Another month passes. The Xiaowang sect completely returns to its daily routine. The disciples attend their morning drills as usual, sweep the mountain paths as usual, then fret over their experience points as usual. The mountain paths of Kamfang Courtyard are busy as usual, and its vegetable plot has expanded to 5 acres.
Pei Xiao's rain-to-cistern formation finally stops leaking into the room, but it starts pouring the rainwater right into Xu Guolan's boots. When Xu Wenlan comes looking for him, brandishing his sword, bloodlust, Pi Zhan hides behind me. I say to Xu Guolan, you can beat him up. Just don't hit his face. He still needs that face for haggling.
Pisao is shocked. Brother Lin, you're not going to shield me.
I say, I'll protect your life, but I won't shield your fonts.
Sumian's Spring Thunder swordplay is growing steadier and steadier. He Shaoman finally writes down the 3rd questions of the 9 questions of breaking branches.
His hands are shaking as he shows it to me.
After reading it, I only say 2 words. Very good.
His eyes instantly well up with tears. I add, it's just that your handwriting is terrible. He smiles again.
Xiuyan is in the sword hall, reorganizing the damaged archives.
Calling all the forgotten old records?
My father praises his reliability to everyone he meets. Every time Ximinyan hears this, he just lowers his head and keeps working, fearing he would get cocky again.
Several disciples from the Hianbeilu Peaks stayed behind on their own to teach the outer disciples basic arrays after finishing their training on the 6th lamp.
When he lectured, he was no longer high and mighty. In his very first class, he said arrays aren't meant to make you look smart. They are meant to keep more people out of harm's way. Standing outside the window and hearing this, I felt the kid had finally shown some real growth. The Eziawan sect is like a weather-beaten old house. The tiles are still old, and the beams are still crooked, but everyone knows exactly how to patch it up. And that is more important than anything.
Until the night before the 3-month period was up.
The 7 Chengfeng lamps flickered slightly at the exact same time. They didn't go out, but rather seemed to be waiting for something. I was in the kitchen, cooking porridge, when Zhouchen, the windless short sword, suddenly flew out from the wall and landed right in the palm of my hand. A line of words glowed on the blade. The Tower of No Regrets is open. It closes in 3 days. At that exact moment, 3 sharp knocks echoed from outside the mountain gate. Shaoan watched over in person to report. Princess, someone outside the Chengfang courtyard is asking to see Lin Fan. Yuan asked, who is it? Xiao Wen's expression turned incredibly strange. He said he's from the Tianheng Palace. A heavy silence fell over the room. I slowly put down my ladle. Jaquel wallowed hard. Brother Lin. Should I take the pot away first? I asked. Why? Pijia replied with dead seriousness. Just in case a fight breaks out. We can't let this porridge go to waste. Surprisingly, I found myself agreeing with him. So, I handed the porridge pot to Sumian. Keep an eye on this. Suman took the pot, looking more serious than if she were receiving a sacred sword. I walked over to the courtyard gate. Standing outside was a young boy dressed in gray. He didn't look very old, and carried a black wooden case on his back. Upon seeing me, he bowed respectfully. Brother Lin Fan. I frowned. Do you know me? The boy looked up, his eyes bright and clear. Yet the words he spoke sent a shiver straight down my spine. I don't know you, but the Lin Fan inside the Tower of No Regrets told me to deliver a message. He said, if the you of the 100th life still wants to know who you really are, come to Nunli within 3 days. Otherwise, your 99th incarnation will complete your 100th death mission for you. After the gray-clad youth said this, an entire hidden went courtyard fell dead silent. Even the porridge bubbling on the stove seemed to understand, as its bubbling sound quieted down significantly. I looked at the black wooden case on his back, and then at his excessively delicate face. Only one thought crossed my mind. Does everyone from Tinhong Temple really know how to choose a restaurant? Peizhou crossed his arms, stood behind me, and whispered, Brother Lin, this doesn't sound like an invitation. It sounds like a death threat. I nodded. Indeed, he's being extremely rude about it. The gray-clad youth did not argue. He simply bowed once more. My name is Wen Deng. I'm merely a messenger, not here to start a fight.
Yulem stood inside the doorway. Her Shohang sword remained at its sheath.
Yet all the bamboo leaves in the courtyard went completely still. Since you come from Tiniu Temple, why did you come to the Senior Sect to deliver this message?
Wendan lowered his head. Because the one inside the no-return tower said, if I didn't come, he would tear
down the top 3 floors of the tower.
Peizhou gasped. Wow, is he always this? My mouth twitched. This was indeed something I would do.
When Xiaohou, this Morley stopped at the room.
His face was still a bit pale, but his eyes were fixed on the black wooden case on Wendong's back. What did he have you bring?
Wendong took down the black case
and handed it to me with both hands. A lamp, a wooden tablet, and half a pancake. My expression had been dead serious, but hearing half a pancake made me almost drop the case. My 99th incarnation had been locked in that no-return tower for so many years, and he actually remembered to save some pancake for me?
Peijiao's eyes lit up.
What kind of pancake? Wendong replied earnestly. A cold one. Peijiao sighed. Well, then it's not worth it. I opened the black case. Inside, sure enough, lay a small black lamp, a wordless wooden tablet,
and half a dried pancake that was as hard as a rock.
I picked up the pancake and tapped it against the case. It made a sharp, clinking sound. Peizhou gasped. This flatbread can actually be used as a defensive spiritual weapon. But Wen Shouyi didn't laugh. He picked up the black lamp. His eyes darkened slowly. This is the door-opening lamp of the Tower of No Return. Only those locked inside the tower have the right to send it out. Yulan looked at me. In 3 days. I know you are going. I nodded. If I don't, my 99th incarnation will die in my place. Even though I'm usually sick of myself, I can't just stand by and watch myself die. Peijiao raised his hand. That sounds incredibly convoluted, he Shoun whispered. But the point is, we have to save them. Sumi nodded. Exactly. Saving people is all that matters. Yuan looked at me. This time, I'm going with you. I didn't answer right away, and her gaze turned cold instantly. If you dare tell me to stay behind, I will steal off the kitchen of Canfeng Courtyard. I fell silent. Talk about hitting where it hurts. Peijiao almost fell to his knees. Sectmaster, please think twice. The kitchen is innocent. I sighed. Fine. We'll go together. But the Sinyuan sect can't be left unmanned. The 7 stars locking moon formation at Chenheng Palace might not be enough to suppress the Tower of No Return. Elder Yansan and Elder Fu Qingdong must stay behind.
Shaowenni, Shitongguan, and the outer sect elders will guard the gates. Most importantly, Ji Minghe must stay to repair the 6th lamp.
Just as the words left my mouth, Jimika stepped out from the crowd. I am going too. I looked at him. What are you going for? He said seriously. Tinheng Palace set this trap under the name of Beilu Academy. If I don't see with my own eyes what they did, how can I ever give the academy an explanation? Peijiao immediately piped up. Then who's going to repair the 6th lamp?
Jing Nian fell silent for a moment.
Yao Lin, you can do it.
In the distance, Zhao Lingyu, who was busy carrying things, caught the mention of her name. Zhao Lingyu, carrying things in the distance, smacked Dread up. No, I can't. I haven't even learned how to run the formation yet.
Pale patted her shoulder. If you don't know, you can learn.
In the path of cultivation, the most important thing is having the guts to run up debts. Zhao Lingyu's face turned pale. I suddenly had a bad feeling that the entire ethos of Beilu Academy was about to be led astray by Peijiao. In the end, those joining the journey were decided. Yunwan.
配角宿命。
He 小尔按照后，按我葬礼的你的为。
Jiming was left behind by me.
The reason was simple. If the Tower of No Return really has, it's not just the Hang Hall. There are also far too many formation masters. Instead, it's too easy to be led by the nose. Although Juning was reluctant, she complied nonetheless. Before leaving, Ting Ke stuffed 3 formation discs into Peijiao's hands. Peijiao took them and asked, "What are these?" Ting He replied, "A protective array, a trapping array, and a bun-steaming array." Peijiao's eyes welled up with emotion. "You finally understand Canfeng quote," Li Mingying also said solemnly. "Take care. When you get back, I'll treat you to steamed buns." Peijiao nodded. They've got to be hot. The next day, before the break of dawn, we prepared to set off. Old Lin and his wife came to see us off, and then packed me a bag of dried tofu. Old Lin stuffed a handful of copper coins into my hand. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Dad, I'm not just going to some local market." Old Lin glared at me. "When you're out in the world, you won't feel at peace if you don't have money on you." Lin then handed Yuan a bag of sweet husband this candy. "Sectmaster, please take this too. Have one when you feel tired on the road."
Yuan took the candy.
Her expression incredibly earnest. "Thank you, Auntie." On the side, Peijiao watched with envious eyes.
"Auntie, 我的爸妈."
Annalise smiled and handed him a large bag. "You have one too, Peijiao." He was instantly deeply moved. There really is no place like home. Sumian lowered her head as she accepted a pair of newly sewn wrist guards. He saw it received a bag of toasted rice. Wenja Holy received a pot of hot tea. He clutched the teapot and stood there in a daze for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you, Aunt Lin." Aunt Lin replied, "You look so pale, young lady. Drink more hot tea." Wenja Will turned her head away as if she didn't want anyone to see. Her eyes growing red. Watching this scene unfold, a sudden wave of peace settled over my heart. In the past, whenever I set off to face my tribulations, it was always just me.
a single sword, and a flask of wine. But now, as I leave, someone stuffs dried tofu into my hands.
Someone gives me copper coins.
And someone tells me to come home early. So, this is what it truly means to pack for a journey. As the cloud boat rose into the sky, the morning smoke of Kingshui town was just beginning to drift. The Cheyenne Sect gradually fades into the distance, shrinking behind the clouds. 7 sword lamps light up along the mountainside, shining like 7 bright stars.
The young man who returned with us, Wendo, stands close by.
He remains perfectly still and completely silent. Pijao can't help but edge closer to him.
Are you really from Tainkung Hall?
Wendong nods. Sort of, he replies. Pijao frowns. What do you mean, sort of?
Wendong thinks for a moment. I was an abandoned child, found outside the regretless
and raised by Tianjing Hall. My job is to deliver lanterns, identity plaques, and pass on messages they don't want to deliver in person.
Pijao frowns. So, do you actually like Tianjing Hall?
Wendong shakes his head. No, I don't. Then why do you still run errands for them? Wendan replies quietly. Because, before this, I didn't know.
Pijao falls silent for a moment.
Then, he pulls out half a piece of Osmanthu's candy from his pocket. Well, now you do. If you have nowhere else to go, come to Kangfengye. We're poor, but the food is decent. Wenjung freezes, staring at that half piece of candy for a long time. Finally, he takes it. Thank you. Watching from the side, I can't help but marvel. Pei Zhao usually seems so unreliable, but when it counts, he can win someone over with just half a piece of candy. By afternoon, our cloud vessel reaches the border of Lanling.
The mountain terrain here is even denser than around the Sanyuan Sect.
The peaks rise in endless layers, shrouded in a heavy mist. It's as if someone has draped a wet cloth over the entire landscape.
Wendong speaks up. The regretless tower isn't on any map.
The only way to see the entrance is to shine a dark lantern through the fog around sunset.
Only then can we see the entrance.
So, we touch down in a small town at the foot of the mountain.
The town is called Jusi Town.
The locals mostly sell bamboo crafts. The streets are packed with bamboo baskets, crates, and fresh bamboo shoots.
The moment Pei Zhao spots some bamboo tubes,
his eyes light up. Brother Lin, this place is a literal treasure trove for a formation master. I glare at him warily. Don't you dare start buying things random. Our budget is extremely tight. Pei Zhao pats his chest. Don't worry.
I'm just looking, I promise. No buying.
An hour later, he came back carrying 20 bamboo tubes. I stared at him. So this is what you call just looking, not... Pizai replied with utter confidence. I didn't buy them.
The shopkeeper said if I helped him fix his drainage ditch,
he'd give these to me for free. I looked over at the shopkeeper. He was grinning from ear to ear. The young immortal master is truly incredible. My backyard has been flooded for 3 years, and he cleared it with just 3 pieces of bamboo. I was completely speechless.
Xiao said proudly. This is what I call earning my keep.
As we waited for sunset in the town, he casually helped the townspeople repair 2 small bridges and cleared out a clogged canal.
And Juwan was originally just passing through.
But when she saw an elderly man trip over a bamboo basket, she quietly stopped in her tracks. Husu stepped in to steady the bridge. Planks. He did it so naturally,
without putting on any of the airs of a sect leader.
The old man had no idea who he was,
and simply pressed 2 freshly steamed bamboo rice balls into his hands.
Take these, young lady.
Don't go hungry. Yuan took the food, holding the warm rice balls as she glanced back at me. I smiled and said, go ahead, eat. This is the most precious thank you gift in the mortal realm. She took a small bite, and her expression softened with warmth. Liajo stuffed his face, his mouth full of sweet rice. Mundum between bites. This is way more satisfying than those fancy spiritual meals.
Wencha hold on by the tea stall.
Watching us run around busily, he suddenly remarked, you never used to stop for such trivial things when you were on a journey. I wiped the dirt off my hands as he continued. You always used to think you had grander things to accomplish, I replied. But now, I feel like these small things are actually quite important.
Winjahoi, look at me.
You've changed. I asked for better or for worse. He thought for a moment. You've become more human. My mouth twitched. Well, thank you for such a subtle compliment. At sunset, Winjaholi lit the black lantern. It didn't cast any flame, yet it made the mountain mist slowly part to both sides. In the distance, a dark tower emerged. It wasn't tall, only 9 stories, but it seemed to weigh heavily upon the mountain peak, with dim lanterns hanging from every level. Under the lamp, there was no wind, not even a bird. Pichao swallowed hard. This place doesn't look friendly at all. I nodded. Exactly. So once we're inside, don't touch anything. Pichao instantly tucked his hands deep into his sleeves. Suminin drew her sword a fraction of an inch. Xiaoming gripped her bamboo sword tightly. Yuan walked up right beside me. Meanwhile, Wenshaholi stepped up to my side, beside Yunwan, and pulled out a tattered map of the tower. He said, the Tower of No Regrets has 9 floors. The first 3 floors question your memories. The middle 3 floors question your obsessions. And the final 3 floors question where you belong. The people from Tinheng Hall are most likely on the 9th floor. When shall we put the map away? Then he added, and there's one more thing you must remember. The Tower of No Regrets is no ordinary building. It is a mind array, using obsessions as its walls, and truth as its bones. It feeds on the bones and souls of those trapped inside, using them as lamp oil.
So while it looks like it has 9 floors,
Every single level is actually testing the human heart.
Pijao asked. So, as long as our hearts are tough enough, we'll be fine, right?
Wenjia Ho sneered. No matter how tough your heart is,
Can it ever be tougher than the debts you owe?
Pijao shut his mouth instantly.
Wen Jiaha continued. The Tower of No Regrets fears 3 things. First, refusing to make the choices it forces upon you. Second, a truth more logical than its own. And third,
The warmth of the mortal world.
I was taken aback. The warmth of the mortal world?
he nodded. The arrays of Tianhong Hall are too extreme. They believe a cultivator's Dao fruit is far superior to anything mortal.
They think sacrificing one powerful master can restore an entire realm.
But the more extreme an obsession-based array is, the more it fears the simple things. The cooking fires, the daily chores, and the warm light.
Even a simple, everyday phrase like, I'll wait for you to come home.
Because those things hold no spiritual power.
Yet they remind the array that humans aren't just fuel. We need to eat, we need to go home, and we need to be remembered.
Pichao's eyes lit up in realization. So, Brother Lin bringing dried tofu actually makes perfect.
I nodded. Of course. A master keeping up his energy is only the surface reason.
Wenjia Ho shot me a look.
You're just hungry.
I shrugged. Some things are better left unsaid. It's basic etiquette for a cultivator.
I asked, is there a shortcut?
Wenjia Ho looked at me.
Yes. My eyes lit up. He said flatly, tear down the tower.
Pijao whispered. This idea is a bit too aggressive.
I replied, let's not tear it down yet. What if we have to pay for damages?
Wen Deng walked at the front.
The dark lantern's light shone on the tower door. 2 words appeared on the door. No regrets. Looking at those words, I suddenly felt annoyed. Who curses people to never return before they even step through the door? I raised my hand and used my sword, Jiaochen, to add a stroke to the door.
No regrets turned into safe return.
Wen Deng's eyes widened. You can actually change it like that? I said. Words are written to be rewritten. The tower door fell silent for a moment, and then it slowly creaked open.
Pijao was shocked. If I knew it was that easy, I would have rewritten my debt receipts like that too.
Real One shot him a look. You actually have debt receipts?
Pijao shut up instantly.
The first floor was a long corridor, both walls lined with water mirrors. Inside every mirror was a scene of my death, from one of my past lives. In one, I was painting on a snowy mountain. Another showed me tempering my sword by the sea. Another showed me dissolving into light and shadow before a grand sect barrier. There was even one of me lying alone in the wild grass, watching the sky slowly turn dark. There was no blood in those images, yet they felt heavier than any bloodshed.
Because in every single mirror, I was leaving. Yulan stood in front of one mirror.
It showed the final moment of Zhelanzhou's tribulation. He saw his younger self being pushed off the tribulation stage by me. He saw me smiling and saying, next time.
Her fingers clenched so hard they turned white. I walked over to her side
and whispered, don't look.
But Yuan shook her head.
I want to watch. I need to know just how much it hurt you back then.
I fell silent.
Honestly, I can't even remember if it hurt or not.
But looking at the tears in her eyes,
I suddenly realized that the one who truly felt the pain wasn't me back then.
It was every person left behind who was still alive. Then, a voice echoed down the corridor. Lin Fan,
in every lifetime. You chose to leave. Why have you turned back in this one? I looked up. The voice was freezing cold. Just like the system from my past, I replied. Because before, no one ever told me that turning back was also a path. The water mirrors trembled in unison. A dark shadow emerged from one of the mirrors. If you turn back,
your sacrifices over 99 lifetimes will have been completely meaningless.
I scoffed. Who says it's meaningless? I scoffed. Who says only sacrifice makes things meaningful?
I've built bridges.
I've planted trees, and I've saved lives. I've cooked meals. And some people lived better lives because of me. That, right there, is meaning. You don't have to die for it to count.
The illusion faded, leaving the long corridor deathly quiet.
The door at the end slowly creaked open. With the first floor cleared, Pei Zhao leaned in and whispered, Brother Lin, you were so cool just now.
I asked, was I?
He nodded. Yeah. Though you'd be even cooler if you weren't holding that dried tofu.
I looked down. Only then did I realize I'd somehow been gnawing on half a piece of dried tofu.
I calmly told him, just replenishing my energy.
The second floor was a cafeteria.
Yes, a literal cafeteria.
A long table sat right in the center, and on it was every single one of my favorite foods from my 99 past lives. There were Beijing snow bamboo shoots, South Sea cloudfish, Western Zhou sweet brew, and even Kingshui Town's tofu pudding.
Pichao's eyes went wide.
This tower might be gloomy,
but the food is actually great. When Zhang grabbed his hand tightly, don't eat it. This is the floor of desire. One bite and you'll be trapped forever in the taste you yearn for the most.
Pei Zhao snatched his hand back instantly.
But suddenly that bowl of tofu pudding floated right in front of me. Spi was rising from it, and it smelled incredibly, impossibly delicious.
The figures of Uncle and Aunt Lin appeared beside the table.
Jiaofan, eat some before you go.
I looked at them, my heart softening. I stared at them, feeling a deep ache in my chest. But the next moment I shook my head. It's fake.
Pei Zhao asked, how do you know?
My mother never put this many chopped scallions in her tofu pudding.
And Lin knew I hated scallions.
The illusion stiffened slightly.
Suddenly, a plate of osmanthus cake appeared in front of Yunwan as well. In the illusion, I sat at the table, smiling at her. Little Yunwan, this time, senior brother isn't going anywhere. Yunwan's eyes trembled slightly.
I was just about to speak. He has already drawn his sword and dispersed the illusion with a single slash.
His voice was chillingly calm.
At his current level of spellcraft, he wouldn't place so many formation eyes.
I was taken aback, then smiled. Not bad. You've made quick progress.
Yulwan looked at me.
Tears glistening in her eyes.
I practiced with all my heart, she said.
In front of Sumian, the illusion of a gentle woman appeared, holding a plate of pastries, calling out to him, Yamian! Sumian's fingers instantly clenched.
It was the first time I had ever seen such a vulnerable expression on his face.
He didn't strike it down immediately. He only whispered softly, Mother.
The illusion smiled and waved at him. Come back. Don't practice the sword anymore.
It's too painful. Tears spilled from Suman's eyes.
He raised his sword, but instead of slashing
at the illusion, he held it protectively across his chest. Mother, if you were still here,
you would want me to live a good life,
not remain trapped inside a fake meal. The sword light flashed down, and the illusion dispersed. The reflection of the sword light faded from Sumian's eyes, and the illusion was completely gone.
Sumiao closed his eyes.
When he opened them again, his gaze was firmer than ever.
I said softly, I'll make you a fresh plate when we go back.
Kunina nodded.
With less salt. Yuan shot me a look, and I quickly added, and less salt in yours too. Only then was Yuan sat.
The door to the second floor opened. Qi looked regretfully at the disappearing feast.
What a waste.
I asked him, what did you see just now?
Pijao replied, I saw the hidden wind manual, which I've never seen before, and my cultivation doubled every month. I fell silent for a moment. That indeed is highly tempting. The third floor was the debt settlement floor.
The walls were covered in ledgers.
Each one recorded things I owed from my past lives.
An unkept promise.
An unsent letter.
An unspoken goodbye.
And a missed meal. Peijao suddenly grew tense. There isn't a ledger for me here.
No sooner had the words left his mouth
than a terrifyingly thick ledger crashed down from the wall with a loud thud.
A cover read, Pijao's debt settlement ledger.
Pijao's face turned deathly pale. How is that even possible? I'm still young!
Where did this thick ledger come from? Why is it flipping open on its own?
The first page reads, Weld to Lin Fun, 108 meals. The second page reads, Weld to Sumian, a apology. The third page reads, Wad to Shuguanlan, a pair of boots.
Even though Qiguanlan isn't here.
I nodded on his behalf. This one is actually true. Peijao covers his face.
He is being way too heartless.
But the one this debt is truly calling to account is me. An enormous ledger emerges from the wall. The first page has only a single line of text. Lin Fen owes 99. It is all a trap. The voice of the Dark Lantern echoes once more. If you wish to settle this, you only need to go to the 9th floor and surrender your current life to Tan Heng. 100 lifetimes will merge into one, and you shall achieve true immortality. I flipped through the ledger. It is densely packed with names. There is Yunnan and Wen Jiahon,
the grandfather of the old carpenter from Qingshu Town,
a woodcutting boy I saved in one of my past lives, disciples I taught, and old friends I never got to say goodbye to. Behind every single name, the word Aud is written.
I suddenly laugh. This ledger is wrong. The Dark Lantern asks, what's wrong with it?
I say, between people, there isn't just death. There is also remembrance. There is legacy.
And there are the paths they've carved out for themselves.
I owe Yuan a plate of osmanthus cake.
But she has already learned to make it herself.
I owe Wen Zhao a truth.
But he pursued it all the way here on his own.
I owe many people a farewell. But they have also left behind their own lanterns. This isn't a debt. It's a chronicle.
I pick up Peijiao's small notebook.
They tear off a blank page and write on it.
Writing 4 words. Settle it slowly.
Then, I paste it onto the largest ledger.
The ledger suddenly ignites with a warm, glowing light.
All the words owed on the wall slowly transform into sentences.
Zhao stares in utter shock. Brother Lin.
So a debt can actually be interpreted this way?
I look at him.
Not for you.
Your debt is a real debt.
Pijiao's smug expression crumbled instantly.
Haha. The doors to the 3rd floor slid open, just as we stepped onto the 4th floor. A flash of sword light charged straight at us.
The sword light wasn't fast,
but it perfectly cut off all our paths of retreat.
I raised my hand, giving the Chao Chen windless dagger a gentle flick, easily dispersing the sword light. Standing ahead of us was a swordsman clad in black. His face was covered by a mask patterned with a half lantern. Those who enter the tower shall halt, he said in a flat, robotic voice.
Yuan drew her sword.
Let me. I wanted to tell her to be careful, but then I remembered she hated it when I treated her like the little girl she used to be.
So, I changed my words. Strike the chains, not the man.
就往哪？
Shahan cleared its scabbard with a sharp ring. Instantly, the fourth floor lit up with a brilliant flash of sword light.
The black-clad swordsman's technique was incredibly clean,
with absolutely no wasted movements.
as if all emotion had been completely stripped away. Yet Yongwan's sword carried blood, wind, and the sweet scent of Osnafias 2.1. Every strike seemed to tell her opponent, a sword does not exist simply to obey.
After 17 moves, Yunwan lunged forward.
Her blade tapped the swordsman's wrist, not hurting him in the slightest, but merely slicing through the thin black chain on his wrist. The swordsman's body shuddered, and his mask fell off, revealing a young, youthful face. He stared blankly at his own hands, whispering, "Can I really still stop?"
Yuan sheathed her sword.
Of course, the sword is in your hand. The sword
Not in the chains.
The swordsman's eyes turned slightly red,
And he bowed deeply to her. Thank you. Suddenly, the black chains on the wrists of all the swordsmen on the fourth floor shattered at once.
They no longer tried to block us.
and silently stepped aside to let us through.
Pijal whispered, "Wow, so the sect master knows how to slap faces too."
And she does it so elegantly. I nodded. Of course, after all, I taught her.
Yunwan shot me a look. Are you sure about that?
I quickly changed my tune. Well, mostly because of your incredible talent.
I merely offered some survival skills left over from my 99th life. Countless black lanterns hovered in midair, each containing a faint, flickering breath of life. Among them, one particular black lantern looked exceptionally ancient. It hangs at the very highest point, with no light and no chains.
The lantern's body is split in half. Yet someone has meticulously mended it with golden thread. When Wendeng saw that lantern, his face paled slightly. I asked him, "What is that?"
Wendong whispered. That is the lantern the shop owner forbids anyone from touching.
Losing Free once said it was the very first lantern of the Chanheng shop, and the owner's very first lantern, left but behind by the owner's own master.
Pichel looked up. Can it still be used after all this time? Wendong shook his head. No one knows, but the owner comes here once every year.
And stands under that lantern for a very long time. Once I heard him say, "Master." I was not wrong.
I stared up at the ancient lantern. Its flame was unlit, yet it felt as though a sigh was trapped inside. Suddenly, I realized,
Perhaps the path of Tanhum shop did not begin with evil.
maybe it started with a regret that came too late.
But when regret is worshipped as the ultimate truth by those who follow, it becomes a shackle.
Wen Jiaholi's expression shifted. These are the remnant lanterns of harvested spiritual bones.
We cannot force them open,
Or else the souls inside will be destroyed.
Wendong stood frozen in place.
his face turning deathly pale.
I have been here.
The lanterns I delivered in the past? They are all hanging here.
He stared at those dark lanterns,
His eyes showing a raw, deep agony for the first time.
I didn't know they were still alive.
Pijal patted his shoulder. It is not too late to know now.
Wendeng looked up. "What can I do?"
Wen Jiahou replied, "As the lantern deliverer, you can unlock the lanterns, but the moment you open them,
天香受我.
immediately know you have betrayed them."
Wendong fell silent for a moment,
Then suddenly smiled.
I used to not know where I could go.
But now, I do.
He raised his hand, pressing it against the first divot.
Now, I know.
He raised his hand and placed it on the first black lantern.
Sprang softly. Return, lantern.
The dark lantern flared to life,
Shedding a single thread of warm light.
like breath trapped inside a lantern.
Finally finding a crack to escape.
1 lamp, 2 lamps, 10 lamps, light up.
More and more of the dark lanterns are lit.
The fifth floor begins to tremble.
A cold shout echoes from the distance. Wendong, how dare you?
Wendong's face is deathly pale.
But he doesn't stop.
I walk up to his side,
Zhao Qin makes a swift sweep.
blocking the black threads of the backlash. I'll block them. Keep going.
Lei Zhou immediately spreads out the formation plate.
顺便的一秀满搞构下.
Which Halio quickly dismantles the lantern locks. One stands at the very front.
With just her bow and arrows, she holds back the overwhelming pressure pressing down from above.
At this moment, Wendeng is no longer the lantern-bearing boy of Tunheng Palace.
He is just a young boy who finally knows he has a choice in where he goes. As the last dark lantern lights up,
All the broken lamps on the 5th floor turn into tiny specks of light.
flying along the tower walls towards the world outside.
When Jiaholi asks softly, will they wake up?
I reply, they will. Maybe not soon,
But they will. Wendong sinks to his knees on the ground.
His tears finally spilling over.
I delivered so many wrong lanterns before. I kneel down to look at him.
Then make sure you deliver them right from now on.
Kangfeng Courtyard happens to need a lantern keeper.
Can I really do it?
You can, but you'll have to learn how to cook.
Wendong wipes away his tears.
I'll learn. The doors to the 5th floor swing open.
But the 6th floor is deathly quiet.
Unnaturally quiet.
It is a study.
A figure sits at the writing desk.
Wearing green robes, with hair as white as snow.
He holds a brush, writing. He looks up at me. His face looks exactly like mine. I've only felt more exhausted. I stared at him.
Shengryan. He smiled.
The 100th incarnation of me arrived slower than I expected.
It took me 3 days to get here. I was already moving as fast as I could.
He glanced at the bamboo tube in Pei Zhao's arms.
You actually brought so much stuff?
Pei Zhao immediately shielded the bamboo tube. These are strategic supplies.
Sect chuckled softly. Good for you.
You're richer in this lifetime than I was.
I stared at the black lantern chains behind him. He was chained to the tree by the shore. Yet he didn't look like a prisoner. He looked more like he was sitting there on purpose, waiting for me.
You said you wanted to complete the 100th death mission for me.
Sengai nodded. Yes. Seeing this, Yunwan's expression grew cold. You are also him. Why do you still force him?
Shengai looked at Yunwan.
A brief moment of daze in his eyes. So you're little Yunwan.
Yuan didn't answer.
She only gripped Shahan tighter.
Sengai sighed. Don't be nervous.
Relax. I'm not here to take him from you. If I really wanted him dead,
I wouldn't have Wendeng bring the flowers.
I asked, then what do you want to do?
Sengai pushed the blank wooden tablet on the table toward me. The third item, the 100 lifetime nameplate.
As long as you write down your true name, once it responds, it will be yours completely. Teneng Kempo will no longer be able to use you as medicine. I frowned. My true name?
Sengai nodded. In your 99 lifetimes, you had 99 names.
Each one was real, but none of them were the whole you.
Shenhen Temple can control you.
Precisely because you've never acknowledged who you really are. I fell silent. Those words pierced deeper than any sword. I had been Si Ling Zhou. I had been Jin Gain. I had been so many different people, and I had even been called Lin Fan, but I always felt that a name was just like clothes worn for a mission, to be cast aside and replaced once it was over. I never once thought about which version was the real me.
Sengai said. Back then, when I discovered the fake decree, I wanted to write down my real name, but I just couldn't.
Because back then, I still believed, as long as I bore everything on my own, it would be the best ending, he said, looking at the people behind me. But now, you are different. Behind you, there's a group of people who will drag you back from the very gates of death.
My jaw puffed out his chest instantly.
Mainly because he's a glutton for punishment. Shen burst into laughter. Shed laughed. Good reason, I asked. Then what about you? Shen raised his wrist, the black chains clinking softly as he sat down. A long time later, I finally understood. My previous 99 failures at the Ascension Tribulation weren't because I was one step short, nor was it because the Heavenly Tao wouldn't allow me to ascend. The true Ascension Tribulation has never been just about the lightning from the heavens. It's about whether I am willing to admit that I still have ties to the mortal world.
The fake decree made me die before the tribulation in every lifetime, not to make me complete the mission,
but to prevent me from truly finding my way back. Because once I acknowledge those old friends, those warm lights, those unpaid debts, and those who are waiting for my return as my true Tao, I will no longer view myself as merely a blade meant to seek its own death. After my heart found its way back over 100 lifetimes, I no longer need the lightning tribulation to prove myself.
If one day I wish to ascend,
I will just go. But if there's still soup simmering in the kitchen today, then I'll go back first to watch the stove. This isn't backing down. This is me, finally being able to choose for myself. The room fell silent when Joelli's face turned pale. Little by little, he stared at Shengai. You didn't say this before.
Shengai avoided his gaze.
If I had told you, you wouldn't have let Lin Fan come. When Jaholi's voice trembled.
So you wanted to... His voice shook.
So you wanted to make the decision all by yourself again. Sengainen remained silent. When Jahoi walked up to the desk, step by step, raised his hand, and smacked him on the forehead. It made a soft thud. Pijah shrank his neck in fear. Ouch, that hurts. Sengain was stunned too.
With red-rimmed eyes, Wenshoi growled.
You lame people. You aren't sins anymore.
Do you all think tearing each other apart makes you look good?
I rubbed my nose. Well, my last name is Lin now. When Jaheli whipped around and glared at me.
You shut up too.
I shut my mouth instantly.
勇往丧令的手稿，野中名字密斯的卧对，万事以志气培。
Sengainer replied. According to the rules of the tower?
Yes.
I looked around the study.
According to the rules of the tower, then let's change the rules.
Shengayan raised an eyebrow. You want to tear down the tower? Well, we don't have to tear it down, I shrugged. We can just rewrite them. I picked up the blank wooden tablet and looked back at Zhao Chen. My 99th incarnation left Zhao Chen behind. Not so that I would devour myself, but to let the dust settle for Zhao Qing.
I walked over to the desk. I placed the wooden tablet in front of Shengayan.
You write yours, and I'll write mine. Shengayan froze. This goes against the rules. I scoffed. The rules were written by the Hall of Heavenly Balance. They have terrible handwriting, so it doesn't count anyway.
Pijao nodded beside me. Exactly.
Ugly handwriting doesn't count. When John Holy's eyes lit up. Yeah, ugly writing doesn't count.
When Johal's eyes lit up.
The dual flame companion lamp. The peaceful.
He quickly whipped out a tattered blueprint. As long as we split the 100 lifetime nameplate into dual lamps,
Shisunk won't have to disappear,
but can be freed from the seal of reincarnation. But we need someone willing to act as his anchor.
Sengayan looked at him. No need.
When Jaholi sneered. Say no need one more time.
And I'll rename you Shen Big Rice. Shengayan shut his mouth instantly.
I suddenly felt like my 99th incarnation didn't have an easy life either.
Wen Zhouha pulled out a green lantern.
I pulled out Jia Chen.
3 beams of light landed on the blank wooden tablet. The wooden tablet slowly split into 2 halves. One half landed in my palm. The other half landed in Shengai's palm. The voice of the dark lantern echoed from all directions. Incorrect. 2 fates cannot sound as one.
They looked up. Who's speaking? The dark lantern fell silent. I said, I can have a past of my own, and I can have a present too. The past is not a prison, and the present is not a blade. We don't have to consume each other. We just need to acknowledge that we both once lived.
I wrote 2 characters on the wooden tablet. Lin Fan.
Shengai stared at the wooden tablet in his hand,
Keeping silent for a long time. Finally, he wrote down Shengai.
Both wooden tablets lit up at the same time.
The glass chains loosened, inch by inch.
Shengai's figure became clearer.
No longer looking like a fading shadow, but like someone who had truly woken up from a long, grueling imprisonment.
Tears streamed down Wen Shouli's face, but he quickly turned his head away.
Shengaian looked at him
And said in a soft whisper,
I'm back. Wen Xiaoyi scoffed. Save the emotional stuff for later. Once we get out, you owe me a 30-year explanation.
Shengaian nodded. I'll pay it back. Slowly.
Pi Zhao laughed. Well, look at that, another debtor.
I welcomed him to the Hidden Wind Court. The gate to the 6th floor began to open. Shengaian was finally able to step away from the writing desk. We walked over to me and handed me half a dry flatbread.
I stared at the hard bread. Are you really giving me this to eat?
He replied, not quite. This is the key to the tower gate. I fell silent for a moment. Good thing I didn't bite into it.
Pi Zhao gasped sharply.
I almost witnessed Brother Lin eat a key. The 7th level. A quest for home. As soon as we stepped inside, we saw a small courtyard. There was a bamboo grove in the yard, a dilapidated building, and 7 lanterns. It looked exactly like the Hidden Wind Court, except there was no one in this courtyard. There was only an empty table. A bowl of cold porridge sat on the table. Then, Black Lantern's voice rang out. If you keep going up, Kanamho will activate the tower's core. Those trapped in the Tower of No Return might be able to escape, but the ley lines of Nanling will be thrown out of balance.
The 3 towns at the foot of the mountain will be devastated.
If you stop now, you can save the 3 towns.
But those inside the tower will be trapped forever. Make your choice.
Pei Zhao's face fell.
Not this kind of choice. Again.
So Mamamado. He's trying to force us to sacrifice one side.
Yi Shaowen gripped her sword tightly.
But there are lives at stake on both sides. I stared at the bowl of cold porridge. Suddenly I asked, Wendeng, do you remember the water channel maps of the 3 Nanling towns?
Wendeng nodded. I walked those paths countless times when I was delivering lanterns. I turned to Pei Zhao. Do we have enough bamboo tubes?
Pi Zhao caught on instantly. Yes, we have as many as you need.
They looked back at Wen Zhaoyi. How long to discharge the tower star's energy?
Wen Zhaohu said. If we use a standard array?
At least 3 days.
I asked, what if we use the Zhang Feng triple extraction method?
Wen Zhaohu glanced at me. Half a day.
But it will look incredibly ugly. I replied, as long as it works.
Pi Zhao grew excited.
Hear that? As long as it works.
We didn't go with either of the 2 choices Black Lantern gave us. Instead, we set to work right there on the 7th floor. Minghong was in charge of setting up the illusionary walls.
Sumian and Hishoman carried the bamboo tubes, while Wendong mapped out the water channels of the 3 towers.
Wen Zhaobo and Chang'an modified the tower's energy lines, while Pei Zhao directed the others to dig the drainage channels.
As for me, I was in charge of cooking.
Pi Zhao was shocked.
We're all busy trying to save people.
And you're cooking? I replied. To save people.
We need strength. This is a half-day project.
If we don't eat, who's going to last? As it turned out, I had great foresight. 4 hours later, everyone was so hungry they were seeing stars. But after devouring a pot of hot porridge, their efficiency instantly doubled. Shengaian held his bowl, a complex look on his face. You really know how to live in this lifetime. I smiled. Learn from this. Immortality isn't about just toughing it out. She certainly knows when it's time for porridge. The Black Lantern on the 7th floor had been waiting for half a day. They probably never expected us to turn a multiple-choice question into a construction project. In the end, they had no choice but to silently open the door. As Pei Zhao walked past carrying the bamboo tube, he patted the door frame and said, next time, make your terms a bit more rigorous. The 8th floor was the guard post for the Tianheung Hall disciples. Just as we got up there, dozens of gray-robed cultivators blocked our path. Their leader was a man named Lu Xinghui, with cold, indifferent eyes. He held a black lantern in his hand.
Wendell has betrayed Kingdom Hall.
Wendell, step forward.
I merely chose to stop delivering the wrong lanterns.
But Xinghui frowned.
The hallmaster said that if one person is confined to the tower, think 1,000 lives will find peace. That is for the greater good. I looked at him. Do you actually believe that? Lu Xinghui replied. I do. I asked him, and what if you were the one being locked in that tower? Would you still believe it?
Lu Xinghui fell silent for a moment. I would be willing.
I nodded.
You are willing, but your willingness is your own choice.
But you cannot make that choice for anyone else.
Lu Xinghui's eyes flickered. I continued.
If Qianhang后处理忘的不太这个火肉.
They can correct their path. They can hand over those responsible. They can share the burden. They can volunteer. But the one thing they cannot do
is drag others down with them.
And then tell them, this is for your own good.
As these words echoed,
Many of the gray-robed disciples lowered their heads. It wasn't that they were evil. They had simply been taught a single answer since childhood.
Sumian suddenly stepped forward. If you still stand in our way, I will shatter your weapons, but I won't take your lives.
Lu Xingfei stared at him. And what if we don't back down?
Yuan spoke up calmly.
Then we'll make sure you can't even stand.
Pei Zhao whispered, Sect Master, you sound so gentle.
But you're being so brutal.
Lu Xingfei finally raised his hand.
Black-robed disciples, form the array.
The black lanterns formed a ring. A massive, tightly knit array descended in an instant.
Pei Zhao's eyes lit up at the sight.
Impressive. Lu Xingfei said coldly, this is the Tanhim ring array.
Anyone who enters this formation is trapped, unable to take a single step.
Jiao asks, are you afraid of water?
Lu Xingfei freezes.
The next second, 20 bamboo tubes pour out water all at once.
It isn't just a light sprinkle.
It's just the ordinary mountain spring water we channeled back on the 7th floor.
The spring water flows along the dips in the ground into the Dingguan formation, instantly throwing it off balance. Pei Zhao puts his
hands on his hips as the formation completely loses its footing.
But you didn't take this into account.
The gray-robed disciples fall into a sudden panic when Zhao seizes the opportunity, raising his hand to alter 3 of the formation's course. Hiruzai would probably be moved to tears if he saw this,
because this alteration makes it look a lot like the steamed bun formation.
Moonwan and Sumian draw their swords at the same time.
The sword glint doesn't harm anyone.
They only slice the lantern cords.
He Shifan follows close behind,
using broken branch arrows to help the fallen gray-robed disciples, one by one, move outside the formation.
The scene becomes incredibly bizarre.
They are trying to stop us.
Yet we are busy trying to keep them from getting hurt.
In the end, Mendong presses his hand over Lu Xinggui's black lantern. Wendong's voice trembles, but his voice is firm. Senior brother, you used to secretly save hot buns for me.
You're not someone who only knows how to throw your life away.
Lu Xingfei freezes.
Wendong continues,
come down the tower with us. Lu Xingfei looks at his fellow disciples being helped up all over the ground.
His gaze finally softens. If the Hallmaster was wrong, what have we been doing all these years?
I guess I really did go down the wrong path.
Taking the wrong path isn't scary. What's scary is knowing you're wrong and still refusing to turn back. Lu Xingfei slowly lowers the black lantern. The door to the 8th floor opens. There are no cheers, but the gray-robed disciples silently step aside to clear a path. As Wendong walks past, Lu Xingfei whispers, if we can still go back.
I like to see this Kangfeng court you talked about.
Wendong nods.
The food there is great.
Pei Zhao chimes in,
but you have to do the dishes.
Lu Xingfei is taken aback.
I say, that's the rule.
We've finally reached the 9th floor at the top of the tower. It isn't as gloomy as we imagined. In fact, it's incredibly bright. Windows on all 4 sides are wide open,
revealing the distant lights of Nanling's 3 towns. Sitting right in the center is a middle-aged man.
He wears a simple green robe, his dark hair flowing.
His features are gentle,
looking more like a humble schoolteacher.
He is humble.
Pei Zhao looks at us,
showing neither anger nor surprise. He simply sighs. You arrived. Much faster than I expected. I stare back at him. You were waiting for me?
Zhao nods.
Now that the Baishi sword has awakened.
Of course I had to wait for you.
Yuan smiles totally. You use Sai Yunzak as a mere pawn in your game.
You nearly destroyed innocent disciples and the helpless villagers below.
Holding looks at her.
He admits. I know my methods were, but if the Baishi sword is not forged, the earth veins we've suppressed for so long will eventually erupt in total chaos.
When that happens, the casualties will be far worse.
I shake my head. Not this tired old excuse again.
Zhao looks at me. Lin Fan,
you have lived through 99 lifetimes.
You've witnessed the rise and fall of countless sects.
You, of all people, should know that peace in this world always comes with a price.
I reply, I do understand.
But that price should never be paid by the innocent people you kept in the dark.
Zhao sighs. If we told them
who would actually volunteer.
I look back at the allies behind me.
Many would be willing to share the burden, but absolutely no one wants to be tripped into dying.
Jing Zhao falls silent for a brief moment.
Then, he suddenly raises his hand.
A massive glowing formation map rises to the center of the tower ceiling.
It is densely packed with countless shimmering points of light.
Some burn bright, while others flicker in the dark.
He speaks. These are the 36 earth vein nodes of the southern border.
Over the past century, 7 of them have already become unstable.
If Tanghong Hall hadn't gathered the Dao fruits,
these regions would have collapsed a long time ago.
Wenjiao's face paled slightly. This formation map is real.
Pei Zhao whispers.
So, he's not entirely evil after all.
I reply. An enemy who isn't entirely evil is actually far more dangerous.
Inja Hall continues. When my master founded Tenhing Hall, his sole purpose was to repair these earth veins.
But we soon realized that even the most exquisite formation is no match for the divided hearts of humanity. Every sect only cares about guarding its own selfish interests. The great noble families only care about themselves.
No one is willing to shed a tear for the wildflowers in the distance.
So we could only take the fastest path, stealing the Dao fruits of the strong to mend the rift in heaven and earth.
I looked at him. But did you ever even try to let them know the truth?
Pei Zhao froze.
I kept speaking.
You assumed everyone was too divided, so you didn't even bother to ask.
But because you didn't ask, people only drifted further apart.
And if you force it on them, they will only drift further away.
Mending the rift with stolen Dao fruits might keep things stable for a moment,
But people will only become more and more miserable. In the end, the rift between us will only grow wider.
Ni Jiaoshuang's eyes darkened slightly.
Easy for you to say, he scoffed. Do you have a better idea?
I do, I said. He stared at me.
I pointed at Pi Zhao. Pi Zhao's wind-hiding Fizo method.
Pei Sha almost dropped his bamboo tube on the ground.
Am I really that important?
Extremely important, I replied.
Zhu Jiahong frowned. Are you kidding me? You want to use a ditch-digging method to patch up the ley lines of the southern border?
It's not a ditch, I countered. It's diversion. Routing the top, channeling the middle, and draining the bottom.
We divide the 36 nodes among the 36 sects.
Each sect only needs to guard one section.
Then, White Egric Academy will share their formation blueprints with everyone. The Cloud Immortal Sect will share their 7-lantern mountain entering technique. And the Sky Crossing Hall will make the node records public.
No more hiding. No more stealing.
If everyone only bears a small portion, then no one has to be forced to die.
Liao Jia sneered. You honestly think the other sects will agree to this?
Yuan stepped forward.
The Cloud Immortal Sect agrees.
Tinjali spoke up. As a formation master, I guarantee this method will work.
Wen Deng added. If the people trapped in the tower wake up, they will want to help too. Lu Xingwei walked up from downstairs.
The disciples of Free Yi are willing as well.
Yin Jiahong stared at them. Even the disciples.
Yin Jiahong looked at them.
And a crack finally appeared in his cold, stoic gaze.
Right at that moment,
one after another, communication beacons lit up outside the tower. The first transmission carried the voice of Elder Yance of the Cloud Immortal Sect. The 7 lanterns of the Cloud Immortal Sect have been stabilized. We are ready to guard the 3 southeastern nodes. The second transmission, from the headmaster of White Egric Academy, slowly echoed. White Egric Academy is now making our foundational formation blueprints public, sending the disciples off to repair and protect the southern ridge water veins. The third light comes from the townsfolk of Juxi, lighting up their bamboo lanterns. They have no spiritual power, yet their lanterns burn bright. An old man's raspy voice drifts over.
The young immortal repaired our bridge.
If those water veins in the mountains need watching, we can watch the rain and the water too. We might not know much else, but we can at least send a warning. Lei Zhao's eyes instantly well with tears. Brother Lin. I actually lit the lanterns. I smile. See that? People's hearts are divided, only because no one ever handed them a light. In Jiahel stares at the growing sea of lights outside the tower, completely lost in shock for the very first time. He whispers softly. Years ago, my master said the exact same thing. Lanterns are meant to be passed to others, not hung up inside a tower. My heart skips a beat. And where is your master now?
Yin Jiahong is silent for a long time before he finally sighs. Back then, to stabilize the first earth fame,
He voluntarily entered the tower, and he never came out again. I look at him. He willingly entered the tower and never came out again. I stare at him.
So, it's not that you don't trust others.
You're just too afraid to admit that maybe, just maybe, your master had another choice back then.
Jiahong's face turns deathly pale.
These words hit him harder than any sword. Suddenly, the tower begins to tremble. The largest black lantern of all rises from deep beneath the earth. An old, raspy voice echoes from inside the lamp. Jiaheng, that is enough.
Ye Zhaohuo whips his head around.
Master. A withered, elderly figure begins to float out from the black lantern. It isn't a dark or sinister entity, but rather a remnant of the past, preserved by the lantern's light. The old man looks at Yin Jiahao, his gaze gentle yet weary. Back then, when I entered the tower, it was because we ran out of time. It was because that was the only way. But you have trapped yourself in my regrets.
Yin Jiao's eyes turn red with emotion.
Master, I only wanted to protect the southern realm. The old man sighs. True protection doesn't mean making decisions for everyone else. We need to tell them the truth and face this together. The black lantern in Yin Jiaheng's hand slipped and clattered to the floor. In an instant, he looked as if he had aged a lifetime. I stepped forward. We can still fix this.
Yin Jiaheng looked up.
Fix it. How? I said. First, let everyone go. Then, make the formation map public. And finally, personally apologize to everyone harmed by the Tianheng Pavilion.
Yin Jiahong let out a bitter laugh.
They might not forgive me. I replied. That is their right. An apology isn't meant to buy forgiveness. It's about admitting you were wrong.
Yin Jiahao fell silent for a long moment.
Finally, he nodded. All right, but the very second he nodded, the black lantern at the tower core shook violently. The lingering voice of the false decree echoed once more. The master of Tianheng Pavilion has surrendered all authority. 100 lifetimes are spiraling out of control, executing final lockdown. With a deafening roar, the entire Wufui Tower shut. Every door and window slammed shut at once, shutting out all the light from the outside world. Shanghai's expression shifted. This is bad. The false order isn't at Zhou Shaheng's control.
Winter Ryan grit his teeth.
The real mastermind is hidden deep within the reincarnation seal.
Zhou Jiaheng only borrowed its power.
He was never its true master. The black runes on my wrist, which had already faded,
flared up once again.
This time, it wasn't urging me to die. Instead, it wanted to drag both me and Jane Guyan straight into the tower core.
Yolan slashed down with her sword, but the black runes parted like water.
Ninja Hao Youxiao also stepped in, trying to suppress the lantern.
But he was blasted back half a step. His face went pale.
The tower core. Thank you? Pi Zhao immediately asked. Then who does it recognize? I stared at the black runes on my wrist. It recognizes me. The version of me whose 100 lifetime.
I looked up at Shen Guyan. Can you still hold on?
Shen Guyan chuckled. Don't ask me such stupid questions. I'm doing just fine.
Then let's face this together.
I turned to Yun Wanli.
Duanai immediately spoke up. You promised we'd never face this alone.
I nodded. I wasn't alone anymore. I took out Lin Fan's wooden token. Senga took out his own wooden token. The two wooden tokens merged into a warm, glowing light in midair. But they didn't fuse together. They simply floated side by side. I looked at everyone. This time, it's not a trap.
We're lighting the path. Each of you only needs to lend a single spark of your starlight.
It won't harm your foundation.
Nor will it steal your Dao fruits.
If you're willing, join me. If not, that's fine too.
Young Wan was the first to walk up and stand by my side.
叫韩江离了个肩头，似有迷来。I am willing.
Pi Zhao rushed up second.
I'm in. Though my heart fire might be a bit weak. Just like ordinary cotton. It's faint, but as long as it works, right? With that, he also reached out his hand.
With teary red eyes, He Xiaoman choked out.
I am willing.
Rain Dongdong stepped up. I am willing.
Wen Zhuo this head.
I'm in. Sen Guyan stared at him. Wen Zhuholi glared back. Shut up. Ya Zhuhong stayed silent for a moment, before stepping forward.
I am willing to be mena for my mistakes, and for the future of the Southern Territory. Then Lu Xinghui and the other disciples raised their lamps as well.
Outside the tower, the 7 lamps of the Xianyuan sect lit up. The main lamp of the Beilu Academy lit up. The bamboo lamps of Juxi Town lit up. More and more sects, more villages and towns.
And everyone who had once helped me with even the slightest thing.
Everyone who remembered that small act of kindness. At this very moment, every kind soul lit up their lamps. It wasn't some divine command, nor was it a forced design.
It was simply that everyone was willing to share a piece of their light.
A fraction of their strength, and their desire to protect this beautiful world. And then, the true voice of the seal of Samsara finally echoed. Choices of 100 lifetimes confirmed. Host is no longer executing false protocols. Would you like to initiate the endgame? I smiled, raising my gaze.
But don't call me host. Call me Lin Fan.
The seal of Samsara fell silent for a brief moment. Then, its voice softened. Lin Fan, the endgame is now active. I raised Jiaoshen, but I didn't strike at anyone. Instead, I slashed toward the fake decree at the deepest part of the tower's core. The strike was incredibly light. So light, it felt like cutting through a block of tofu. Yet, all the black lanterns in the tower went out at the exact same time. The fake decree let out one last sinister sneer. You're giving up on reincarnation? You will regret losing immortality. But I haven't given up on immortality. I just don't want the kind you're offering. As the daylight fell, the dark runes completely dissolved. The lights on all 9 floors of the Tower of No Regrets instantly warmed up. The trapped cultivators on each floor began to wake up. Some looked around in confusion.
Some broke down in tears. Others simply looked up, staring at the long-lost daylight.
The tower doors swung wide open,
and the mountain mist cleared away. The lights from the 3 towns of Lanling merged with the warm glow from the tower.
Like a river that had finally been cleared. After that day at the Tower of No Regrets, I didn't feel relieved right away. As those who had been trapped for years woke up, some embraced their old friends and wept. Some stared blankly at their own hands.
Others asked the disciples nearby what year it was.
No one was laughing. Imi Pei Zhou stayed quiet for a long time.
Wenden stood by the tower doors, watching the black lanterns turn warm, one by one.
His tears falling in complete silence. He whispered, I sent the wrong lanterns so many times before. I didn't comfort him by saying it was okay.
Because some mistakes really can't be brushed away with a simple, it's okay.
I just handed him a warm, freshly cooked rice ball and said, then just make sure you send the right ones from now on.
Wenden took it, crying even harder.
A long time passed. When the first ray of morning light fell outside the tower, those who had awakened slowly walked out.
Some knelt down to kiss the dirt.
Some reached out to catch the breeze.
Some just stared up at the sky.
At that moment, I suddenly realized that maybe immortality is just being able to see the dawn break once again. Once the long silence finally faded, Pi Zhao whispered to me, Brother Lin, can we laugh now? I looked at him. He immediately jumped up, hugging the ledger, and cheered. The debt at Kingfeng Court is cleared! And just like that, everyone burst out laughing. With that laughter, everyone was finally smiling.
This time, the laughter didn't wash away the sorrow. It was just that. The sadness had finally found an outlet. The samsara echoed once more. Reward for completing the 100 affairs task.
Hearing this, my heart skipped a beat. Please, not another bizarre punishment. Samsara seal reward. Absolute longevity, under protection, exempt from false decrees. You are free to stay or leave as you please. Reward 2. The complete archive of the 99 styles of the heart-returning 100 affairs. No more backlash. Reward 3. The debt at Kempfung Court is cleared.
I froze.
while Pei Chan jumped right up.
The third one is the most important.
I stared at the Samsara seal.
You actually understand that? The Samsara seal fell silent for a moment.
Detected. One of Lin Fan's greatest current obsessions.
My mouth twitched. Hey, stop snooping around in my head. Everyone burst out laughing.
Yajahao noped at the bottom of the tower.
He faced the awakened cultivators and bowed deeply toward the distant lights of Nanliling.
This Ba was not to beg for forgiveness,
but to admit his sins. Later, the Tanghim Palace was disbanded. No longer would anyone seek the ghostly path.
预兆后，我自己跟多多多。
With the disciples who chose to stay, he transformed the Tower of No Return into the Hangdan Academy.
They dedicated themselves to recording changes in the Earth's ley lines,
making defensive arrays public,
and repairing the mountains and rivers.
He wanted to spend the rest of his life paying off his debt.
Wendou didn't stay behind.
He followed us back to Xianyun Peak.
His reason was simple.
Kang Feng Court is short of someone to light the lamps,
and even shorter of someone to wash the dishes.
However, he only stayed for 3 days. Once when Zhao taught him the basics of rainwater, roads, ridges, and gewantic suppression, he was sent to Juxi town on the 4th day to repair the water canals.
He left with a complicated look on his face. I can't help but feel like I've been scammed.
Wendong replied earnestly. That's just how everyone gets initiated into Canfeng Court.
Shengain didn't disappear either.
After the dual lights rose together, he obtained an independent body, but his cultivation was temporarily very weak.
Though Wen Zhao kept complaining, he never left his side.
He wanted to pick up his sword again. He forced him to swallow the medicine first, completely ignoring his attempts to reason.
He just shoved the medicine bowl straight into his mouth. Watching him struggle to choke down the bitter brew,
I felt incredibly satisfied. So this is what it feels like to be fussed over and looked after.
Finally. I'm not the only one suffering anymore.
The day we returned to the Zion Sect,
the entrance was packed with disciples.
Elder Yan Sai tried his best to maintain a solemn silence.
But the moment Pei Zhao landed, he screamed, "Canfeng Court's debt is finally cleared!"
First, a dead silence fell over the entire crowd.
Then, a massive cheer erupted, even wilder than when we successfully defended the mountain.
I stood there, utterly speechless. Are the spiritual pursuits of the Sainyuan sect a bit too simple?
Shogun, on the other hand, walked over clutching a ledger.
Clutching a ledger? I looked at him warily.
What are you trying to do now?
Shaoan said flatly. Congratulations on clearing Kang Feng Gu's debt, but we still need to settle the bill for the celebration feast.
需交费金，问大。How much?
Shaoan replied. Not much.
Only 300 merit points. Pei Zhao almost fell to his knees. Samsara, are you still there? Can you please reward me one more time?
Samsara gave no response.
I patted Pei Zhao on the shoulder. Better rely on yourself.
Before you can cultivate immortality, you have to cultivate paying off your debts.
Despite everything, we still threw the celebration feast. It turned out to be incredibly lively.
Bu Academy sent over fine medicinal herbs, while Juxi Town sent fresh bamboo shoots.
Qingxing Town contributed fresh tofu.
The Thiyun Sect kitchens dug up their long-saved fine wine, and I took charge of the stove.
Yulwan helped by sprinkling the sweet osmondusis salt. She got the seasoning absolutely perfect this time. By the time Pei Zhao was on his third bowl,
his eyes suddenly welled up with tears.
I asked, "What is it now?"
He said, "I used to think cultivating immortality was all about flying high and winning with style.
But now, seeing everyone gathered around one table, this feels like the true great path, too."
Sumiya nodded.
"For once, you're actually speaking sense." Pei Zhao was instantly moved. "Senior Sister Su just praised me."
Sumiya retorted, "Don't get ahead of yourself.
You're washing the dishes tonight." Once again, Pei Zhou's smile completely vanished.
After the banquet, He Shaman brought me the 4th question of the 9 inquiries of the Broken Branch.
The 4th question read, "If they were to return, how do we not fail them?"
I stared at it for a long time, before writing 4 words underneath. Welcome them with lanterns.
He Shaman stared at those 4 words,
his eyes shining as brightly as the flickering candles when the Kang Archive was first built. Later, he became the most beloved instructor of the outer disciples at Canfeng Academy, because he never mocked anyone for being slow. He always said, "Don't fear a narrow path. Walk slowly, and it will eventually widen."
Shumia also made a trip back to his hometown.
He placed a plate of Osmanthus's cake before his mother's grave.
When he returned, his eyes were red, but he seemed much more at peace.
He said to me, "When I used to practice swordplay, it always felt like I was chasing someone who would never return. But now I know.
I can take the warmth they gave me and keep moving forward."
I nodded. "Then your sword will be steadier." He gave a soft nod and added, "By the way, your cake still tastes the best."
Guinhua happened to be passing by.
Overhearing this, she said flatly, "Next time, I'll make them." Sumian fell silent for a moment before replying, I saw him steal a glance at me, and his eyes were practically screaming.
Help you!
I could only pretend I didn't see.
Shigai and Wenshai bound themselves as companions at the Sainyuan Sect.
Before leaving, Shengain handed me a complete scroll of the tower diagram. He said, "Jaholi and I want to leave this map with you, because we are going to travel all over the southern realm. If we find any unstable earth veins, we'll stabilize them first."
I looked at him. "But your cultivation hasn't fully recovered yet."
He smiled.
"That's why we'll start by repairing the smaller ones."
I replied.
"So you finally learn not to force yourself." Wajah Hale scoffed from the side. "If he dares to overexert himself,
I'll force-feed him the bitterest herbs from the Li family.
Shengai immediately protested. I'm being perfectly sensible. Watching them walk away side by side, I didn't feel the usual heavy sadness of parting.
Because I knew this wasn't a final farewell.
They were just going far away to pave a path.
And once they're done, they'll come back home for dinner.
King Zhahao also visited the Shuya Chateau.
He didn't enter the main hall and merely handed the first volume of Hangdong Academy's public annals to the elder at the mountain gate. Thinking it with a serious expression, the elder said, "The wrongs of the past have been recorded,
And your merits shall be recorded too. As for what comes next, that depends entirely on what you do."
I understand, he murmured. As he turned to leave,
Wendong chased after him and handed him a steamed bun, leaving Yun Jiaheng utterly stunned. Wendong said, "It's the rule of Kangfeng Court. Always carry some food when you go out."
Yin Jiahe took it, his eyes reddening slightly. "Thank you." Wendong looked at him and said, "Just don't light the wrong lamp again in the
Injafog pied softly.
I won't."
A year later, red lanterns were erected at all 36 nodes of the southern border.
Each location was guarded jointly by Sect disciples and the local commoners.
Cultivators guarded the arrays, while commoners reported on rising waters and rainstorms. Balu Academy opened basic formation classes. Xiangyun Sect shared their 7 lamps mountain stabilizing method. And as for
their 3-canal method was officially written into the guidelines,
though Pei Zhao had once strongly insisted on renaming it. Pei Zhao's invincible syllabus entering Grand Array.
He was unanimously vetoed by everyone. In the end, it was officially named the Kangfeng Diversion Method. Pijama bowed over this for 3 whole days, until someone invited him to give a lecture and paid him 20 bags of spiritual rice. He immediately forgave the entire world.
Wang Dong became the chief lamp-lighting disciple of Kangfeng Court.
Every day at dusk, he would light the lamps, and at dawn, he would put them out.
He carried out his duties with absolute devotion.
However, his dishwashing skills remained quite ordinary.
He often arranged the clean bowls into tactical battle formations, leaving Pei Zhao completely unable to find his own bowl. Luke Xing 3 wrote to us occasionally, sharing that the canals in Joska town were now open, and the townspeople had gifted him a basket of bamboo shoots.
He asked if Kangfeng Court wanted any. Pijon's reply consisted of only 4 words. "Send them at once."
Right next to his reply, I appended 2 words. "Thank you."
Jiao looked at me and said, "Brother Lin, you are far too polite." I replied, "It's just basic courtesy." He smirked. "Can courtesy get us 2 extra baskets?" I fell silent for a moment.
Then, I added another line. "If it is convenient, feel free to send more."
Yuan had been the sect master for many years,
but for the first time, she truly laid down many of her burdens. She still dedicated herself to her quiet cultivation, and she was still busy, but she would always come to Kangfeng Court for meals right on time. She even spent her spare time learning how to make sweet osmanthus cakes. She got better and better at it, except her hands would still tremble slightly from time to time. Every time I frowned, she would glare at me and say, "Don't you dare look down on it."
I had no choice but to eat every single bite.
And then offer a sincere compliment. "You've really improved."
She would smile, looking just like that little girl from 100 years ago, who had finally gotten her candied hawthorn.
As for me, I am still Lin Fen, just the boy next door from Kingshui Town, and a disciple of the Senyuan Sect's Kangfeng Court. Once in a while, people call me Senior. I'll correct them right away and tell them to call me Senior Brother. That their cultivation is higher than mine?
I'll tell them Lin Fan is fine, but if they insist on being overly respectful,
I'll threaten them with my spatula. Keep acting so polite, and there's no dinner tonight. This trick works every single time, because everyone in the southern region now knows that Lin Fan from Kangfeng Courtyard makes incredibly delicious food, even more famous than my swordplay. One day, the mark of reincarnation suddenly chimed again. "Lin Fan, it is detected that you have completed the finality of 100 affairs. Do you wish to begin the path of immortality?" I was in the courtyard, peeling bamboo shoots, and casually asked, "What is the path of immortality?" The mark replied, "You can travel the 9 realms, seek the Tao, achieve immortality through the Tao, and continue your cultivation. You can found your own sect and establish your legacy." I thought about it and said, "Not today." The Mart asked why. I replied, "Tonight, I promised to make osmanthus cake for Yunwan. I also promised to make savory pan-fried jelly for Pei Zhao. Sumian wants less salt in her food. He Shouman needs to watch over the lanterns. And Wende hasn't even learned how to chop vegetables yet. How could I possibly have time?" The Mark was silent for a long time. Then, a new quest was generated. Today's quest, cook a meal. Reward, a courtyard filled with... I smiled. Now that's a good quest. As evening fell, 7 sword lanterns lit up one by one. Kangfeng Courtyard was packed with people.
Pei Zhao was holding his bowl, desperately grabbing for food.
Dimin complained that he was being too noisy.
He Xiaoman was earnestly teaching the new disciples Oriyama, and after lighting the 9 questions lantern, she ran over to scoop some soup.
Guan walked through the door carrying 2 bags of rice. Xie Minyan rushed over from Beilo Academy, holding a few newly sorted volumes of ancient manuals, saying the newly arranged dragon array was faster by half an incense stick's time. With a fresh bamboo leaf from the southern ridge tucked inside, saying they'd be back next month for dinner. Old Mr. and Mrs. Lin sat by the courtyard gate, smiling as they watched the lively courtyard.
Druun stood under the osmanthus tree,
holding a plate of osmanthus cakes. She looked at me. "Senior brother, Are you going away this time? I wiped my hands. Yes, I'm going.
I wiped my hands. Yes, I'm going. Her eyes wavered.
I smiled, took the plate of cakes, and said, going to the kitchen to ladle the soup, going to the garden to pick some green onions, going down the mountain to see Mom and Dad, going to the southern ridge to fix the water canals. But I will always come back.
Everyone vote at me.
Finally, the 100-year-long wait in her eyes was gone, replaced only by the warmth of tonight's lanterns.
She softly whispered, "Okay."
I looked down and took a bite of the sweet osmanthus cake.
The sweetness was just right.
And so was the salt.
I smiled. "Little Yuman,
You finally mastered it.
her eyes curved into a sweet smile. "Then, senior brother, how many plates do you still owe me?"
I thought about it for a moment. A lifetime. Beside us, Pei Zhao raised his hand.
"I'm a witness. Brother Lin still owes me 100 meals."
Sumia spoke up softly.
That's true, he shaman added seriously. But senior brother Lin said he would pay us back slowly. Everyone burst into laughter. The sound drifted through the bamboo grove,
Past Shigan Peak, past Tingshu Cliff.
through the sweet osmanthus trees, and finally catching the wind that I could never stop chasing throughout my 99 lifetimes.
I once thought immortality was the ultimate reward at the end of reincarnation.
But only now do I understand.
Immortality isn't about living forever.
It's not about standing at the absolute peak forever.
Immortality is simply having someone who remembers you.
Having someone waiting for you to come home. Having someone leave a light on for you in the dark.
And finally, being willing to stop your endless journey to look at them and say, I'm home. In this lifetime, I will no longer die for some system task.
Nor will I leave just to attain immortality.
I will rebuild things.
I'll learn to cook, and I'll pay back all my debts.
I'll watch the roof of Canfeng Court get patched up. Over and over again.
I'll watch the lanterns of the Seon sect grow brighter year after year.
I'll watch those who once lost their way slowly find their path back home.
I'll watch the juniors grow from stumbling kids into people who can stand on their own. I'll watch Yuman make her sweet osmanthus cakes sweeter and sweeter. Until many years later, if someone asks me, Lin Fan, you went through 99 lifetimes of reincarnation. In the end, what did you gain?
I'll probably point to that chipped wooden table in Canfeng Court, worn down from everyone fighting over food.
Point to the courtyard glowing with lanterns.
And point to this noisy, bickering group of people who are all alive and well. And then I'll tell them, I found my way home.
As night falls, and the lanterns burn bright, I raise my bowl of warm porridge
and smile at everyone in the courtyard. Time to eat! And everyone cheers in unison.
A gentle mountain breeze sweeps through the osmanthus trees,
showering the world below with their sweet fragrance. Deep in my heart, the mark of reincarnation softly chimes. Today's mission is complete.
Your reward has been granted.
Where's my reward?
I asked.
He replied, You've already seen it. I looked up and saw the warm, glowing lights,
saw familiar faces,
and saw the place where I belong.
And so I smiled.
This reward is truly, truly beautiful.